Liliana is enchanted by a magical jellyfish floating amidst a school of glowing fish. A massive, glowing blue whale swims gracefully past a group of small sea turtles. Liliana stands still, her long hair adorned with blue bows, as soft light surrounds her. A man with silver hair offers a gentle, mysterious smile while wearing an ornate collar. Liliana's blue eyes sparkle with pure wonder as she witnesses the breathtaking magical display before her. Francois Cassel crouches down to speak with an ecstatic Liliana amidst a field of blooming flowers. Liliana stares blankly in shock as her excitement suddenly shifts into a moment of pure bewilderment. Liliana reacts with total shock while Francois Cassel covers his face, seemingly overcome with sudden emotion. Francois Cassel offers a reassuring smile, radiating a calm and gentle aura toward the young girl. A formal introduction presents Francois Cassel, a genius magician and the 23-year-old head of the Magic Tower. Liliana shields her eyes from Francois' intense radiance, noting his contract marriage to her sister, Amelia. A dizzy Liliana struggles to understand her family hierarchy, insisting she already has a real brother. Francois Cassel dismisses her confusion, warmly declaring that they are family and he is her brother. Liliana recoils in visible distress as Francois' overwhelming kindness and bright energy continue to press her. Terrified, Liliana makes a frantic excuse about needing to play before darting away from the magician. Francois Cassel falls to the ground in despair, calling out to Liliana as she flees him. Liliana sprints through a grand stone archway, internally noting that Francois' kindness masks a deeper fear. Despite his angelic appearance, Liliana admits to herself that she finds the silver-haired man quite frightening. She recalls the original story where Francois was a madman who drove her character toward destruction. Liliana reflects on the events of the original narrative that she now finds herself trapped within. After a severe fever, Liliana gained memories of a dark reverse harem novel and her regression. The sick child remembers the title of the dark novel featuring the protagonist named Rebecca Marchioni. Memories of the novel's plot show male leads starting wars for a protagonist who loved nobody. Lost in thought, Liliana trips and falls, letting out a startled cry as her balance fails. A close-up of her vibrant blue eyes shows her sudden alarm as she begins her fall. A stern soldier in a dark military uniform catches Liliana midair before she hits the ground. Liliana excitedly climbs onto her new brother-in-law's head, greeting him with a cheerful and loud shout. The soldier looks on with a calm, stoic expression, his green eyes showing a faint, gentle warmth. Narration identifies this soldier as another male lead and the strongest warrior in the entire world. The powerful warrior stands tall with his sword, carrying a small, happy child on his head. He ended his one-sided love for the protagonist by marrying Liliana's sister, the blonde-haired woman, Regina. A blonde man in a red uniform teases Liliana about her height, sparking her angry protest. Liliana seethes with rage as the man continues to mock her short stature with a laugh. The blonde man laughs heartily while using his hand to emphasize how small Liliana actually is. He continues his boisterous laughter, clearly finding great amusement in teasing the young, frustrated girl. Liliana hits the tyrannical emperor from the original story, who is now just a playful, teasing presence. Over a year has passed since this former tyrannical emperor first arrived within the imperial borders. Francois Cassel offers a giant, pink-swirled lollipop with a charming and bright smile on his face. The soldier gives a firm thumbs up, his cheeks flushed with a rare and subtle embarrassed glow. The blonde man continues his relentless teasing, calling Liliana a squirrel or a shorty whenever they meet. Liliana's brother shouts at the military subordinates, demanding they take him instead of his little sister. Liliana mocks her brother while Edgar watches, declaring her desire to live in the palace with them. Edgar finds the situation difficult as the blonde boy threatens to never see him again if ignored. Edgar jokingly suggests kidnapping Liliana, prompting her to scream in loud and immediate refusal of the idea. A hand reaches out and firmly grips Liliana's shoulder, interrupting her frantic protest against the blonde man. Her brother grabs her protectively, shouting that he and his sister will go everywhere together as a pair. The blonde boy stares forward with intense green eyes, determined to protect his sister from the others. Liliana stands surrounded by the three powerful men and her brother, wondering how her life became so chaotic. A massive sailing ship crosses the ocean as Liliana wonders where the original protagonist, Rebecca, is now. The narrative shifts to the original story's protagonist, Rebecca Marchione, as her role in history is mentioned. Alice holds a worried Liliana as Regina and their other sister look on with concern. Liliana experiences a sudden, chilling realization that freezes her in place with wide-eyed shock. Looking up from the water, Liliana sees the massive ship sailing through the moonlit sea. The grand vessel, bearing the flag of Travancia, cuts through the dark waves toward its destination. Submerged in the depths, the child realizes her terrifying destiny is unfolding right before her eyes. Moonlight reflects off the ocean as the large ship continues its steady journey through the night. Amidst a crowded party, a woman reaches out and comments on what a lovely child Liliana is. The red-haired woman asks the girl's age, and a trembling Liliana stammers that she is 6. Adorned with flowers and a bright smile, the woman reacts with delight to the child's answer. A dark premonition shows the red-haired woman falling into the deep, cold waters of the ocean. Liliana recalls meeting the protagonist Rebecca at a ship party, a pivotal and truly extraordinary event. During a fever, Liliana remembers that Rebecca left her hometown for revenge within the massive empire. Reaching the city, the hooded protagonist begins her journey to entangle herself with several powerful men. In the original story, the protagonist effortlessly earns the devotion of 3 highly influential male leads. Rebecca manipulates her suitors into a brutal war, using their incredible powers to further her goals. The conflict ravages Travancia, turning the peaceful land into a terrifying sea of fire and destruction. Liliana reflects on the horrific truth that her own family was sacrificed during the original war. Alice, the eldest sister, perished on the battlefield as Travancia faced a total and crushing defeat. After the fall of her home, Liliana was captured and taken away as a lonely prisoner. Returning to the present, the terrified child grips her sister's hand with renewed, desperate intensity. Liliana's vibrant blue eyes shimmer as she processes the dark, heavy memories of her previous life. Alice notes that Liliana is unusually shy as she introduces her to the smiling red-haired woman. The child realizes her mental age remains young since her life originally ended at age 15. Information from the novel floods her mind, prompting her to change the tragic course of history. Rebecca reaches out with a gloved hand to offer Liliana a small red wrapped treat as a gift. The small red package gleams, representing a rare luxury for a child living in Travancia. Ecstatic at the sight of chocolate, Liliana reaches out with both hands to accept the treat. Rebecca asks if the child likes chocolate, noting it is a very rare find in Travancia. Regina reminds the girl to be polite, prompting Liliana to shout a cheerful and loud thank you. Smiling subtly, Rebecca remarks to Alice that she truly spoils her youngest and most beloved sister. Alice tentatively asks the red-haired woman if she may pat Liliana on the head just once. After getting approval, the woman asks Liliana for permission to give her a gentle head pat. Liliana beams with pure joy as the woman's hand rests kindly upon her soft, curly hair. Watching the woman, the child internally apologizes for everything that is destined to happen to her. The red-haired woman asks Liliana about her dream while looking down at her with curious eyes. Rebecca listens intently as the young girl reveals her simple desire to live happily with family. Rebecca calls her Lily and wishes for her to grow up healthy, hoping her dream comes true. Overflowing with happiness, Liliana gives a wide, gap-toothed smile and shouts a very enthusiastic yes. That night, the woman fell overboard, and despite a month-long search, she was presumed to be dead. Liliana is paralyzed with shock, realizing the original story has ended before it could even begin. Her sisters are confused by the disappearance, but Liliana remains the most deeply troubled by the turn. Looking at the fading image of Rebecca, the child wonders why the narrative changed so abruptly. Liliana stands alone in a white void, her shadow stretching out beneath her like a blooming flower. The scene shifts to a peaceful coastal town with bright white buildings overlooking a sparkling blue sea. Sunlight streams into a quiet room, illuminating a set of blue doors as a new day begins. At the dining table, a blushing Liliana looks down at her food with a very heavy sigh. Alice asks the youngest child why she is sighing and if she is feeling particularly down today. Leaning forward, Alice asks if there is a secret the child wants to share between them both. Regina dismisses the drama, stating that Liliana simply does not want to eat her green bell peppers. Looking completely unimpressed, Regina stares blankly as the child continues to fuss over her unwanted vegetables. Regina reminds Liliana to eat well to grow taller while the child sighs in frustration. A pair of feet and simple straw sandals walk steadily across the room's tiled floor. Regina serves steaming shrimp soup while Alice complains about being hungry and exhausted from work. Regina tells Liliana to eat and grow healthy, which the child enthusiastically accepts while Alice protests. From outside the window, Regina tells the others to stop talking and focus on eating already. Regina eats while Liliana recalls how her sister worked tirelessly to save her in the past. The narration praises Regina's kindness and notes that the food she prepares is the very best. Alice is described as a kind, caring, beautiful, and graceful older sister to the young girl. Liliana mentions that her brother Andrea suddenly left for the countryside without giving any prior warning. Andrea is currently not living with the family, leaving the young child to eat her soup alone. Liliana sighs, feeling that her sisters don't truly understand the complex weight of her previous memories. A dark vision depicts the original female protagonist, Rebecca, drowning in the deep and cold ocean. The narrative explains that the events of the original story were cut short before even beginning. Liliana wonders if she no longer needs to worry about wars now that the protagonist is gone. A close-up of the young girl's vibrant blue eye reflects her deep and hopeful internal thoughts. The 3 sisters share a quiet and peaceful family meal together at their long dining table. Liliana watches her sisters with a serious expression, processing the major changes to the story's timeline. Alice maintains a calm and graceful appearance while participating in the family dinner at their home. Liliana realizes that with Rebecca gone, only the dangerous and crazy male leads remain as threats. The young girl focuses on her food, making delighted sounds as she enjoys her delicious meal. Deciding to prioritize her breakfast, Liliana enthusiastically praises the meal and resolves to enjoy it fully. Regina encourages Lily to eat plenty as they enjoy the view of their bright coastal home. A sunburst effect emphasizes Liliana's realization that there is much time before the original story unfolds. The large soup pot sits empty on the striped tablecloth, signaling the end of their meal. Regina suggests they wash up to go out together, which leaves the young girl feeling confused. Liliana questions the need for more clothes, but Regina insists they are going to buy more.
Despite Liliana's protests about her recent purchases, Regina dismisses her and prepares for their shopping trip.
Liliana stands by the table, feeling a strange and unsettling sense of foreboding about the trip. The child fears Regina is taking her for a medical shop based on her previous experiences. Regina leads a dressed-up Liliana into a grand cafe where a mysterious voice greets the child. Liliana admires the handsome man's appearance and feels relieved she isn't getting a shot, but wonders who he is. A close-up shot focuses on Regina's lips as she begins to speak to the silver-haired stranger. Regina asks the man if he is Francois Cassel, recognizing the wizard despite his sudden appearance. Liliana reacts with total shock and confusion, asking her sister what she just said to the man. Narration identifies Francois as the genius wizard and the insane male lead from the original dark novel. A flashback shows the original timeline where Francois imprisoned the protagonist and forced Liliana to be a maid. Francois confirms his identity with a smile, while Liliana panics internally about his presence so early on.
Francois leans forward with a pleasant smile and identifies the blonde woman by the name Amelia Berchio.
A large text bubble expresses Liliana's intense internal scream regarding why the wizard is here now. From a high angle, Liliana realizes her encounter with the magician is extremely perilous and quite unexpected. The child is terrified because the original storyline should not have begun for another 6 years. A close-up of the child's mouth shows her visible distress as she processes the wizard's appearance. Liliana pulls on Regina's hand, thinking that the two shouldn't know each other since he is dangerous. Narration details how the other male leads, like Emperor Marius, were also driven by their insane obsessions. The Knight Commander Leopold is shown showing a desperate and mad devotion to the original story's protagonist. Unlike the others who were madly in love, Francois is described as being afflicted with true insanity. Inside the dark magic tower, the powerful magician is shown kneeling in a state of utter despair. A piercing yellow eye glares through the shadows, representing the deep and dangerous insanity within the wizard. Regina looks on with a stoic expression, making the encounter with the wizard feel even more perilous. Francois smiles warmly and asks if they received the letter and research papers regarding magic and supernatural abilities. The blonde woman notes that those items are not something that can be easily obtained. Regina remarks that as the Tower Lord, he should know that better than anyone, and Francois Cassel enthusiastically confirms that he does.
Regina explains that supernatural abilities are something that cannot even be accessed outside of the territory of Travantia.
Liliana internally questions if Francois arrived here because he is curious about their unique supernatural abilities. The narration explains that mages across the continent rushed to study these rare and powerful abilities. Travantia maintained a strict isolationist policy, making research nearly impossible and direct observation even more difficult. Liliana wonders how the wizard managed to enter the isolated territory of Travantia in the first place. The young girl resolves to protect her sister, resolving to take drastic measures if he threatens her. Liliana's internal thoughts continue as she decides she will bite his arm right off if necessary. Francois Cassel offers a subtle and mysterious smile as the conversation at the cafe table continues.
While the wizard strikes a confident pose, Liliana nervously questions if she can really bite the man.
A hand is gently placed on Liliana's head as she sits quietly at the table. Regina continues to pat the child's head while Francois tries to guess if she is 4 or 5. The blonde woman looks at the wizard and confirms that the small child is her younger sister. Regina warns the wizard that Liliana is fragile, suffering fevers when surprised and pneumonia from a single cough. Francois looks at the child and asks if he's being requested to use his healing magic. Regina mentions reading his paper about mana potions increasing healing effects 5 times when arranged like divine magic. The treatment is believed to promote cell division and growth in developing children, making them much healthier. Francois notes that while she isn't a mage, Regina is quite knowledgeable, and she confirms she isn't ignorant. Liliana claims she feels stuffy and asks to go outside, internally resolving to stop the meeting immediately. Regina looks up with a surprised expression as she notices the waiter approaching their table. Regina requests orange juice from the waiter while a shocked Liliana realizes her plan to leave has failed. The child panics, thinking nothing good will come from getting involved with the dangerous Francois Cassel. The waiter serves the orange juice as Liliana worries that the situation is becoming increasingly perilous for her. Looking at the glass, Liliana realizes there is no turning back from the decision she just made. A sudden gasp echoes as the orange juice spills across the table and Liliana's lap. Regina asks if the child is hurt after causing trouble, while Liliana apologizes to her sister for the mess. Liliana views the sticky mess as a necessary sacrifice to avoid further interaction with Francois Cassel. The scene remains tense as Francois watches the child from across the table while she continues her act. Francois Cassel leans on his hand with an enigmatic smile, his golden eyes fixed on the young girl. That evening at home, Liliana asks if her sister plans to meet the man again, declaring her dislike. After changing her clothes, Liliana is teased by Regina for staring at the man because he is handsome. While admitting the wizard is handsome, Liliana remains firm in her stance that she does not like him. Regina pinches the child's cheek, explaining that meeting him is necessary for Liliana's health despite the difficulty involved.
Liliana lets out a frustrated grumble as she realizes she cannot easily avoid the silver-haired man.
The blonde woman offers a gentle and warm smile while looking down at her youngest sister. Regina pulls the small child into a tight and affectionate hug within their bright coastal home.
Liliana finds comfort in her sister's embrace, though her mind is still preoccupied with the wizard.
The scene shifts to a bright outdoor playground featuring a large sandcastle and a blue slide. Liliana runs toward the playground with excitement while Regina laughs and asks if she is excited. The child recalls suffering from a long fever for quite some time following the incident with Rebecca. The shock of the situation overwhelmed her, leading to a period of physical illness for the young girl.
Liliana cries about missing her friends Francesca, Martina, and Antonio, loudly refusing Regina's suggestion to play hospital.
Regina tells the girl to stop making noise and play in the sand since she is clearly bored. Liliana lets out a loud and joyful shout as she slides down the blue playground slide. The young girl enjoys a peaceful moment on the swings under the clear, sunny sky. With a wide, happy expression, Liliana laughs heartily as she swings back and forth at the playground.
Playing makes all of the child's worries disappear, and she enthusiastically notes how much fun she is having.
The narrative reflects on the suffocating nature of home and the anxiety regarding her sisters meeting the male leads.
Liliana focuses entirely on the present moment, wanting only to swing higher and higher into the air.
Liliana swings back and forth, enthusiastically shouting for the blonde-haired man to push her even higher. A large hand is placed on Liliana's back as she continues her high and exciting swing. A close-up of Liliana's vibrant blue galaxy eye captures her sudden and wide-eyed shock. The blonde-haired man watches as Liliana swings dangerously high, leading her to wonder about his true identity. Liliana laughs heartily with her mouth wide open, completely enjoying the thrill of the playground. The blonde man asks if she is having fun and offers to push the swing even higher.
Liliana excitedly shouts that she wants to go higher while holding tight to the metal chains.
The blonde man laughs heartily as he pushes the young child into the bright, sunny sky. Liliana screams with pure joy, her hair billowing behind her as she reaches an incredible height. The child exclaims about how high she is, surrounded by a clear sky and fluffy white clouds. Liliana realizes she couldn't reach such heights on her own as she looks out over the palm trees.
Liliana beams with a wide, happy expression, declaring the experience to be absolutely amazing. A close-up shows the child's small hand suddenly losing its firm grip on the cold metal swing chain.
Liliana falls backward through the air, her expression shifting to terror as the swing moves away.
The child falls upside down against a bright white light, her body suspended in a moment of fear.
The reflection in Liliana's wide blue eyes shows the empty swing and chains as she continues falling. Liliana gasps in confusion as Alice is shown in the background, looking on with sudden horror. Alice screams Liliana's name in a panicked voice, her face pale with intense and immediate worry. Liliana falls silently through the blue void, her long dark hair spread out like a fan around her. The child's galaxy-like eyes reflect a pair of white birds flying through the peaceful, clear sky. Liliana is shown in a chibi-style state of shock, her expression blank as she processes the accident. The young girl's face is shown in close detail as she experiences a moment of intense surprise.
A large, calloused hand reaches out to catch the falling child just before she hits the ground.
The brown-haired warrior Leopold catches Liliana in a heroic dive, shielding her body with his own. Liliana blinks in confusion as she finds herself safely held against the man's strong, steady chest. A close-up of the child's wide blue eyes captures her stunned and bewildered reaction to the rescue. Leopold looks down at the child with a serious expression while heavy breathing indicators surround them. Alice frantically runs toward them, screaming Lily's name while Marius stands by looking startled and concerned.
Alice asks if she is hurt anywhere while a stunned Liliana quietly mumbles that she is okay.
Alice pulls the child into a desperate and sobbing hug, expressing her profound relief that Liliana survived. Marius claims he suddenly lost strength in his hands while Alice scolds him and Liliana apologizes. Leopold calmly tells the group not to worry because the child is completely safe and uninjured. Liliana realizes the identity of the blonde man is Emperor Marius, prompting her to gasp in shock. Marius thanks Leo for the catch, admitting that the entire situation was truly terrifying for everyone involved. Liliana is visibly shaken, her wide eyes and sweating face conveying her deep internal panic. Liliana wonders why the other two male leads from the novel have appeared so early in history. Alice yells at Marius, demanding to know what he was thinking by pushing the child so hard.
Alice scolds the blonde man about Liliana's small size while the child tries to calm her sister.
Liliana notes that Alice, though usually soft-spoken, becomes a terrifying force when her family is endangered. Marius looks on with a stunned expression as he is subjected to Alice's fierce and protective lecture. A pink, cloudy background emphasizes the terrifying possibility that Marius might be angry at Liliana's sister.
Alice argues that if not for Leopold, Liliana could have suffered a broken leg or worse.
Liliana begs Alice to stop, admitting she is more afraid of the man's presence than the accident.
Marius repeatedly bows and apologizes for his mistake while Alice and Liliana look on in total disbelief.
Alice hugs her youngest sister tightly, assuming the child is trembling because of the sudden surprise.
Dialogue bubbles clarify that Liliana's surprise is a completely different kind than what Alice currently suspects.
Liliana reflects on how the original Marius never would have apologized so respectfully to anyone from Travantia.
Marius offers a charming, blushing smile, looking remarkably gentle compared to his former tyrannical reputation.
A close-up shows the child's small, white-knuckled hand tightly gripping her older sister's blue dress.
Liliana looks up with a pleading expression, asking her sister to please stop being mad at him.
A tender close-up focuses on Alice as she looks down fondly at her youngest sister. Alice pulls Liliana into a warm hug, promising she won't be angry anymore after the accident.
Alice thanks the warrior for catching her sister and preventing what could have been a tragedy.
Blushing slightly, Leopold humbly dismisses the praise and claims his heroic actions were nothing special.
While looking at the child, the warrior explains he simply did what was necessary to help. Staring up at the tall man, Liliana is awestruck by his massive and imposing physical stature.
Leopold's future as a swordmaster and commander who leads the Empire to victory.
Liliana bows politely while Marius reacts with intense excitement to how adorable the young girl is. The stern warrior offers a rare and gentle smile toward the small and polite child.
Alice offers a reward, but a blushing Leopold insists he only wanted the child to stay safe.
Marius sports a wide, joyful grin as he prepares to make a sudden and bold request.
Marius requests a local guide, leaving Liliana stunned by the absurdity of his sudden and unexpected demand. Leaning on Leo, Marius emphasizes how difficult their journey was and insists they need local assistance. Marius asks Alice for her approval while Liliana internally begs her sister to ignore his trick.
Alice laughs brightly, clearly charmed by the request despite her younger sister's silent and desperate protests.
Marius celebrates his success while Liliana prepares to depart with an enthusiastic, albeit forced, joyful attitude.
Marius teases that Leo wanted a guide most, leaving the quiet warrior looking completely and utterly bewildered.
A tense silence follows as Alice and Leopold share a mutual blushing look of sudden surprise. Leopold asks Alice to help him shamelessly, prompting a shocked reaction from Liliana regarding his boldness.
Liliana realizes that getting involved with these broken male leads is now unavoidable and quite dangerous.
Marius's arrival signals an inevitable meeting with Regina, who serves prominently in the Imperial Guard.
Liliana pivots her strategy, enthusiastically encouraging Alice to serve as the group's guide for the day.
Liliana decides to switch tactics, wearing a mischievous expression as she plans her next clever move. The young child resolves to make the male leads and her family become close friends instead. Sunlight dances over the white buildings and blue waters of the peaceful and bright coastal town.
Alice and Liliana lead the two men through town, officially beginning their one-day guided travel tour.
Alice glows with happiness as she enjoys the beautiful day while walking with her new companions.
Leopold maintains a stoic profile while Marius chatters excitedly in the background during their walk. Marius asks about local sights and food while Liliana looks on with a state of visible exhaustion. Narration notes that Marius is far less volatile than the dangerous and unpredictable wizard Francois Cazel.
A detailed view focuses on the young girl's large and expressive blue and galaxy-like eyes.
Watching the men interact, Liliana wonders if she should be less afraid of Marius's overall presence. The group moves from the sunny streets into the cool and decorated interior of a restaurant. Overwhelmed by the day's events, Liliana collapses face first onto the table in a state of fatigue. Marius laughs at the child's exhaustion, though she grumbles that he is the one at fault. Marius asks about her age, and Liliana defensively states she is 6 and not a kid.
Amused, Marius dismisses her claims and insists that being only 6 years old makes her a baby.
Liliana retaliates by asking the man's age, catching the blonde emperor completely and suddenly off guard.
Marius offers a playful and smug expression in response to the child's blunt and direct questioning.
Liliana is left speechless and horrified by the Emperor's unexpected and remarkably childish behavior at dinner.
Despite her annoyance, Liliana admits the man is as incredibly handsome as a perfectly carved sculpture.
Liliana declares he looks 550 years old, prompting Marius to defend his youthful appearance.
Liliana realizes this is a perfect opportunity to speak informally and mock the emperor without any consequences.
Marius scoffs at her guess, claiming she has no eye for true beauty and youthful masculine elegance.
Posing once more, Marius asks if he would still be handsome after 5,000 years pass.
Liliana shouts that Leopold is much more handsome, causing the warrior to suddenly choke on his drink.
Liliana doubles down on her preference while a frantic Marius begs her to look much more carefully. Leopold puts a firm hand on Marius' shoulder, telling the panicked and desperate emperor to calm down.
Watching the blonde man's antics, the warrior questions his behavior while noting his previous choking fit.
The blonde man humorously questions if he remains the most handsome person throughout several millennia.
Liliana immediately and forcefully rejects his claim, finding the suggestion of his supreme beauty completely absurd. Charmed by the interaction, Alice offers a light-hearted laugh as the group continues their dinner.
The blonde man teases the waitress about her size, jokingly asking if she is a little acorn. Offended by the remark, the waitress firmly declares that she is neither a child nor an acorn. The waitress serves the meal, and the older sister politely thanks her for the prompt service.
Liliana is delighted by the food, praising the server for preparing such a thoughtful and delicious meal.
A burst of internal excitement follows as the child celebrates the arrival of her special lunch. After dealing with the two male leads, Liliana focuses on eating quickly to restore her depleted energy. A bell tinkles as the door opens, and the narration encourages the child to eat her fill. The waitress warmly greets a new customer while the silver-haired wizard suddenly appears in the restaurant. The warrior turns toward the entrance, his expression shifting to one of sudden and intense alertness. The wizard's reflection appears in the warrior's eye as Liliana gasps, recognizing the dangerous man's presence. A close-up of the child's shocked eye captures her utter disbelief at seeing the wizard again. The wizard explains that he finished his business early and decided to join them ahead of schedule. Standing at the table, the wizard addresses the group, making his unexpected arrival feel incredibly imposing. Liliana wonders if she is a magnet for villains as the handsome but insane wizard smiles pleasantly. The child deeply regrets leaving the house, realizing that her boredom led her into this peril.
Francois Cassel offers a serene and gentle smile, hiding the true madness within his golden eyes.
The blonde man explains their early arrival for sightseeing and acknowledges the sisters for being their guides.
Noticing her sister's sudden distress, Alice asks Liliana why her face has become so pale. Liliana feels a deep sense of dread, wondering if this day is destined to be a disaster. The silver-haired wizard maintains his pleasant facade, his closed-eye smile masking his unpredictable and dangerous nature. A single thought bubble hangs in the air, emphasizing the wizard's recognition of the young child. The child begins to hiccup from fear, acknowledging her profound and justified terror of Francois Cassel. A flashback details the wizard's cruelty in the original story where he imprisoned the heroine and Liliana. The narration recalls how he poisoned Liliana, forcing her to rely on him for a temporary antidote. He used the antidote to manipulate the heroine, providing only enough to last for half a day. Driven by guilt, the heroine was forced to eat despite her physical suffering under the wizard's control. Back in the present, Liliana's hands tremble violently as the weight of the past overwhelms her senses. Hiding behind Alice, the child watches as her sister offers a polite greeting to the silver-haired stranger. Alice notes the man's familiarity with her sister, and Francois asks if she's the older guardian. Francois asks if she is Regina's sister, leaving the terrified Liliana to wonder how he knows everything. Alice clarifies that she and Regina are twins, noting that their lack of similarity often causes confusion. Alice laughs off the common mistake, maintaining a cheerful and polite demeanor despite the wizard's odd behavior. Alice's expression turns cold as she directly asks the man how he managed to meet her youngest sister. The atmosphere becomes heavy as Liliana shivers, fearing the consequences of her sister getting involved with him. Francois reveals that Regina made a contract with him to ensure the health of her youngest sister. The wizard cryptically refuses to elaborate, claiming that the details of their deal are far too private. A dark shadow falls over Alice's face as she reacts with suspicious curiosity to the wizard's revelation.
Alice tells the child to focus on her food, while Liliana worries that she will suffer from indigestion.
The child mindlessly swirls her fork through her meal, her appetite completely gone from the mounting tension.
Eating with a heavy heart, Liliana prays that Regina won't face Alice's terrifying wrath when they return home.
Francois asks the waitress for her name, and she identifies herself as Regina Berkia. The wizard acknowledges her with a smile as she places a plate of pasta on the table. Francois suggests that Alice ask Regina for the details, implying her sister made a secret, risky decision. Alice offers a terrifyingly pleasant laugh while thanking the wizard, leaving Liliana in a state of absolute fear. The child hopes for the best, but realizes that her sister's actions have led to an inevitable scolding. Liliana reacts with a sweaty face and wide eyes, dreading the scolding Regina will receive. A chibi Liliana screams for everyone to flee over a view of the town's buildings. The scene cuts to Amelia, who is confused and scratching her head, unaware of the drama. Promotional text appears regarding the official website and availability of the latest chapter. Sparkling light transitions the scene to a beautiful sunset sky reflecting over the ocean waves. Liliana grumbles while resting on the broad shoulder of the warrior carrying her home. Leopold carries the sleeping child alongside Alice, with Marius trailing behind them at sunset. Marius greets the waking Liliana with a broad, teasing smile as she opens her eyes. Alice asks if she slept well while the child looks at the unfamiliar surroundings in confusion. Liliana remains blushing and quiet as she rests against the strong back of her rescuer. A flashback shows the wizard Francois waving goodbye as he departs to attend to work. The child recalls playing happily on the beach before she eventually drifted off to sleep. Liliana panics upon realizing she drooled on Leopold and offers a flustered apology to him. A close-up view focuses on the warrior's feet as the group continues their evening walk. Alice informs Leopold they have arrived and suggests the men leave them to walk home. Alice explains that their all-female household would feel awkward hosting men, and Marius apologizes. Liliana experiences a sudden drop as she begins to slide down from the warrior's back. After being placed on the ground, Liliana laments the loss of her high-up view.
Alice turns to the blonde emperor, addressing him with polite finality as they prepare to part.
Leopold blushes and hesitates, clearly having something he wants to say to the blonde woman.
Marius whistles and suggests another meeting, making Alice blush and Leopold look away in embarrassment. Liliana stomps on the ground and tells Marius to stop being so forward with her sister. Marius pats the child's head and dismisses her protests with a playful and mocking frown. Liliana's blue eyes widen with fury as she demands that the man stop mimicking her. The child calls Marius names like lizard and goat pig while he laughs at her insults.
Marius playfully swings the child by her hands, causing her to scream in a chibi state.
Liliana insists she is not a kid, but the blonde man remains entirely unimpressed. Marius uses a logical trap to prove she is a child, causing her to tear up. Liliana begins to cry loudly, forcing her sister to intervene and console the upset child.
Marius tries to apologize to the sobbing child while Alice sets a date for their next meeting.
Text bubbles emphasize Liliana's frustration as she calls Marius a bad and childish man.
Liliana vows to strike back at the Emperor if she ever grows up to be strong.
A final declaration of intent appears as the child promises to hit him first someday.
The logo for the series is shown in a decorative and ornate Korean script.
Leopold scolds Marius for upsetting the child, while the Emperor claims it was all for fun. Marius reminds Leopold that his actions help secure a future meeting with the woman he likes.
A side profile captures the blonde man's arrogant and satisfied expression as he walks away.
Leopold blushes intensely as the narration confirms his immediate and profound attraction to Alice. A mental image shows Alice knitting peacefully, representing the target of the warrior's newfound affection. Marius finds the idea of Leopold's subordinate seeing him in this love-struck state hilarious. A close-up focuses on a single, striking teal eye looking towards something in surprise.
The men walk away under the sunset, agreeing that their chance meeting was a fortunate event.
A massive ship with elaborate sails cuts through the sea under a bright, clear sky.
Narrative text details the reasons for their early arrival in the town of Trabantia.
Leopold is depicted in his military regalia, highlighting his reputation as a formidable human weapon.
Marius is shown seated on a throne after a violent struggle against his own brothers. Despite their high status, the two men chose to explore the town without an escort.
The two powerful men look around with blank, confused expressions in a simplified art style.
Standing in a deserted street, they realize they have become lost in the coastal town. Marius decides they should keep walking in hopes of finding a way back to their path. Marius notes the surprisingly high standard of living in Trabantia despite its strict isolationist policy. Marius explains a war with Trabantia would cause the empire massive losses, and Leopold agrees. Marius describes the country's psychic population while a young girl effortlessly carries a massive wooden crate. Looking at the beautiful coastal town, the blonde man thinks about how rich and peaceful it is.
Internal narration questions what conqueror in the world could possibly resist wanting to own such a place.
Marius suggests diplomatic relations over conquest to secure wealth, then hears a sudden joyful scream nearby.
Marius stops walking to stare at a playground, surprised to find such a place in this town. Leopold thinks the playground looks fun, while Marius wonders why children find swinging so intensely exciting.
The dark-haired child Liliana holds onto the swing chains tightly as she enjoys the sunny day.
Liliana screams with delight while swinging, and the blonde man watches her with a focused gaze. A side view shows the child's chubby, blushing cheek as she enjoys her time at the playground.
Liliana laughs with pure joy while an internal thought bubble hints at a future tragic revelation.
A dark-haired man stands near a calendar while thinking about his own inevitable and upcoming death.
The man thinks about his children while Marius identifies Liliana as being a child of the Berkios.
Leopold questions the Berkio name while Marius reveals he learned something important before arriving in town. Leopold asks if they are the prestigious political family while Liliana swings wildly in the background. Leopold wonders why a promising politician like Andrea Berkio would suddenly give up everything for the countryside. Thought bubbles express surprise at a high-ranking politician choosing to retire to a simple rural life. Leopold turns around and is startled to realize that Marius has suddenly vanished from his side.
Pale, slender hands reach out toward the blue-dressed child as a bright light begins to fill the scene.
A close-up captures Liliana's large, galaxy-like blue eye as she reacts with sudden and intense surprise. Liliana gasps in shock while narration questions why such a lovely child had to suffer so much. Liliana looks bewildered as she swings while Marius stands behind her and prepares to offer his assistance. A close-up shows the blonde man's gentle smile as he is officially identified as Marius Kemmelhofen. Looking up at the child, Marius asks if she is having fun and offers to push her higher. Liliana cheers with excitement, shouting that she wants to go even higher up into the air. Blushing with sudden happiness, the blonde man laughs and agrees to help the child swing even higher.
Under the moonlight, a heated argument occurs regarding a decision made about the youngest sister's welfare.
Alice scolds her sister for not consulting the family, while a guilty Regina apologizes for her distraction. Alice argues that meeting a genius magician like Francois Cassel is a great opportunity for the family.
Regina is startled as Alice firmly declares that Liliana is not a lab rat to be experimented on.
Shouting echoes through the house as Regina defends her calculations and the validity of her research papers.
Lying in her dark room, a blushing and tearful Liliana listens to her sisters arguing in the distance. Liliana blames herself for the family's conflict, wishing she were stronger so they wouldn't have to worry.
The child's hand grips a stuffed bunny tightly as she tries to comfort herself during the night.
Hugging her plushie, Liliana calls out for Cookie and wonders if her big sister will return soon.
The dark-haired sister, Regina, places her hands on Alice's shoulders, attempting to console her during their confrontation.
A close-up shows the young child's face, red from crying as she struggles with her internal guilt. Tears well up in Liliana's eyes as she lies awake, feeling the weight of her family's sacrifices.
A beautiful morning sun rises over the white domed buildings and palm trees of the coastal town.
Sunlight streams through a window as Alice calls out to wake up her youngest sister for the day.
Alice gently tells the drooling, sleeping child to wake up while Liliana remains deeply lost in slumber. In a chibi state, the exhausted child lets out a tired groan as she tries to ignore her sister.
Alice insists that Liliana must wake up, wash her face, and get ready for an important meeting.
Liliana clings to her stuffed rabbit and begs to sleep a little longer, much to Alice's annoyance.
Alice forcefully pulls the blanket away while a screaming Liliana desperately tries to stay in her bed. Now awake, a messy-haired Liliana hungrily eats a large piece of bread covered in red strawberry jam.
Alice styles the child's hair while explaining they are going to meet the handsome silver-haired man again.
Liliana is horrified by the news, imagining the wizard's return while Alice finishes preparing her for the day.
Liliana fakes a stomachache to avoid leaving, but Alice sternly warns her not to lie about being sick. Liliana insistently claims she is truly sick and should be resting in bed.
Alice stares with an intense and foreboding expression, her face shadowed by growing irritation.
Intimidated by her sister's glare, Liliana quickly changes her mind and claims she's fine.
Thought bubbles recall meeting the man yesterday and express dread at meeting him again.
Alice looks through the glass door, telling the child to eat quickly for their departure.
A thought bubble expresses the child's resignation toward the current and unavoidable situation.
Francois Cassel appears with a serene, closed-eye smile while surrounded by a sparkling, flowery aura.
Alice tells Liliana to endure the strange taste of the purple liquid for her health.
Liliana is horrified to see that her supposedly normal grape juice is actively bubbling.
The child questions if this poor quality drink is actually healthy while pouting at Alice.
Alice explains that effective medicine for the body is always supposed to taste very bad. Narrative text identifies Alice as a scholar of supernatural abilities who frequently handles magical potions. Liliana realized the drink contains magic while Alice questions her previous lack of awareness.
Liliana shouts that she wants nothing to do with the potion or the meal.
Alice tells the little one to drink quickly despite the child's vocal and visible disgust.
Liliana notices that the purple liquid lacks the familiar and sweet scent of grape juice. Hoping to avoid a scolding, the child resolves to take just one small sip.
Liliana gaggingly rejects the potion, screaming that she cannot possibly finish the entire glass.
Alice urges her to bear with it while the child screams her absolute refusal.
Liliana shouts that she does not need to be healthier and will not drink it. Alice pleads with the child to hang on just a little longer until it's over.
A tearful and hiccuping Liliana is forced to take a small sip of the liquid.
Liliana cries and grimaces as the glass is tilted toward her mouth for another sip.
Liliana begs to stop, claiming she would rather receive a shot than drink anymore. Francois insists she finish the drink as the child lets out a loud, miserable wail.
A large speech bubble captures the child's loud declaration of hatred toward her older sister.
A flustered Alice tries to calm the screaming child who continues to shout her refusal.
In a chibi state, Liliana grabs her food and runs away from the dinner table.
Liliana slams her waffles down on a nearby table, huffing with pure childish rage. Liliana buries her face in her arms, crying that she will never forgive Alice's betrayal. Liliana laments that she never would have come if she knew about the bad taste.
Francois approaches the pouting child, his boots appearing as he calls out her name gently.
Alice apologizes and asks Liliana to calm down while piteously stroking her dark hair.
Liliana huffs and declares she will never forgive her sister for the awful experience.
Francois places a strawberry shortcake on the table as a peace offering for the child.
Alice reacts with surprise as the wizard offers an apology and a gift to Liliana.
Francois hopes the cake makes her feel better while looking at her with a smile.
Liliana's blue eyes sparkle with awe as she looks up at the handsome silver-haired man.
Liliana admits to herself that the man is incredibly handsome despite his previous behavior.
A small chibi image shows the child's sudden shock at her own wavering resolve.
Liliana pouts and crosses her arms, telling herself a face and cake aren't enough. Francois snaps his fingers, summoning a swirl of golden magical energy before the young girl.
The magical light reflects in Liliana's large eye as she watches the spell unfold.
A white squirrel creature suddenly appears, surprising the child as it sits on the table.
Squirrels dance and jump through the air amidst a shower of falling acorns and light.
Liliana watches with pure joy, her eyes sparkling as the squirrel performs a cute dance.
A close-up shows the white squirrel posing cutely while someone reaches out to pet it.
Francois invites her to make up, and Liliana accidentally agrees before panicking at her slip-up.
Liliana eats a small cake with a strawberry, looking surprised and pleased by the taste.
Francois explains the medicine's bad taste while Liliana continues eating her cake happily.
Alice watches Liliana eat cake, appearing relieved as the child's mood finally improves.
Alice narrows her eyes while a quiet sound effect suggests a sudden, focused realization.
Francois warns Alice about potential side effects and suggests rest for the young child.
The silver-haired wizard mentions his short stay due to work commitments in the town.
Alice asks Francois to check on Liliana weekly as part of their established contract. Francois agrees to the request, noting that he must fulfill the terms of their agreement. A sinister smile appears on the wizard's face as he looks toward the young child.
Liliana pauses her eating, looking slightly confused by a sudden change in the atmosphere.
Francois addresses Liliana while she looks at him with a mix of curiosity and wariness. Liliana experiences a flash of intense fear as she notices the wizard's cold yellow eyes.
Francois declares his desire for her to grow up healthy while looking down at her. Alice turns around as they prepare to leave the cafe and return home together. Alice and Liliana walk through their front door, the child still looking somewhat dazed.
Liliana lets out a heavy sigh, feeling exhausted from the day's many stressful encounters.
A thought bubble expresses the child's relief at finally returning to the safety of home.
Liliana thinks about how scary Francois' expression was, her blue eyes filled with lingering dread.
A shadowy image of Francois sitting at the table lingers in the young child's memory.
Liliana grips the door handle, noting that her sister Regina is currently at home.
The child peeks through a doorway and spots Regina standing in her bedroom.
Liliana asks Regina what she is doing as the blonde woman looks toward her.
Regina stands in her room, which is cluttered with luggage and various personal items.
Regina asks Liliana for help choosing between 2 dresses for an upcoming meeting. Alice enters the room and asks who Regina is meeting, startling the blonde woman.
Regina admits she is meeting a man while Alice questions why she is so nervous. A pile of discarded dresses covers Regina's bed, highlighting her indecision about her outfit.
Chibi Liliana realizes that Regina's unusual behavior is a reaction to her romantic interest. Narrative text describes Regina's beautiful eyes as the scene focuses on her lovely features. Narration explains Regina's distinct interest in romance compared to her 2 other sisters.
A vision of Regina surrounded by flowers appears while men attempt to win her affection. Images of gifts like cookies and sweets appear, though they never captured Regina's attention.
Regina describes her date as a decent man, while Alice questions her genuine feelings.
Regina excitedly confirms her interest, leaving Alice surprised by her sister's proactive romantic pursuit.
Alice selects a white dress for Regina while Liliana asks who the mysterious man is.
Regina joyfully reveals she is meeting Leopold, the man they encountered at the bait. Liliana screams in shock at the revelation of her sister's chosen date for the evening.
The child holds her face in disbelief, her eyes wide with overwhelming surprise and confusion. The child expresses her extreme disbelief and shock at the unexpected news about Leopold. Leopold and Alice are shown as opposing military commanders in a past or future war. Narrative text explains the fall of Trebantia and the loss of the eldest sister's life.
A dark-haired man stands over a fallen warrior, identified as the person who killed Alice. Liliana realizes that a relationship between Regina and Leopold could prevent the future war.
The child's eyes sparkle with hope as she considers the possibility of a peaceful future.
Liliana collapses onto the bed while her sisters watch her with expressions of concern.
Alice asks Liliana why she is so excited, noticing the child's red and flushed face.
Alice sits on the bed next to the child, looking at her with growing suspicion.
Alice places her hand on Liliana's forehead, confirming that the young child has a fever.
A chibi Liliana questions why she needs medicine as she feels her temperature rising.
Alice carries the flushed child, explaining that her fever requires immediate care and rest.
Liliana touches her forehead and admits she finally feels the rising heat of her fever.
Alice holds her young sister close, finally getting her to acknowledge her poor physical state.
Under the moonlight, Regina carries the sick child through the quiet streets toward the local clinic.
Struggling for breath, Liliana feels guilty because her illness ruined her sister's excitement for her date.
Liliana worries that Regina's concern for her will prevent her from meeting Leopold as planned.
The child sniffles and wonders why she keeps falling sick despite her best efforts to stay strong. A shadow falls over Leopold's face as he holds a beautiful bouquet of blue and white flowers.
Leopold returns to the room where Marius is packing, prompting the Emperor to ask if he was rejected.
Leopold dejectedly reveals he was stood up, leaving a shocked Marius to wonder what happened.
Leopold's profile is shown as he recalls being asked if he currently has a wife or fiancé.
A single speech bubble confirms the man's bachelor status against a warm, sparkling background.
Regina hears Liliana crying and apologizes to Leopold, explaining she must go check on her sister.
Blushing, Regina suggests they reschedule their meeting at the cafe for 3 days from now.
Softly lit flowers accompany the man's thought about his lack of experience in understanding women. Leopold stands alone in the shadows, questioning if he was mistaken about her initial interest in him.
Looking at the flowers, Leopold concludes that her absence after 3 hours of waiting sends a clear message.
Marius looks at his subordinate with a mix of pity and disbelief at his sudden romantic despair. Marius points out they only met once, but Leopold insists his feelings are already deeply ignited.
Marius mocks Leopold's teenage behavior before reminding him to get ready for the arrival of their guide.
A large suitcase sits on the floor while narration questions the early arrival of Francois Cassel.
Leopold notes that the wizard was expected later for a loyalty oath but arrived early for personal business.
Leopold wonders if the wizard's mysterious business bothers the emperor, looking at him with curious green eyes.
Marius assumes it is personal or research-related while secretly admitting he knows the wizard's true intentions.
A sudden knock startles the men, prompting Marius to go greet their guide while Leopold finishes packing.
Leopold quickly finishes his tasks and opens the door to find their escort waiting for them. Leopold introduces himself formally to the woman as Marius watches from the background.
Marius greets the woman with a cheerful smile, introducing himself as he reaches out to her.
A close-up captures Alice's striking blue eye as she looks toward the two men. Marius maintains a pleasant expression as he officially meets the woman who will guide them.
The black-haired woman is formally identified as Alice Berkia while she stands before the emperor.
Marius stares at Alice with wide eyes, seemingly taken aback by her presence and appearance.
Marius thinks to himself that her voice is surprisingly soft despite her cold and stern first impression.
The scene focuses on the blonde man's intense gaze as he observes his new escort.
Alice looks off to the side, her expression unreadable as the journey begins. Alice asks if they know her sister, and Marius explains they met her by chance at the beach. Marius teases Leopold about almost dating Regina, causing the warrior to stiffen at the mention of her name. The morning light shines over the coastal town as the group travels together. A horse-drawn carriage carries the trio through the sun-drenched streets of the town. The three travel in silence inside the carriage, the atmosphere feeling somewhat formal and tense. Marius leans his head on his hand, looking out of the window with a thoughtful expression. Alice sits across from them with her eyes closed, maintaining a calm and professional demeanor.
Narrative text describes the Berchio family's history of producing politicians and soldiers who fight on the front lines.
Marius thinks that sending a direct descendant to protect him represents the sincere hospitality of Trabantia.
Alice suddenly asks how Liliana's doing, catching the men off guard with the personal question.
Alice reveals Liliana is hospitalized with a high fever, causing a shocked Leopold to realize why he was stood up. Marius feels a surge of excitement, realizing his subordinate wasn't actually rejected by the woman he likes.
Alice explains that Liliana's fever returns every night, making it difficult to give a certain update on her health.
Alice shifts the conversation, asking the men if they enjoyed their tour of the coastal town.
Marius jokes that the town's beauty makes his plans difficult, leaving Alice confused by his cryptic words.
Marius looks toward Alice, thinking about his original plan to choose a marriage partner based solely on politics.
Alice notes that it is difficult to choose because everyone is so beautiful.
A thought bubble mentions the political marriage and the soul pledge within the peace agreement. Marius explains that a soul pledge ends if either he or someone from Trabantia dies. Smirking, Marius remarks that mixing bloodlines creates a bond that lasts for a long time. Alice turns to the man and asks if he has any specific requirements for his partner. Marius considers a candidate from a prestigious political family who shares his specific mindset.
Narrative text notes the hint of playfulness in his voice as the scene focuses on her eye.
The blonde man leans forward thoughtfully while a military silhouette appears behind him in the light.
Alice observes that he is a man who reached the top through the blood of his brothers.
Marius thinks about being devoured by his opponent if he gets distracted for even a moment.
Alice looks directly at the emperor, preparing to offer her professional opinion on the matter. Alice is startled as Marius suggests that she herself is a perfect match for him. Narration explains that Trabantia has few individuals capable of adding power to the royal bloodline. The carriage wheel turns as the group continues their journey through the sun-drenched town. Alice sits in the carriage with a serene smile, framed by a soft floral background. A close-up highlights Alice's gentle expression as she looks ahead with bright blue eyes. At dawn, the scene shifts to the medical clinic where a sick child is sleeping soundly. Regina frantically demands to know what Alice gave Lily to eat after she met Francois.
Regina fears something will go wrong, but Alice insists the pain is part of the process.
A close-up shows the flushed child crying and sniffing while she struggles with her high fever.
Liliana opens her eyes for a moment, her blue galaxy-like iris looking tired and heavy.
Regina sits by her sister's bed, staying awake through the night to watch over her. Tears drip onto Regina's clasped hands as she prays for the young girl's recovery.
Liliana hopes that her sisters will stop crying when she finally recovers and gets better. Now healthy, Liliana cheers and runs around happily while wearing a pretty green dress.
Alice scolds the child for leaving alone, but Liliana insists she isn't a baby anymore.
Liliana feels guilty that Regina missed her date with Leopold because of her sudden illness.
Narrative text suggests that the original story's devastating war might not actually occur this time. Liliana wonders who the male leads will marry if the original story disappears completely. The child realizes that if Marius falls in love with a peaceful woman, war might be avoided.
Terrified by a vision of the Emperor, Liliana hopes he meets someone truly right for him.
Liliana considers Leopold a great man and hopes he and Regina can still be together. A romantic vision shows Leopold and Regina meeting on the beach under a clear blue sky.
Liliana sighs as she tries to figure out how to get the two to meet again.
Liliana arrives at the playground and is surprised to see someone already waiting there. Marius and Leopold spot the child and excitedly ask if she is finally feeling better.
Liliana is paralyzed with shock as Marius notes she has lost weight from her illness.
Marius waves cheerfully, claiming their encounter at the park is a wonderful and lucky coincidence.
A promotional illustration features a blue-haired character wearing a white hot and stylish sunglasses. Amelia yawns as a bright morning sun begins to rise over the quiet coastal town.
Alice prepares to find Liliana, worrying that something might happen to the child alone.
Alice tells Amelia that she will go look for the child herself this morning.
Amelia tells Alice to take a break today since she cared for Liliana all night.
Amelia admits she wanted to go to the library to research some interesting papers. Amelia lets out a tired sound as she drifts off to sleep on the sofa.
Alice tells Amelia to go inside and rest, but Amelia insists on trying to stay up.
Alice places her hands on Amelia's shoulders, looking down at her with a concerned expression. Alice leans close to her sister and asks if anything is currently bothering her.
A close-up shows Amelia's hand reaching up as she softly calls out to her sister.
Amelia looks up at Alice with a blushing, dazed expression while lying on the couch. Alice looks skeptical and questions if her sister is really interested in the man.
Regina's eye reflects her deep thoughts about the man she met by chance today.
A close-up focuses on the mouth of a man speaking during a quiet conversation. Leopold blushes intensely, his expression showing clear signs of embarrassment and secret romantic interest.
The warrior looks away awkwardly, sweating slightly as he tries to maintain his calm composure.
Regina recalls a request for another meeting while standing in a soft, glowing light.
Regina dismisses her worries, telling Alice that destiny will eventually bring them together again. A serene smile touches Regina's face as she loses herself in a pleasant daydream.
Regina pushes her sister away, asking for grilled chicken from Aunt Olga's pub, while Alice agrees.
Alice reaches out and firmly grasps the metal door handle as she prepares to leave.
Alice is startled to find Liliana standing at the door instead of playing outside.
Liliana looks up at her older sister with a look of extreme, wide-eyed shock. Alice asks why Liliana is back already, noting her previous excitement for the playground trip.
Regina peeks over Alice's shoulder and spots a blushing Leopold standing in the hallway. Regina's mouth drops open in utter shock upon seeing the man she was thinking about. Regina's heart races as she whispers Leopold's name, her cheeks turning a bright pink.
Leopold stares back at her, looking equally flustered and caught off guard by the encounter.
A close-up captures Regina's eye, which is wide with panic and overwhelming sudden surprise. Regina is mortified to realize she is in pajamas with messy hair in front of Leopold.
The blonde woman's world spins as she becomes paralyzed with embarrassment over her disheveled state.
Alice holds the child while Leopold stands nearby, looking incredibly awkward and uncomfortable.
Liliana explains she brought Leopold and Marius home because they were hungry, lost, and broke.
A voice off-screen notes the unexpected nature of their meeting as Alice remains completely stunned. Marius waves with a bright smile, playfully addressing the black-haired woman as Miss Alice.
Alice is fuming with a dark, menacing aura as she glares at the smiling emperor.
A massive sigh erupts from the house as narration questions what exactly Liliana brought home.
Liliana leads the group inside while Regina follows, having quickly changed into a pretty dress. Regina tells the little one she shouldn't run in the restaurant while carrying her at.
Liliana tells Alice she knows the rules and insists her sister sit down at the table.
Regina and Leopold sit side by side, radiating an intense and awkward tension while Liliana watches.
The pair avoids direct eye contact, their faces flushed as they struggle to find words.
Alice mentions that Regina likes lilacs, causing a sweating Leopold to look even more flustered.
Liliana beams with joy as the warrior looks at her with a shocked, wide-eyed expression.
Liliana reflects on her matchmaking efforts while walking with the awkward couple earlier that morning.
Liliana declares Leopold is handsome, and Regina asks if the child likes him as well.
Liliana imagines the two as a romantic couple with herself acting as a little Cupid.
Resting her chin on her hands, Liliana thinks about Leopold becoming her new brother-in-law.
A diagram suggests that a union between the two would decrease the risk of war. Another graphic claims a peaceful future would increase the chances of survival for big sister Alice. Liliana envisions a beautiful wedding ceremony where Regina and Leopold finally exchange their vows.
The child's imagination continues with the vision of a cute baby wrapped in white lace.
Liliana shouts with pure joy at the wonderful prospect of finally becoming an aunt.
Alice delivers a sharp chop to the child's head, prompting an exclamation of pain from Liliana.
Alice asks the laughing emperor if he intends to continue his relentless teasing of Regina.
Marius leans his head on his hand, watching the scene with a smug, amused expression.
The emperor turns his attention to Liliana, his green eyes sparkling as he begins to speak.
Marius looks directly at Alice and suggests that the young child should act as Cupid.
Alice looks at him with wide, glowing blue eyes as she listens to his bold words.
Smirking, Marius asks if the child will help find a match for her eldest sister instead. A blonde woman stands in a library or shop, looking surprised by someone's sudden appearance.
Amelia spots Francois in the library and demands to know why he is there.
Francois explains that the National Library for Magic is a dream for every wizard.
The silver-haired man turns back toward Amelia and asks about her reasons for being there.
Amelia focuses her blue eyes as she prepares to change the subject of their conversation. Francois notes her interest in healing magic while she admits it is only slight.
Francois offers to recommend better books, and Amelia eagerly accepts his help on the subject.
The two stand on a library balcony surrounded by towering shelves of old books. As Amelia reaches for a book, Francois asks if she shares his specific interests. Amelia surprises the silver-haired wizard by suddenly handing him a small stack of books. Francois struggles to hold the books and asks how she knew his research area.
Amelia explains her reasoning while Francois notes her strong interest in the specific topic. Francois enjoys talking about his interests, while Amelia notes how much he has relaxed recently. Francois states he won't recommend books if she only needs them for quick reference. Chibi Francois holds 8 books as Amelia mentions the borrowing limit for outsiders.
Amelia says goodbye and leaves as Francois lets out a small sound of surprise.
Francois suddenly grabs Amelia's waist, startling her as she prepares to walk away.
Amelia turns around with a look of annoyance and asks what he wants. Francois smiles brightly and says he must respond because she recommended the books.
Amelia looks away with a sigh, stating that there is no need for him to feel grateful.
Francois suggests a professional meal to improve relations, while Amelia looks at him skeptically. A thought bubble reveals that Francois is not actually hungry despite his suggestion.
Francois looks at Amelia, thinking she is a talent worth keeping close to him.
Narration identifies her as Andrea Berchio's sibling, tied to an unbreakable, magical deal.
A close-up of the silver-haired man's mouth shows him forming a pleasant, practiced smile. Francois maintains his charming smile and insists on treating the woman to a meal.
The wizard's eyes narrow slightly while he continues to put on a charming front.
Amelia thinks to herself that almost nobody would be able to resist a face like his.
Francois considers that Andrea's sibling is ultimately no different than any other person.
Amelia lets out a sharp sound of disgust as she glares at the wizard.
Amelia calls his smile unpleasant, leaving a shocked Francois sweating in confusion at her.
Amelia warns the man that she has been wanting to correct his behavior.
Amelia suggests he call her Mila if her full name is too long for him. Amelia leans over the silver-haired man and points her finger directly at him.
Amelia rejects him, stating he isn't her type and his seduction is pointless. Francois suggests they decide one thing, and Amelia proposes they mutually use each other.
Amelia tells him to stop wasting time on seduction that won't work on her. Narrative text explains her eyes hold no attraction, only a look of pure disdain. Amelia laughs and calls him pathetic, while Francois realizes she is difficult to charm.
A thought bubble expresses Francois' shock at her total lack of interest in him.
A soft, light-filled gradient provides a brief transition before the next scene begins. Sunlight bathes the quiet coastal town as the scene shifts to an outdoor cafe.
Inside a cafe, Amelia wonders how he knew about her before quickly stopping herself.
Amelia eats fries and claims she is just the sharpest person in town.
Francois tells Amelia to speak however she likes as she eats a large burger.
A thought bubble confirms that charm tactics are completely ineffective against the blonde woman. Narrative text notes that being rejected like this is a very rare experience. Francois thinks the situation is troublesome as a nearby woman blushes at his beauty.
Francois rests his head on his hand, radiating a handsome and sparkly aura.
A nearby patron's heart pounds with attraction as she falls for the wizard's charms.
A man asks his companion why she is acting so strangely as she hides. Francois questions if his charm tactics failed because the woman across from him is strange.
As the silver-haired man leans in, the blonde woman reacts with a look of visible, shivering disgust.
Francois cheerily suggests the woman carry digestive aids since his presence apparently makes her feel sick.
The blonde woman sits in silence, frustrated that the wizard's charm attempts are still continuing.
The silver-haired man rests his chin on his hands, looking satisfied with his progress.
Francois leans in close to the woman, remarking on her unique personality during their meal.
A sharp exclamation demands to know what the man just said to the woman.
The black-haired woman narrows her eyes, looking increasingly skeptical of the blonde man's behavior.
The blonde man laughs heartily with his head in his hand, looking incredibly pleased.
The young girl looks up with a confused expression, wondering about the mention of Cupid.
A thought bubble expresses confusion over the sudden and unexpected mention of the matchmaker role. The black-haired woman stares as the child wonders if she is meant to help her. Alice fumes silently while Liliana watches the laughing emperor, confused by the shift in atmosphere.
Alice offers to order food while the child looks at the menu with wide eyes.
Marius surprises the child by suggesting they order every single item available on the menu. The child is paralyzed with shock as the laughing man begins ordering a massive feast.
Marius calls over a server to place their order while Alice and Liliana walk in.
Liliana realizes the order includes all the forbidden desserts her older sisters never let her eat.
Marius nods with a smug, knowing smile as the child looks at him with pure admiration. The scene shifts to the sunny courtyard where Marius' joyful laughter echoes through the air.
Liliana beams with happiness as she digs into a plate of delicious star-topped spaghetti.
Alice eats her meal calmly while the child happily enjoys her food at the table.
Chewing happily, Liliana recalls how Marius even asked for the extra desserts to be packed.
A close-up captures the child's bright, starry blue eye as she watches her companions. Leopold cuts his steak while Liliana watches, thinking about the potential romance between her sister.
A plate features a perfectly sliced steak accompanied by fresh asparagus and a sparkling glow. Regina looks surprised and touched as Leopold presents her with a plate of sliced meat.
Leopold blushes while serving Regina, who smiles warmly at his unexpectedly thoughtful and attentive gesture.
A thought bubble notes that the pair is successfully getting closer during the group meal.
Liliana giggles behind her hand, satisfied with how well her matchmaking plan is currently proceeding.
Leopold offers to cut the meat for the child, who accepts with an excited exclamation.
A close-up shows the intense, focused green eye of the man as he handles the food. Looking at her plate, the child notes the meat portion seems smaller than she expected.
Liliana recalls a version of the man who seemed much taller and more imposing before.
Leopold remains focused on carefully cutting the child's food while she watches him with interest.
Leopold passes a freshly prepared plate to the child, who thanks the skilled swordsman excitedly. Alice notices Liliana humming happily as she enjoys her food, seemingly lost in her own world. Liliana stops eating as she spots a vegetable on her plate that she wanted to avoid. The child groans, realizing she can't hide the carrot because her older sister is watching.
Marius laughs as he watches the child struggle with the vegetable she is forced to eat.
Marius leans over and uses his own fork to take the vegetable from the child's plate. Alice and Liliana are both stunned as they watch the man eat the child's unwanted vegetable. Liliana is shocked to realize the man is actually eating the carrot to help her out. A thought bubble notes that the man's behavior is unexpectedly different and much kinder today.
Marius winks at the child, who reacts with a deadpan look of confusion and slight suspicion. Marius gives a cheerful thumbs up and a wink, asking the child for her approval. Liliana feels a sudden wave of exhaustion, looking completely unimpressed by the man's flashy antics.
Liliana sighs and heads for the restroom as Marius demands praise and Alice asks if she's fine.
Regina stands to accompany the child, who claims she is all grown up and independent now.
Regina laughs and playfully insists on coming along while praising how much the child has grown.
Regina and Liliana walk off together, leaving the others to wait for their eventual return. Alice eats her meal in silence while keeping a watchful eye on her royal companions.
A serene expression settles on Alice's face as she enjoys the brief moment of peace. A close-up of Alice's eye reveals her sharp focus on the man across from her.
Alice tells Marius that he made a mistake by approaching her youngest sister today.
Marius pauses his meal to look at Alice with a calm and measured expression.
Marius clarifies that his intentions were harmless and he only wanted to say hello.
Alice glares skeptically at Marius, questioning his sincerity and true identity during their conversation. Alice asks if he has an answer for what he can provide her in exchange.
Marius smiles while stating he will bypass negotiations and present his final offer immediately.
Alice remains cautious and demands to know the specific nature of his sudden proposal.
Marius prepares to deliver a revelation that will change the entire tone of their meeting.
An intense shock hits Alice as the Emperor's words create a heavy, dark atmosphere.
A close-up captures Alice's eye widening as she processes a piece of unexpected information.
A single stunned question echoes through the air as Alice reels from the sudden revelation.
The dining table falls silent as Alice and Marius face each other in heavy tension. Alice wonders how Marius knows about the child's chronic illness and its rare hidden cause.
Marius lifts his wine glass as if toasting to the unsettling knowledge he just shared. Alice's mind races as she questions how this man could have discovered their family's secret.
Marius takes a slow sip of wine, appearing entirely comfortable with the discomfort he caused.
The man exhales with satisfaction, clearly pleased with the advantage he now holds over her. Marius begins to describe the current state of affairs and the child's uncertain future. The scene briefly shifts to the empty restroom door as the conversation continues elsewhere.
Marius claims that the child's condition makes it unlikely she will live past 15 years.
A dark prompt reminds Alice that she must be fully aware of the child's fate.
A chibi character in a witch outfit waves cheerfully during a brief story break.
Liliana returns to the table and chirps about feeling refreshed after finishing her meal.
The child notices the strange, heavy mood between the adults and wonders what happened.
Liliana looks at Alice's dark expression and suspects Marius did something while she was gone.
Glaring at Marius, the child tries to figure out how he upset her eldest sister.
Marius suddenly breaks the tension with a loud, cheerful greeting directed at the young child.
Liliana is caught off guard by the man's sudden shift back to his playful persona. Noticing Alice's irritation, Liliana decides she must be on her best behavior to avoid trouble. The child considers her options while remaining wary of the adult's complex and tense interactions. Liliana hesitates, her face showing signs of the inner conflict she feels about the atmosphere.
The entire group sits together at the table, though an underlying awkwardness still remains present. An illustration of a grand circus tent appears as the conversation shifts to local entertainment.
Liliana panics, sensing her older sister's intense gaze fixed on her for an unknown reason.
Fearing she might be scolded, the child shivers and regrets bringing up the circus trip.
Marius reaches out and gently pats the child's head, surprising her with his sudden kindness.
Marius enthusiastically promises to take the child to the circus, much to her surprise and delight.
Liliana's eyes light up as she asks for a firm promise to visit the circus.
Marius laughs and promises they will go as soon as everyone has finished their lunch.
Liliana recalls a friend's recommendation about how fun the circus was during a previous visit.
Liliana starts eating rapidly to finish while Marius warns she might get a stomachache.
The child urges everyone to hurry so they don't miss any of the circus performances.
Liliana grabs Alice's hand and drags her toward the exit while Alice urges her patience.
The child shouts with excitement, demanding that they move faster to reach the circus tech. Alice warns the child to slow down, fearing she might trip and fall while rushing.
Liliana reluctantly admits her sister is right, though she still feels a desperate sense of urgency.
The child eats broccoli reluctantly, thinking about how she patiently waited for the long meal to finally end.
A sudden movement occurs as two hands reach out in a sharp, clashing motion against the blue background.
Alice chases after the sprinting child, shouting for Liliana to stop immediately and follow her instead of running.
Liliana races through the town, eagerly thinking about seeing the fire show her friend Vicky had previously mentioned.
A thought bubble asks if the performers really breathe fire as Alice continues her desperate pursuit of the child.
Beaming with joy, Liliana thinks about how she can finally brag to her friends about seeing the circus herself.
A large hand firmly grasps the child's small hand in a sudden effort to stop her reckless, rapid movement.
The child pulls away, insisting she doesn't need to be caught, while Alice demands she stop right there.
Liliana sprints toward a horse-drawn carriage as the world around her seems to spin in a chaotic, dizzying blur.
A chibi character watches in shock as a loud shout for Liliana echoes across the sunny, dangerous street.
A dark, textured scene captures the child's regret as she realizes she should have listened to her sister's warnings.
Liliana drifts through an oppressive darkness, lamenting that she might die this way instead of from her original story.
Drifting further into the void, the child expresses a final hope that if death comes, it will be painless.
Liliana opens one eye in the darkness, wondering why her heart is beating with such a loud, rhythmic thumping.
A close-up captures the child's wide blue eye as she wonders why she isn't feeling any pain despite the impact.
Alice lies on the ground, cradling Liliana in her arms to shield her from the collision with the carriage.
Bystanders gather around the fallen sisters, wondering what happened and questioning if the black-haired woman has fainted from shock.
Regina and the royal guards look on in horror as Alice remains motionless on the ground with the child.
Leopold frantically calls for Alice to open her eyes while Regina asks if the child is hurt anywhere. Sobbing uncontrollably, Liliana clings to her older sister, terrified that something might be terribly wrong after the accident.
The trembling child whispers for her sister, looking completely overwhelmed by fear as the adults crowd around them both.
A close-up shows Alice's face as she begins to stir, her head resting against the hard stone ground.
Alice suddenly awakens and sits up, startling Liliana as she pulls the crying child into a protective, firm embrace.
Alice's face is flushed with a mixture of relief and intense anger as she confronts the crying, startled child.
Liliana realizes she is about to be scolded for ignoring her sister's previous words and running into danger.
The child hides her face in her hands, bracing herself for the inevitable lecture about her reckless and disobedient actions.
Alice's hands reach out to check the child as she asks if she hit her head during the fall.
Alice frantically inspects the child, asking if her legs are fine while Regina watches them with a worried expression.
Alice shouts at the child, telling her how scared she was when she saw her run toward the carriage.
Liliana looks up with wide, shimmering eyes, realizing just how much her sister truly cares for her well-being today. Sobbing, the child apologizes to Alice, feeling immense guilt for the injuries her sister sustained while trying to protect her. Liliana continues to cry, lamenting that it was her fault Alice got hurt during the sudden, terrifying street accident.
Alice looks down with a gentle, weary smile and tells the sobbing child to calm down and stop crying.
The entire group kneels on the stone path, supporting the two sisters as they recover from the near-fatal incident.
Liliana sleeps soundly in her bed, clutching a stuffed animal after being exhausted by her long day of crying.
Leopold peeks into the quiet room, checking on the sleeping child while sunlight filters through the nearby window frame.
Alice, now bandaged and calm, tells Leopold to comfort the child well since she was so scared earlier today.
Narrative text expresses a deep sense of relief that Alice was not more seriously injured during the terrifying collision.
Marius laughs heartily, suggesting they proceed with a political marriage, while noting he likes the scar on Alice's face. Leopold looks completely baffled, his face sweating in confusion as he tries to process the Emperor's sudden, bizarre suggestion.
A close-up of Alice's sharp blue eye reveals her confusion as she questions what the Emperor means by his words.
Leopold looks at the Emperor with a worried expression as Marius insists they proceed with the unexpected, bold plan.
Alice looks focused and determined as she mentions the prospect of entering into a political marriage with the man.
Two hands clasped together against a dark background, representing the cold and pragmatic union between the two powerful individuals.
Narrative text notes that everyone says this child is very lovely, despite the complex and dangerous circumstances surrounding her.
A close-up shows Alice's face as she sweats slightly, her expression a mix of fatigue and a practiced, weary smile.
Narrative text asks if the observer is curious about the hidden meaning behind this specific child's bright, innocent smile.
A stylized family portrait shows Alice, Regina, and Liliana standing together before the looming dark silhouette of the Emperor. Sunlight bathes a quiet room as narrative text reveals Alice never intended to get married in her entire life.
Alice stands in the soft light of the window, looking thoughtful and resigned to the path she has chosen. A clenched fist rests on a surface, signifying a character's resolved and powerful ambition.
Liliana sleeps peacefully in her bed, tucked securely under a large and white quilt.
A close-up of Alice's blue eye reveals her intense and unwavering determination to succeed.
Liliana sleeps soundly while clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit toy tightly in her arms.
Leopold looks down with a solemn expression, his brow deeply furrowed in serious thought.
Alice lies still on the ground, her long black hair fanned out elegantly behind her.
Staring forward with sharp blue eyes, Alice states that protecting her family is her condition.
Internal narrative text reveals Alice's silent vow to prevent the tragic future at any cost.
A man's lower face is shown smiling as he sighs in reaction to the circumstances.
A thought bubble expresses frustration over eyes that seem ready for battle at any moment.
Leopold notes that she was very cautious at first while scratching the back of his head.
Maria smiles while observing that the child's safety clearly means a great deal to the woman.
A speech bubble firmly declares that nothing bad will ever happen to the child, Liliana. A thought bubble emphasizes that the existence of the child is considered incredibly precious to her.
A close-up shows Leopold's sturdy boots as he walks toward another room in the house.
Leopold thinks the child was likely terrified, while a caption notes he just laid her down. Leopold regrets not protecting the child first, acknowledging Alice's natural position as a guardian today.
Leopold enters the room and is startled to see Regina sitting alone on the sofa. Leopold blushes and stammers upon seeing Regina, whose name appears in a pink, sparkling border. Leopold looks at Regina with green eyes, his face flushed with a nervous red blush.
Leopold asks Regina if something is wrong, noticing her gloomy expression while she sits quietly.
Regina looks down sadly, her blonde hair falling around her face as she begins to speak.
Regina grips her skirt tightly and admits that she feels pathetic for her inability to help.
Leopold loudly protests that she isn't pathetic at all, startling the dejected woman with his intensity.
Regina laments that this is already the second time she failed to save the young child.
A montage of memories shows Regina's terrified face as she loses sight of her sister.
A small child runs through a bright void, symbolizing a painful moment of separation and loss. A memory shows Liliana wishing for power so her older sister wouldn't have been hurt. Thinking like that makes her feel pathetic, while Leopold watches her with a shocked expression.
Leopold stammers that he is not good at delicate matters, while a chibi Regina looks confused.
Leopold admits he isn't talented in anything else aside from fighting or protecting those he loves. Sitting beside the woman, Leopold suggests that everyone has things they are not good at doing.
Regina looks at Leopold with wide eyes, her face illuminated by a soft and warm glow.
Regina suddenly grabs Leopold's hand, surprising the man into a frantic and deeply blushing reaction. Leopold frantically apologizes for grabbing her without permission while his face burns with a red blush.
Leopold lets out a nervous laugh, his eyes shifting away as he tries to hide embarrassment.
Regina wipes away a tear and thanks Leopold warmly for his unexpected comfort and kind words.
Regina asks Leopold if he could spare some time for her before he returns home.
Leopold looks at Regina from the side, his green eyes reflecting his growing affection for her.
A close-up shows Leopold's blushing face as his heart pounds with attraction for the blonde woman.
Regina looks up in shock as a sudden, loud exclamation interrupts the quiet and romantic atmosphere.
Leopold and Regina sit together in a warm, floral atmosphere filled with palpable and romantic tension.
A close-up captures Regina's wide and blushing eyes as she reacts to an unexpected development.
A loud shout demands to know what is with the stories shown in the morning news.
Regina and Amelia react with extreme shock to a newspaper article regarding a marriage to the emperor. Amelia demands a correction for the marriage rumors, while Alice asks why everyone is shouting so early.
Liliana eats a grape while a woman notes how strange the newspapers have been acting lately.
A chibi character fumes about media outlets turning baseless rumors into public gossip and scandals.
Alice remains calm and reveals to the stunned women that the marriage article is actually true.
Amelia and Regina stand frozen in total disbelief after hearing Alice's unexpected and serious confirmation.
Liliana asks her older sister if she is really planning to get married soon.
Alice confirms the marriage, leading to a loud and tearful protest from the devastated child.
Alice calmly explains that they will skip the ceremony and simply exchange rings instead.
A close-up of Regina's eye reveals her distress as she learns about moving to the Empire.
Regina looks on in total disbelief, struggling to understand the sudden news of the marriage.
Amelia demands a full explanation, but Alice tells her that the matter is private business.
Alice sternly tells the confused child to leave the room and return to her own.
A close-up of Alice's intense blue eye captures her ordering the child to hurry up.
Liliana huddles with her stuffed bunny, questioning why her sister is acting so strangely today.
The child sits on the floor and cries, feeling overwhelmed by the tension in the house.
Liliana strains to listen to the muffled conversation happening on the other side of the door.
Peeking out from her room, the child realizes she can hear the adults much better now.
Alice declares her firm intention to personally raise the young child once they move away.
Stunned by the news, Liliana accidentally drops her favorite stuffed rabbit onto the wooden floor.
A carriage travels through the sunny town as the Emperor begins his journey back home.
Marius sits alone in the carriage, looking contemplative as the city passes by his window.
Marius recalls Alice's bold conditions and privately reflects on how interesting the woman truly is.
The man looks out at the street, appearing lost in his own serious and focused thoughts.
Marius steps out of the carriage, noting the significant political benefits this marriage will provide.
A sudden, loud shouting from the nearby street catches the Emperor's attention and surprises him.
Marius looks back at a street commotion where a child is loudly shouting for her brother.
Intense surprise fills the man's eyes as the loud, desperate shouting continues right beside him. Marius looks on in confusion as he realizes the young child is running toward him.
Liliana sprints through the public street, her face flushed red with desperate and heavy tears.
Narrative text emphasizes the older sister's promise to take full responsibility for raising the child.
Narrative text notes that moving to the Empire is part of the sisters' new plan. A shadowy family silhouette illustrates the group's presence before the looming figure of the Emperor.
Liliana tells her stuffed bunny that she has finally made a firm decision about her future.
Narrative text highlights the child's internal resolve as she prepares to take a big step. Liliana runs out of her room with her stuffed animal tucked securely under her arm.
The child stands firmly in her sandals, ready to embark on her mission across the town.
Looking determined and resolute, Liliana prepares herself for the difficult task she has chosen.
The child sneaks quietly through the house, hoping to avoid being caught by her sisters.
Liliana realizes her sisters are no longer in the dining room and must be fighting elsewhere.
Looking at a map, Liliana confirms the Emperor's location while affirming she knows the way.
Liliana feels confident that she can successfully reach the hotel on her own without help. A man in a floral shirt warns the child that her joking behavior will lead to trouble. Liliana reacts with shock and confusion to the man's dismissive and stern warning about her safety. Liliana insists she has money for the hotel, but the man tells her to bring mom. A close-up captures the child's wide, sparkling blue eye as she reacts to the man's words. The man looks baffled as the determined child continues to argue her case for traveling alone. Liliana explains that her brother is at the hotel and she needs to meet him immediately. The child explains that her siblings fought, which is why her brother can't come home now.
Liliana expresses her deep longing to see her brother again despite the family's recent complex conflict.
A memory shows a man walking away, telling his family to try living well without him. Narrative text explains that Andrea left for the countryside without giving his family any prior notice. A flashback shows the child as a crying infant, emphasizing the deep history of their family. Narrative text reveals how Andrea raised the child alone after their parents passed away years ago. Liliana stands quietly and looks toward the distant tower while clutching her stuffed rabbit toy. A man in a straw hat sweats profusely while looking on with utter shock. Liliana cries bitterly while clutching her stuffed bunny tightly against her small, trembling body. The child laments being a burden, prompting the driver to suddenly offer his help. The driver insists that families should stay together, emphasizing the importance of their reunion.
Beaming with newfound excitement, the child shouts for them to start their journey immediately.
Liliana peeks out from the window as the carriage rattles toward her intended destination. Sitting alone inside, the child feels a surge of relief that her plan worked. Liliana displays a broad, toothy grin, overjoyed by her successful arrival at the destination. A system notification confirms that the child has reached the hotel without any trouble. Liliana contemplates playing dead or using flattery to stop Marius from marrying her sister. Sunlight bathes the quiet town street as the carriage rolls past the white-walled buildings. A sudden realization causes the child to shout in surprise, her eyes wide with shock. Liliana gasps and sits up straight, realizing they have finally reached their intended location. A narrative bubble declares that the group has already arrived at the hotel grounds. The majestic Grand Hotel stands tall, its white facade glittering under the bright tropical sun. Liliana offers payment to the driver, who smiles and accepts the child's modest fare. 5 small bronze coins fall into the large weathered palm of the carriage driver. Liliana hurries away, thinking about completing her mission before returning to her elder sisters. The driver's face falls as he suddenly grabs the child's hood to supper. The man informs the child she is short on money, leaving her completely stunned. A close-up shows the 5 bronze coins resting in the man's open hand. Liliana looks at the man in realization, letting out a small sound of surprise. A thought bubble expresses her dismay at accidentally bringing a fairy tale instead of money. Liliana clings desperately to a man's leg, begging for a loan to cover her fare. Marius reacts with shock, questioning why the young child suddenly needs to borrow money. Marius asks why she took a carriage alone, while the child reacts with frantic panic. Liliana shouts that she came to see her brother, leaving Marius speechless with surprise. Marius is ecstatic to be called Oppa, while Liliana finds his joyful expression incredibly irritating.
Marius laughs loudly in the middle of the street, ignoring the child's growing annoyance.
The driver reflects on the laughter, while Marius identifies himself as the child's guardian. Marius tosses a coin to the driver, telling him to keep the excessive change. A single gold coin shines brightly as it lands in the driver's trembling hand. The driver bows deeply in gratitude, confirming the payment is far more than enough. Marius confirms the payment was a gold coin, causing Liliana to question his logic.
Liliana's face turns purple with shock as she realizes the massive value of the coin.
A loud shout of disbelief echoes as the child reacts to the hidden wealth. Liliana remembers her sister's lesson about the immense value of a single gold coin. Fuming with rage, Liliana realizes Marius lied about being broke and feels completely tricked. Marius smiles warmly, his eyes twinkling with amusement as he looks at the angry child. The scene shifts to the elegant interior of the hotel beneath a large, ornate chandelier. Liliana shouts that he is not her brother, rejecting his attempts at a familial connection.
Marius gushes about her cuteness to his aide, Max, while the child remains very annoyed.
Liliana protests the sister-in-law label, reminding him that the marriage has not happened yet. Marius confidently predicts their future marriage while Liliana screams her absolute opposition to the union.
Marius feigns intense sadness over her rejection, asking why she dislikes him so much.
Liliana offers to buy him chocolate as compensation if he stops his dramatic fake crime. Marius continues to feed the child while probing for the reason behind her clear dislike. Chewing her food, Liliana bluntly tells Marius that her older sister is simply too good.
Liliana's internal thoughts highlight Alice's peerless beauty and strength as the most impressive person in the world.
Liliana considers Marius shameless while he basks in self-importance, questioning if all emperors share his arrogance.
The child mentally compares Marius to Leopold, concluding that the man is truly a terrifying human weapon.
Marius shifts the topic, asking the child if she'd traveled alone since she lacked the funds for her fare.
A close-up shows the child silently chewing her food as she processes the man's direct and probing question.
Liliana admits she came alone, leaving both Marius and his aides stunned by the child's reckless independence. Stunned silence fills the room as the two men process the dangerous reality of the child's solo journey.
Marius asks if she notified her sisters, but the child's nervous confirmation suggests she is likely lying.
A close-up of the child's wide eye reveals her sudden and terrifying realization regarding her missing farewell note.
Liliana recalls her original plan to leave a polite message before sneaking out of the family home.
A memory of the empty dining table confirms her worst fear that she never actually wrote the letter.
The realization of her mistake hits the child, causing her to freeze in place during the quiet meal.
Liliana trembles with intense shock as she realizes the massive trouble she will face once her sisters find her.
The child huddles in her chair, shaking with fear as the weight of her disobedience finally sinks in.
Liliana tries to calm herself, thinking that rubbing her face against her toy will soothe her growing panic.
The child prepares to seek comfort from her stuffed rabbit, desperately needing a way to manage her fear.
Marius watches the child sweat in panic while she mentally begs her stuffed toy for the courage to face reality.
Sobbing into her toy, Liliana feels a desperate need for the magical comfort she believes her stuffed bunny provides.
Marius orders Max to contact the Vercio family immediately, predicting they are currently panicking over the child's sudden disappearance.
Regina bursts into the house, gasping for air, frantically announcing that the young child is nowhere to be found.
Regina and Amelia confirm they have searched everywhere, from friends' houses to every corner of their own home.
Alice explains the urgency of the situation, stating they must report her missing if she isn't found within 3 hours. Regina nods in agreement as Alice suggests using tracking magic to locate their missing sister as quickly as possible.
A sudden loud sound startles Alice, whose blue eye reflects her shock at the unexpected and noisy interruption.
The sisters freeze as a persistent knocking at the door interrupts their frantic and desperate search for Liliana.
Regina doubts the visitor is Liliana, noting that the child would have simply walked inside without knocking first.
A hand reaches for the door handle as the character privately hopes to see the missing child outside. Regina opens the door and is shocked to find a massive bouquet of purple flowers blocking her view. Leopold stands at the door with flowers, reminding the stunned Regina of their planned date she had completely forgotten. Regina ignores the romance and prepares to find a wizard, leaving Alice to question the woman's sudden, frantic behavior. Regina apologizes to Leopold, explaining that she must cancel their date because her younger sister has gone missing. Crying, Regina explains the disappearance just as a messenger arrives at the door asking for Lady Alice Vercio. A messenger delivers an urgent word from Prince Marius, catching the attention of both the sisters and Leopold. Regina cries with intense relief while Alice looks on with a focused and much more determined expression.
A close-up shows Alice's shock as she processes the unexpected news regarding her younger sister's current location.
A carriage races through the sunny town square, carrying the sisters toward the hotel to retrieve the child.
Sitting together in the carriage, Alice and Regina prepare themselves for the inevitable confrontation with their reckless sister.
Alice resolves to ask the child why she left without permission before allowing her anger to take over.
Closing her eyes, Alice tries to remain calm and composed so she can handle the situation without getting angry.
Narrative text emphasizes that understanding the child's motivations for leaving and going to the hotel is the current priority.
Narrative text notes that getting emotional in front of the child would be a mistake during their impending meeting.
The group walks through the hotel hallway, with Alice agreeing to proceed with their plan to confront the child.
A hand firmly grips the ornate door handle, signaling the start of the final confrontation at the hotel.
Alice pauses at the door, overhearing Liliana begging Marius for permission to stay at the hotel instead of home. Marius warns the child about her sister's likely shock, while Liliana argues she will be scolded if she returns.
Liliana waves her arms in a frantic protest, shouting that the man simply does not understand her dire situation.
A close-up shows the child's tearful eye as she laments that her sisters are actually quite terrifying people. Liliana stops mid-sentence, her face paling in shock as she spots Alice standing right in the room's doorway. A dark and imposing silhouette looms over the trembling child as she stammers a greeting to her older sister.
Alice mentally reminds herself to stay calm and ask the child about her reasons for coming to the hotel.
A close-up captures Alice's mouth as she takes a steadying breath before facing the child. Hiding behind the door, Liliana trembles while Alice mentally commands herself to remain entirely calm.
The child's wide eye reflects Alice's presence, highlighting her sudden and intense fear of discovery.
Alice bursts into tears, sobbing about how much she worried after finding her sister missing.
Turning away in grief, Alice continues crying as the young child timidly calls out to her.
Alice grabs Liliana, shouting that she must notify someone before leaving because her sisters were worried.
Liliana sobs uncontrollably, apologizing over and over to her older sister for her reckless actions.
Regina watches as Alice tearfully scolds the child for leaving alone and ignoring their repeated warnings. Regina tells the wailing child not to cry while Liliana continues to offer her desperate apologies.
Alice is remembered as the unwavering pillar of strength who has never once shown any weakness.
Alice reflects on her past selfishness, remembering a time she accidentally hurt the child she loves.
A close-up of the child's tearful eye captures her deep emotional reaction to Alice's vulnerability.
Liliana lunges into a hug, wailing for her sister as the tension finally breaks between them. Marius notes that Alice dislikes disobedience, asking the child if she will continue ignoring her sisters.
A loud, desperate shout proclaims the child's love for her sister above everyone else in the world.
Clinging to Alice, the child apologizes and expresses her fear that her sisters might abandon her.
Liliana begs through heavy tears, her eyes reflecting the deep trauma and insecurity she currently feels.
The child desperately begs not to be abandoned, leaving the stunned Alice crying in total silence.
Alice stares in shock, her tear-filled eyes widening as she processes the child's unexpected and heartbreaking plea.
Standing together, the sisters question why the child would ever think they might actually abandon her.
Regina offers comfort, telling Liliana to come to her and stop her intense and painful crying.
Looking away, Alice privately laments her inability to handle the situation better than she has so far.
Internal thoughts question if Alice failed to provide the security and love a parent normally would. Regina holds the sobbing child while Liliana looks toward Alice and calls for her big sister.
A close-up captures Regina's startled expression as she reacts to the emotional depth of the moment.
Alice signals the end of the scene, her strength noted as she prepares to move forward.
Alice's profile shows a single tear falling as she maintains her resolve despite her inner turmoil.
Alice suggests they return home to talk, ending this stressful confrontation at the Grand Hotel grounds.
The sun sets over the coastal town, marking the passage of time after the emotional ordeal. Quiet sounds of sobbing and hiccups echo through the town as the day draws to a close.
A hand holds a glass of water, noting that 10 minutes of quiet time have already passed.
Liliana undergoes a reflection chair punishment while Marius stands beside her, holding a glass of water.
Liliana gulps down the water as Marius watches her with a surprised and slightly amused expression.
Marius sits on the floor beside the child, promising to keep her company during her quiet reflection.
Marius asks if she visited to stop the marriage, and Liliana admits her intention to Marius.
A close-up shows the Emperor's thoughtful expression as he listens to the child's honest admission.
Liliana bluntly rejects the marriage, leading Marius to ask why she is so opposed to it.
Surprise and panic fill the child's face as she realizes her secret motivations have been exposed.
Liliana sweats in embarrassment, realizing her blunder as she searches for a way to escape the conversation. Shouting that her time is up, Liliana runs away toward the bathroom while Marius watches her escape. The child sprints down the hall as Marius notes that he successfully guessed her true feelings. Running away, Liliana wonders how Marius knew her thoughts, but acknowledges that his assessment was correct.
A vision shows Alice and Marius standing together at a wedding ceremony, surrounded by white flowers.
Liliana reflects on the difficulties of visiting her sister if she moves into the distant imperial palace.
A warm memory depicts Alice embracing the young child in a moment of pure familial love. Narrative text explains that her sisters are her entire world in a life without her original parents.
Looking down, Liliana reflects on the intense pain she felt when Andrea left the family behind.
Returning to the room, Liliana spots Regina and Leopold sitting together in a quiet, private conversation.
Regina tells Leopold she has a serious question for him, which he listens to with focus.
Regina asks Leopold for an honest answer while the curious child peeks into the room nearby. Regina's eye widens as she decides to move to the Empire with her older sister.
Regina wonders if she can find employment while living in the Empire for an extended period.
Regina sits in her chair, looking stunned by the implications of her major life decision.
Leopold questions if Alice made a secret deal for this arranged marriage to the Emperor.
Alice sits at the table in silence, facing away from the group while they discuss her. Leopold shouts in disbelief, calling Alice a liar as Regina and Amelia react with deep shock.
Leopold argues that Alice's career in the Coast Guard will suffer as the Imperial Empress.
Alice points out that Regina might struggle to adapt to the Empire's rigid, caste-based society.
Alice mentions the discrimination children and women face, making her sister's future move feel very risky.
Alice looks on with a grim expression, worrying about the hardships her sisters might soon face.
Alice insists she will manage on her own, staring at the empty seat across the table.
Regina gasps as she realizes the depth of the challenges her older sister is currently facing.
Regina's blue eye reflects her inner turmoil as she considers the family's uncertain future in the Empire.
Alice looks down sadly, realizing she cannot stand by while her sister struggles through this ordeal.
Regina sits quietly, suspecting that Alice will never reveal the true reason for her sudden decision. Regina grips her dress tightly, resolving not to let Alice suffer alone or leave Liliana behind.
Regina makes a firm decision to follow her sister to the Empire despite the many risks.
Regina stands up with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to announce her choice to Leopold. Regina explains to the startled Leopold that she plans to live in the Empire as well.
Leopold stops Regina mid-sentence, asking her to wait as he processes her sudden and shocking announcement. Regina suggests they continue their conversation in a more private location to avoid being overheard.
Regina leads Leopold to her room while the young Liliana watches them from around a corner.
Liliana wonders what is happening, shocked to learn her sisters are both leaving for the Empire.
Liliana worries about being left alone in Travantia if her sisters move away after the wedding.
Face down on her bed, Liliana asks her stuffed bunny Cookie what they should do now.
Leopold reflects on Regina's status, noting she will always have a home as the Empress's sister.
Regina worries that staying in the Empire for too long will make her a financial burden.
Regina insists she must find a way to support herself instead of relying on others.
Leopold observes that unlike other noblewomen, the Berkio sisters insist on working for their own livelihood.
A close-up shows Leopold's subtle smile as he thinks about the woman he has grown to love.
Leopold is overjoyed at the thought of staying with Regina, even if the situation feels crazy.
Max finds Leopold's frequent smiling unsettling, wondering what has caused such a drastic behavioral change.
Marius remarks that Leopold is falling head over heels without even going on a proper date.
Marius pats Leopold on the back, teasing him about how happy he is regarding the man's.
Leopold quickly confirms his feelings, surprising Marius with the speed of his honest admission.
Marius contemplates the power of love while looking at his friend's unusually cheerful and softened expression. Marius watches his friend with interest, noting how love has completely changed the man's typical demeanor.
Marius comments on how Leopold has always been the type to focus entirely on his love interest.
Leopold looks at Marius with a confused expression, not fully understanding the prince's teasing observations.
Leopold insists this is his first love, while Marius dismissively agrees and jokes about his obsession. Marius reflects on the blood bond that will soon tie their families together after the wedding.
Marius notes that any conflict between their nations would cost the Empire its leaders and commander.
Leopold confirms his understanding of the stakes as Marius prepares to leave the quiet, sunlit room. Marius relaxes with a satisfied smile, feeling confident about the upcoming changes to their family dynamic.
Marius encourages Leopold to make things work with Regina, offering his sincere support for their relationship.
Leopold looks on in confusion as Marius walks away, hinting at things he doesn't yet understand. Marius explains he is rooting for Leopold because of their shared history and the man's past.
Marius pauses at the door, acknowledging Leopold's question about where he is headed so suddenly.
Marius looks down at a small object in his hand, his eyes filled with gentle amusement.
A heavy sigh echoes over the quiet white buildings of the coastal town under the sun. Liliana slumps on the table, lamenting her 3-day playground ban while missing her friends. The child reflects on the distressing news that Regina is leaving for the Empire soon. Regina shouts at Liliana for leaving without permission, making the child's difficult day even worse. Reflecting on the harsh scolding, Liliana thinks moving to the Empire might actually be okay. The child slams her pen down, triumphantly finishing the letter she has been working on.
Liliana cheers as she holds up her finished letter, happy to be done with it.
A close-up reveals the heartfelt letter for Andrea, featuring crude drawings of their entire family.
Liliana hopes the letter convinces Andrea to return and stop their sisters from marrying weirdos.
Giggling with hope, Liliana clutches her letter and dreams of reuniting her beloved family members.
The child sprints down the staircase, her small feet thumping against the polished wooden floor.
Liliana pounds on the door, loudly begging her older sister to visit the post office. Regina claims to be busy, while Liliana insists they must leave before the Empire move. The child continues knocking persistently, shouting her demand to go to the post office immediately.
Regina suddenly and enthusiastically agrees to go, startling the child with her sudden change of heart.
Liliana flees in a panic as Regina chases after her, screaming in a playful family frenzy. Pushing the door, Liliana complains about fairness until she accidentally strikes someone on the other side. The child's eyes widen in shock as she hears a loud thump from the impact. Marius sits on the floor, clutching his face in pain while Liliana watches in confusion. Marius gazes up with a single tear, his face flushed and pained after the collision. Regina is stunned to see Marius there, while the child wonders why he is visiting. Marius groans about the intense pain, covering his face as he sits on the ornate rug. Liliana fears his nose is broken, but Marius asks her to simply blow on the injury. The child approaches the seated man, asking if she should blow on his pained face. Marius cheers with a bright smile, claiming the child's magic worked a total miracle for him.
Skeptical, Liliana notes his hand is redder than his nose, despite his claims of being healed.
A chant appears on a bright background, commanding the pain to heal and go away instantly. Marius gasps in exaggerated shock as the child performs her adorable magical healing ritual for him. Laughing with joy, Marius tells the little one she is absolutely amazing for her magical help. Looking on, Alice watches as Marius affectionately pats the child on her small head.
Alice demands an explanation for Marius' sudden arrival at her home, looking very unimpressed.
Marius greets Amelia and asks if Alice is home, but the blonde woman denies her presence.
Marius challenges the lie about Alice's whereabouts while the blonde sister fumes in deep annoyance. Marius trails off with a sheepish expression, realizing his persistence is not being well received. Marius mentions his desire to bond with his future sister-in-law, causing the blonde women to scowl.
Liliana tells the mister to leave, lying that Alice is currently sleeping and cannot see him.
A close-up of Alice's eyes suggests she is awake as the child continues to reject Marius.
Alice sits up in bed with a gasp, startled by the loud commotion outside her door. Running down the stairs, Liliana worries that lying will cause her to stay small forever.
Amelia leads the child away, telling her she doesn't have to answer the man's questions.
Alice appears and asks what brought Marius to her home as the sisters gather near him.
Marius explains he wanted to hand-deliver a gift despite the lack of a formal ceremony.
Amelia calls out to Alice, who remains silent with a determined and focused expression.
Alice stares silently at the blonde man with a single shimmering blue eye of determination. Standing beside the man, Liliana looks worriedly at her sisters and says, "Uh-oh," to herself.
Amelia grabs Liliana's hand, firmly stating they have another destination and cannot stay with him.
Marius encourages the child to leave with her sister as they prepare to fan out. Dragged by the arm, Liliana cries out while the blonde sister complains that Marius never listens.
Alice is addressed as Big Sis by the child as the group begins to separate. Liliana waves goodbye, telling Alice to come home soon and avoid the silly man's company.
Alice stares back with a soft, melancholic gaze as the sun sets on the emotional encounter.
A close-up captures a subtle and knowing smile appearing on the woman's face.
The bright sun shines over the coastal town and the Grand Hotel's white architecture.
Leopold mentions that the specific compensations and benefits are detailed within the provided legal documents. Alice requests an additional clause regarding divine healing, leaving Leopold looking quite surprised and confused. Alice explains her scholar sister's belief that magic can be used to develop new treatments.
Alice demands a top-tier magician for Lily, but Leopold notes this requires a separate discussion.
A small illustration shows Leopold promising to contact the Tower Master by the following day.
Alice agrees to the terms and insists her family be allowed imperial residence whenever desired.
Leopold agrees to Alice's thorough conditions and asks if there are any remaining requests today.
Looking down, Alice remains silent as she processes the weight of her current negotiation demands.
A close-up of Alice's shimmering blue eye highlights her intense focus on the man.
Leopold looks on with a bewildered expression, seemingly caught off guard by the woman's intensity.
After finalizing her list, Alice asks Leopold what he desires for himself in this arrangement. Leopold maintains a serious and contemplative expression as the conversation turns toward his personal motivations.
A hand rests on a leg, fidgeting slightly as the character struggles to provide an answer. Overwhelmed with joy, Leopold reacts with exaggerated, heart-filled excitement that fills the entire room.
Alice sighs in deep annoyance while Leopold complains that her clicking tongue is rather excessive.
Closing her eyes, Alice exhales sharply as she tries to endure the man's flamboyant behavior. A close-up of his mouth reveals his internal struggle to identify his own true desires. Leopold's eyes sparkles with a strange intensity as he considers the depth of his feelings.
Narrative text reveals that Leopold is honestly unsure of what he truly wants from her. Amelia tries to entice the grumpy Liliana with mango pudding to get her to eat. Shouting in a fit of pique, the child declares she has no need for any pudding.
Liliana screams in frustration, realizing she has once again been manipulated by her clever older sister. Despite her earlier protest, the child and Amelia cheer excitedly for a delicious-looking meal platter.
A silver-haired man with yellow eyes arrives after being summoned to the hotel by Amelia.
Amelia offers the child jelly and a special coupon to avoid eating healthy bell peppers. Blushing with embarrassment, the young child looks away while trying to maintain her stubborn facade.
Holding up 4 fingers, the child makes a demand while the blonde sister looks completely exhausted.
The young child sprints away from her seat, leaving the others behind in her wake. Laughing softly, the silver-haired man asks the child if she has finished her little tantrum.
Looking very annoyed, the child snaps back that she is certainly not a little lady.
The silver-haired man smiles and asks if he may call her by her name instead. The child is surprised, noting that she was snappy while he remained exceptionally kind and patient.
Reflecting on the change story, Liliana decides the silver-haired man is actually not very scary.
A close-up reveals the silver-haired man's gentle smile and glowing yellow eyes as he watches.
A mysterious and ominous text bubble asks the child if she is afraid of her brother.
The child trembles in fear, her eyes widening as she reacts to the man's unsettling question.
A close-up captures the child's shocked blue eye as she reels from the unexpected inquiry.
Terrified, Liliana wonders if the man noticed her fear while the blonde sister watches from behind.
The child mentally corrects the man, insisting that he is a mister rather than a brother.
Trembling with nerves, Liliana avoids eye contact while the man and the blonde sister observe her.
Looking at the silver-haired man, the child calculates his age based on his mature, refined appearance.
The man explains that the bad-tasting mana potions must be consumed immediately after being brewed.
A hand holds up a glass of dark purple liquid, preparing it for the young child.
Liliana looks at the purple liquid with intense disgust, remembering its truly awful and bitter taste.
Regretting her choices, the child wonders why she allowed food to tempt her into this situation.
A close-up shows a large, fluffy hand gently patting the child's small, balled-up fist.
The child looks up in surprise as a small blue teddy bear appears on the table.
Liliana's eyes sparkle with absolute delight and wonder at the unexpected gift from the silver-haired man.
A fluffy white teddy bear with blue paws and a blue bow sits alone.
The silver-haired man offers the doll if the child drinks the potion without any complaining. Liliana is delighted by the offer, hugging her new prize with a wide, joyful smile.
Liliana drinks the potion quickly as Regina notes how much their youngest sister has matured.
Holding her new toy, Liliana enters the participating room as Regina welcomes her and Amelia home.
Regina introduces Leopold, mentioning that he was the man who previously helped Liliana at the playground.
Regina stands in the center of the room preparing to share a major life announcement.
Amelia looks shocked by the sudden revelation while the child watches the adults with confusion.
A close-up focus on Regina's necklace appears as she prepares to explain her sudden plan.
Regina makes a bombshell announcement that she intends to move to the Empire with Leopold.
Regina wears a soft, confident smile after dropping the shocking news about her future move.
Alice sits on the sofa, clutching her head as she tries to process the announcement.
Standing together, Amelia and the child look completely stunned by their sister's sudden life decision.
Liliana fumbles with her doll in a panic, fearing the family is being split apart.
A close-up of Regina's mouth captures her speaking firmly about the choice she has made.
Amelia screams in a rage, asking Regina if she has completely lost her mind today.
Regina tells Amelia to lower her voice while Amelia demands that she tell the truth.
Regina laughs off the tension while Leopold looks flustered and the child remains deeply suspicious.
Amelia grabs Regina's arm, stating they need to have a serious private conversation right now.
Regina's blue eye narrows as she flatly rejects the demand for a private family talk.
Alice remarks that Regina always does whatever she wants as Regina walks out of the room.
A loud thud echoes through the hallway as Regina slams the bedroom door shut forcefully. Regina stands alone in her room, turning away with a clenched fist and determined posture.
Regina approaches the child, asking if Amelia was the one who bought her the doll.
The child fumbles with her teddy bear, looking up at her sister with a confused expression.
Regina asks if the little girl likes Leopold while the man watches their interaction closely.
Shock and disbelief cover the child's face as she reacts to her sister's unexpected question. Regina reflects on her happiness, believing Leopold won't hurt her sister even if he learns secrets. Alice confronts Regina and Leopold, asking if they are actually in a serious romantic relationship.
Liliana clutches her doll tightly, sensing the growing tension between her three older sisters. Liliana asks Regina for confirmation that she will never return to their hometown of Travancha.
Leopold asks Liliana if she wishes to stay in Travancha alone while the sisters move. A reflection of the stressed Alice appears in the child's eye during the heavy conversation. Alice sits in silence, looking exhausted as she rubs her face while the family argues. Silhouetted against a dark background, Alice states she wants to lie down as this isn't fun.
Narrative text confirms the child's desire to stay in Travancha, where her entire life is.
A bright memory shows the child's friends playing together in the warm, golden village sunlight.
Narrative text emphasizes that everything the young child loves and knows is found in Travancha. Tucking herself into bed, the child asks her doll if they could speak up as adults.
A single tear falls as the child hugs her teddy bear, mourning her sister's departure. Narrative text highlights a significant passage of time, mentioning a total of over 3,000 nights. A bright blue sky filled with white clouds marks the start of a brand new day.
Sunlight pours into the building, signaling the end of the long and very emotional night.
Regina lies face down on her bed, groaning in annoyance as the morning light wakes her. Pulling the blanket over her head, Regina complains about the sunlight entering her dark room. Regina remains buried under the sheets while the silence of the room is noted in bubbles.
Regina sits up suddenly, her eyes wide and hair messy as she reacts to being woken.
Regina screams in panic, wondering how sunlight entered past her curtains. So much for the blackout part.
Regina sits in bed with a flushed face, looking mortified by the person watching her wake. Trembling with intense embarrassment, Regina stares at the person who dared to wake her up. Marius reacts with shock while drinking his tea, his eyes wide with a sudden realization. The silver-haired man remains calm and graceful, sitting elegantly amidst a lush floral backdrop. Marius asks the blonde woman if she truly has no memory of the previous night's event.
Amelia retorts that her current confusion is proof enough of her total and utter memory loss.
She desperately tries to recall the events of the previous night through a painful mental fog. Amelia remembers drinking excessively and losing control, wondering what happened after she blacked out completely.
The weight of her unknown actions causes the embarrassed woman to hide her face in regret.
She suggests ignoring the past, prompting a dry remark about her simplistic approach to life's problems.
Amelia defensively asks if the man expects some form of financial compensation for his ruined clothes.
She stares in confusion at an expensive-looking shirt marked by a prominent and very dark stain. Amelia identifies the ruined garment as a high-quality silk shirt worth a significant amount of gold. Marius explains that she vomited on his expensive clothes while clinging to him in her stupor. The blonde woman reacts with a mix of manic laughter and overwhelming relief at the news. Angry at his dramatic delay, she agrees to pay for the ruined shirt with added interest. A lingering question remains about whether any other embarrassing incidents occurred during her wild night out. The silver-haired man maintains a silent, intense gaze that makes the surrounding atmosphere feel quite heavy.
Marius informs her of the Emperor's long-term commitment to improving Lily's health over 10 years.
Amelia reflects on the cold, calculated nature of the upcoming political union between their two families.
She worries about the many difficulties her sister will face while trying to adapt to Empire.
Narration questions if the Empire's nobility will accept a common-born woman as their new imperial empress.
Amelia notes Alice's determination to help Lily despite the difficult and dangerous path lying ahead.
The silver-haired man sighs, expressing a mixture of understanding and lingering concern for their difficult situation.
A single small white pill is poured from a dark glass bottle into a pale palm.
Marius laments the inefficiency of his medication, but acknowledges it is currently his only viable option.
He pauses mid-thought, suggesting there is more to the current situation than he is revealing.
The blonde woman stares at him with a look of intense confusion and growing, silent suspicion.
Marius proposes a deal for future assistance, leaving Amelia wondering what he will eventually ask for.
While Alice reacts with surprise, the man offers a cryptic smile and encourages her quiet endurance.
The silver-haired man refuses to elaborate on his request, stating the truth will come in time.
The scene transitions to a sunny day overlooking the peaceful architecture of the bright coastal town.
A quiet morning scene is interrupted by news regarding the specific details of the upcoming wedding.
A formal letter lies open on the table, containing important information that has just been delivered. From a distance, the family is seen gathered around a table for a formal meal together.
Leopold promises to visit the Empire in the future as he says his current sincere goodbyes.
The child defensively denies she was crying after being teased about her red and puffy face. Liliana insists she is far too mature to shed tears over their impending move and departure.
Despite her brave words, the child's eyes reflected deep, unspoken sadness and heavy personal vulnerability. The older sisters discuss their travel plans and how the family home will be managed.
Leopold offers assistance with packing while the child feels neglected by her older brother's life choices.
Finding a small comfort in the food, the child admits that the meal is quite delicious.
A close-up of the child's shimmering blue eye captures her moment of quiet and focused reflection.
A question about the child's future travel plans causes a sudden and very tense dinner silence.
Regina leaves the choice to Amelia while the child wonders if they will remain together long-term.
The child laments the long absence of her sister and the loneliness it has recently caused.
Leopold playfully teases the child, suggesting she is jealous of him taking her older sister alive.
Furious, the child declares her desire to stay home with her friends rather than move away.
The child tearfully explains that new imperial friends could never replace her beloved local childhood companions.
Regina finds the child's stubborn outburst amusing and playfully pokes her red, puffed-up little cheek.
The child's eyes brim with tears as she struggles to accept the inevitable and painful changes.
A nostalgic memory reveals the group of best friends the child is terrified of leaving behind.
Liliana sits quietly at the dinner table, staring down at her untouched plate of food.
Staring at the black-haired woman, the child asks if she can simply avoid getting married. A close-up of the child's shimmering blue eye captures her sudden and very startling realization.
Silence falls over the grand dining room as the entire family processes the child's awkward request. Clutching her arm, Liliana regrets her impulsive words, fearing her eldest sister will now hate her. The young girl balls her hand into a trembling fist, overwhelmed by her own internal panic.
The blonde man speaks up, causing the blushing child to look at him with wide eyes.
Leopold promises there will be many fun activities in the Empire if she can wait longer.
A close-up captures the blonde man's sincere and gentle gaze as he tries to comfort her.
Liliana looks up at him, surprised by the sudden seriousness written across the blonde man's face.
The blonde man asks the child if she is upset because he teased her earlier today.
The child clarifies that isn't it, confessing that she still likes Uncle Leo much more.
Alice notes that Uncle Leo will provide delicious food, pretty clothes, and mountains of new toys.
Regina adds that for her birthday, she will see fireworks and experience wonderful magical illusions too.
Leopold excitedly promises daily piggyback rides and games of hide-and-seek as Marius watches him with confusion.
Narrative text bubbles emphasize the joy of piggyback rides because Uncle Leo is exceptionally tall.
Negotiating fiercely, the chibi child demands the stay be extended from 100 nights to 200.
Though he thinks 200 nights is quite long, the blonde man eventually agrees to the deal.
Leopold declares the matter settled as the child cheers happily about living at his home.
A dark-haired woman stands amidst a crimson floral background as a scanlation group introduces themselves.
Narrative text marks a shift in time, indicating events that occurred the day before. Sunlight bathes the scenic coastal town as the family prepares to leave for the Empire.
A child sits in the green grass, her legs tucked close during a quiet moment.
Liliana comforts the weeping Antonio, promising they will remain friends forever despite being separated soon.
Antonio cries uncontrollably after hearing the news of his best friend's impending departure from town.
Antonio laments that people cannot do everything they want, while Liliana listens with a sad expression.
The young boy tearfully expresses his deep desire to play with his friend every single day. A peaceful blue sky filled with white clouds reflects the melancholic beauty of their final meeting.
Liliana gazes upward, her shimmering blue eye capturing the bittersweet light of the coastal morning.
An excited text bubble asks if they can maintain their friendship by writing letters from afar.
Lifting her arm in a cheer, Liliana convinces the hopeful Antonio that their plan will work.
Antonio sniffs back his tears, looking at his friend with a mixture of sadness and hope.
Liliana playfully calls herself the Lemon Fairy as she pulls Antonio into a warm, supportive hug.
Antonio asks Liliana to make a solemn promise that their friendship will truly last forever.
A close-up captures the child's wide, joyful smile as she seals their eternal childhood pact. As the carriage wheel turns, a voice asks if the promise to stay friends is real.
The carriage departs as a voice confirms they will remain mega best friends despite being apart.
Looking back at the street, Liliana remembers Antonio's promise to write letters every single day. The child finds peace in the coastal scenery, deciding that everything will be okay after all.
Dressed for travel, Liliana looks out the window as the familiar sights of Travantia fade away.
The sparkling blue ocean waves crash against the sandy shore under the bright midday sun.
Lush green trees in a traditional windmill stand tall against the clear, vibrant coastal horizon.
The carriage passes through the town square, revealing the beautiful white architecture and palm trees.
Standing at the window, the child watches her beloved hometown slowly disappear into the distance.
Liliana stares wistfully out the carriage window, wondering when she might eventually return home again.
A close-up of the child's face highlights her wide blue eyes filled with silent reflection.
The carriage continues down the narrow cobblestone street as Liliana says a final goodbye to Travantia. A massive red and black steamship sails across the open ocean toward a new life.
The ornate interior hallway of the ship features white paneled walls and a patterned orange carpet. Alice asks if she is hungry, and Liliana admits she is feeling a little bit hungry.
Liliana is tucked into bed with her toys and told to wait a little longer for lunch.
Liliana asks her black-haired sister Alice if she can go outside while the packing continues.
Amelia dictates strict rules for the child to follow while exploring the area without supervision.
White birds soar across a bright, clear blue sky filled with soft and fluffy clouds.
A massive red and white ship sails across the shimmering blue ocean under the sun. Liliana watches her hometown of Travantia fade into the distance from the ship's wooden deck. A close-up of the child's blue eye shows a single tear as she mourns Travantia.
Memories of her sisters haunt the child, who regrets leaving without a proper final goodbye.
Gripping the railing, Liliana sadly wonders if her older sister will even notice her long absence. Looking over the water, the child laments her failure to bring her favorite teddy bear, Cookie. Liliana begins to weep, feeling a profound sense of loneliness without her toy to hug.
Regina asks the child if she is sad about leaving home, and Liliana admits she is.
The blonde woman and the small child stand together on the deck of the large ship.
Regina is shocked to see her sister Amelia, asking how long she has been on board.
Liliana is stunned as Regina demands to know when the blonde woman joined their secret journey. A close-up captures the child's wide, tear-filled eyes as she reacts to the sudden family reunion.
Crying out for her sister, Liliana runs and hugs Amelia while calling the situation very strange.
Amelia pets the child's head, asking if she was missed and how things went during her absence.
Alice and Regina are shocked to see Amelia on the deck and ask for an explanation. Amelia reveals her plan to work in the Empire, shocking her sisters with this sudden career change.
Amelia explains that she obtained a special permit to board the ship and travel with the family.
A close-up captures the terrified expressions of Alice and Liliana as they process Amelia's bold presence.
Amelia insists the family must stay together in the Empire, while Alice looks on with deep suspicion.
Leaning in with an intense gaze, Amelia asks if Alice truly doesn't want to live with her. Liliana panics, realizing the relationships between her older sisters are already becoming strained and potentially ruined. Floating in a sunny sky, a smiling child's face conveys a warm message of missing her friend.
The red and white steamship continues its long journey across the sparkling blue and white waves.
The Scanlation team presents a stylized image of a dark-haired woman amidst a field of roses.
A man tells Amelia that her departure is a loss for Travantia, suggesting an extended leave instead.
Holding a heavy wooden box, Amelia is asked if she intends to resign from her local position.
Amelia looks dazed and overwhelmed by the weight of her many responsibilities and the upcoming move. Amelia explains to her colleague that she cannot leave her sisters alone during such a transition. Narration notes Alice's political marriage and Regina's decision to follow her for support in the Empire. Amelia smiles knowingly at her colleague, confident in her understanding of the complex family dynamics at play. Text panels highlight the difficulties of moving to a foreign land with a completely different social structure. Carrying her belongings, the chibi-style Amelia is teased for being careless during the chaotic move. Amelia enthusiastically agrees to learn new techniques in the Empire to eventually profit from the experience. Text reveals the departure time as the siblings prepare to set sail from their home in Travantia. Amelia confronts Francois Cassel, stating she is unsure what he hopes to gain from their interaction.
Amelia warns the silver-haired man that they are both equally dark and vows to eventually best him.
The grand, multi-story architecture of the Empire's capital city gleams under the bright and sunny sky.
A scenic view of the capital city reveals ornate fountains, grand buildings, and bustling town squares. The architectural beauty of the Empire is highlighted by sparkling lights and high, elegant blue roofs.
Alice warns Liliana to sit still in the carriage because leaning out the window is very dangerous.
Leopold clears his throat while blushing, trying to get the attention of the others in the carriage.
Liliana is mesmerized by the high buildings, extravagant decorations, and unique outfits of the imperial citizens. Text confirms the family's arrival in the Empire after a week-long journey, detailing the carriage assignments.
Liliana reflects on the boredom of the sea voyage but finds the Empire sights quite promising.
A close-up of the child's blue eye reveals her concern that her older sister is unhappy.
Alice sits quietly in the carriage, looking solemn and deeply preoccupied with her own heavy thoughts.
Narrative text describes the day the sisters arrived and a conflict between the siblings. The older sister insists that one of them must return home to resume their research.
A massive steamship cuts through the dark ocean waves under the quiet, starry night.
The short-haired blonde sister questions the other's impulsive decision to move for a man.
Regina defensively confesses her deep feelings for Leopold and her fear of losing their connection. The short-haired blonde argues she must stay to help care for their sickly younger sister. Liliana is deeply hurt after accidentally overhearing her sister's heated argument during their game. Amelia pushes Regina to return to her studies, promising to personally manage Liliana's care herself. Regina pleads for her sister to stop while Amelia fiercely declares her own academic intentions. Amelia defends her choice to stay, citing a long-term interest in researching unique magical abilities.
The argument concludes with a sudden, sharp beat as the heavy silence settles in.
Overwhelmed by the fighting, Liliana hides in silence while weeping into her small, trembling arms. The young child's face is flushed with grief as she continues to cry alone.
Narration confirms that the young child was not the only one brought to tears tonight.
A heavy sense of unease lingers in the air as the night's emotional weight increases. Marius departs quietly with his luggage while the sisters watch him from a distance in silence. Liliana remains tucked away, her small form a picture of quiet and very lonely distress. The child quietly echoes the sentiment of sadness as tears stream down her flushed cheeks.
Liliana recalls how Leopold and Marius previously entertained and comforted her during their journey together.
A close-up captures the child's shimmering eyes as she remembers becoming best friends with Leopold. Leopold playfully scolds the energetic child for being unable to sit still within the moving carriage. Leopold's playful teasing continues as he grabs the child, who reacts with a loud, excited shriek. Leopold lifts the young girl higher, ensuring she has a perfect view of the approaching scenery. The grand carriage rolls through the imperial streets as the passengers exchange enthusiastic words of awe. Leopold asks for her opinion on the move, prompting a cheeky response about his nicknames. The child jokingly declares a vow of silence after being teased once again by her friend.
Leopold offers a warm, patient smile as the pouting child refuses to look at him directly.
Leopold issues a sudden and confusing instruction regarding how the child must address him in public. A close-up of the child's shimmering eye captures her moment of deep and silent inner reflection. The overwhelming grandeur of the imperial palace leaves the visitors in a state of stunned silence. Looking down at the massive estate, the child wonders if this will truly be her home. Leopold reinforces his previous instruction with a serious expression while the child looks on in confusion.
One of the older sisters expresses disbelief that Liliana could be unaware of the current situation.
Alice receives reassurance that the child will address her correctly despite the confusing new social roles. Leopold maintains a calm and graceful expression as the group prepares to step out into public.
Leopold gently guides the child forward, dismissing a previous question as entirely unnecessary for the moment. Alice steps out of the carriage, immediately facing the heavy, judgmental gazes of the imperial nobility.
Liliana clings tightly to Alice's dress as they walk past the silent, watching crowds of nobles. Overwhelmed by the intense atmosphere, the young child quietly confesses her growing sense of deep fear. A swirling, ethereal energy fills the scene as the group enters the heart of the Empire. The sisters observe the crowd's clear hostility, which is palpable even to the very young Liliana. A formal military welcome greets the family as they arrive at their destination within the Empire. Narrative text explains that the unfamiliar imperial accent makes communication difficult for the new arrivals. Liliana reflects on the significant efforts Leopold and Marius made to help her family feel comfortable.
A focused close-up of a shimmering blue eye captures a moment of sharp and sudden realization.
Alice graciously accepts the welcome, expressing her sincere hope for peaceful relations in their new home.
Standing behind her sister, Liliana feels small and uncertain about her future in this grand place. The child looks down in distress, wondering if she can truly endure the challenges ahead.
Amelia and Regina share a look of shared concern, their faces showing visible signs of stress.
Alice leads her sisters forward with determination, while the frightened Liliana hides behind her protective form.
Liliana gazes forward with a surprised expression, her large blue eyes reflecting a sense of wonder.
A pair of dark, polished boots stride purposely across the stone walkway of a sunlit garden. A close-up focus on a man's jawline captures a moment of silent, stoic presence. Leopold stands tall in his formal white and gold military uniform before the grand imperial palace. Looking up at the massive, ornate architecture of the palace, an excited voice shouts out in amazement. Startled, Liliana clutches her toy and demands to know the identity of the person who just appeared.
Two maids, Mary and Jo, bow politely and introduce themselves as the servants assigned to assist Liliana.
The maids offer to help with chores while the child insists she can manage her own belongings alone. Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, the blushing child feels a growing sense of social exhaustion and pressure.
The maids gently insist that Liliana relax while they work, noting she must be tired from travel.
A close-up captures the child's pouting face as she struggles to adjust to her new royal surroundings. The opulent interior of the imperial palace is bathed in the warm golden light of the chandeliers. Navigating the massive hallway, the child reflects on the absence of personal servants in her hometown. Peeking into a room, Liliana observes her sister's busy activities while searching for something interesting to do.
Alice gives instructions for a trunk to be placed by the window as a maid complies. A small chibi-style illustration depicts the child wandering through the palace with a curious expression.
Regina cheerfully greets her assigned maids, seemingly adapting to the imperial lifestyle much faster than her sisters.
A person places their hands on a heavy book, pausing for a moment of quiet, focused thought.
Amelia warns a maid not to touch her research materials, mentioning she won't be staying for long.
Amelia clarifies she plans to move out into her own house to avoid a palace commute.
A close-up captures the shocked and bewildered expressions of two women reacting to the unexpected news.
A floating speech bubble asks someone if they are currently working on a specific task.
Asserting her independence, the blonde woman explains her workload and tells the other person to stay away.
A voice issues a strict warning to leave the room's contents untouched during the cleaning process.
Clinging to the edge of a massive gilded door, Liliana peeks inside with a nervous expression. Holding up her toy, Liliana jokingly wonders if Cookie is her only remaining companion for games.
The energetic child runs through the grand hall, asking her teddy bear where they should play next.
Liliana misses the swings of her hometown and wonders if the imperial palace lacks a playground. A dark atmosphere reflects the child's sadness as she mourns the loss of her favorite outdoor activities.
The child's small sandals kick up as she runs excitedly toward a new discovery in the garden.
Liliana cheers loudly, her face lighting up with pure joy as she finds something wonderful nearby. The vast, intricate gardens of the imperial palace are revealed in a stunning, high-altitude panoramic view.
Crouching by a flower bed, Liliana wishes her friend Jelly could see the beautiful blooms with her.
Staring at the vibrant garden, the child asks about the name of the unfamiliar, colorful flowers.
A voice identifies the flowers as tulips, explaining that they do not grow in Travantia.
Looking up, Liliana is startled to find a tall, handsome man in a military uniform standing nearby.
A close-up captures the man's gentle green eyes as he looks down at the small child. Picking the child up, the man admits he missed her and suggests she was likely feeling bored.
Liliana looks at a nearby boy with confusion, her thoughts drifting to the concept of a brother.
A close-up focuses on a young blonde boy who appears to be the same age as Liliana.
The child's face glows with excitement as she realizes she has finally found a potential new friend. Liliana clings to the man's leg while curiously wondering if the young boy is a blunt person.
Falling pink petals frame the young boy's face, creating a soft and almost ethereal atmosphere.
The child's shimmering blue eye captures a clear reflection of the beautiful boy standing before her.
The young blonde boy stands with a calm, stoic expression, his green eyes filled with quiet curiosity.
Liliana reflects that she has never seen a boy as exceptionally pretty as this new acquaintance.
The man introduces the boy as Edgar, encouraging him to greet Liliana Verchio properly.
The young boy steps forward, his movements compared to a graceful angel from a famous painting.
A focused close-up reveals the boy's striking green eye as he stares back at the child.
Liliana is mesmerized by the boy's appearance, specifically noting the rare and beautiful green of his eyes.
Liliana introduces herself with a bright smile, hoping she and the boy can be friends.
The blonde boy aggressively rejects the girl, yelling that he has no interest in being friends. Edgar shouts that he isn't her friend and calls Liliana a pumpkin, leaving her completely stunned.
Liliana recalls being loved by everyone in kindergarten and wonders why this boy is so different.
The discarded rabbit toy reflects the child's heartbreak after her first ever rejection by a peer.
In a moment of silent disbelief, Liliana struggles to process that someone actually doesn't like her.
Marius awkwardly laughs while explaining that Edgar was just joking, though Liliana remains skeptical and hurt. Marius scolds Edgar for his rudeness, while the boy defiantly asks if he should lie instead.
Liliana tearfully asks Marius if she is ugly and if that is why Edgar hates her.
Marius reassures the sobbing child that she is adorable and that anyone would want her friendship.
Liliana collapses in humiliation as Edgar looks on with a cold, unimpressed expression from a distance.
Glaring through her tears, Liliana demands to know what is wrong with him for being mean.
Edgar turns away with a humph, while Liliana remains baffled by his exceptionally pretty but rude personality.
Liliana insults Edgar's intelligence, calling him as dumb as asparagus while questioning his strange behavior.
A soft floral atmosphere marks a transition as the family adjusts to their new imperial surroundings.
Edgar retorts by calling Liliana an asparagus-looking brat, further escalating their petty and heated garden argument.
The blonde boy looks genuinely offended as the exchange of childish insults continues in the garden.
The child processes the boy's bizarre and rude behavior as the asparagus insult lingers in the air.
Liliana fires back by calling Edgar seaweed, which causes the boy to react with sudden, intense rage.
The two children continue their loud shouting match about seaweed and pumpkins beneath the imperial sky. Marius struggles to hold back a fuming Edgar who is deeply offended by the seaweed comparison.
Edgar yells for Liliana to stop copying him as she playfully skips away with her toy. Edgar vows to turn the pumpkin into a watermelon while chasing the laughing girl into the palace.
Liliana winks confidently, dismissing the temperamental young boy as nothing more than a mere amateur.
Leopold introduces his fiancée Alice and her sisters to Edgar, establishing their formal new social connections.
The group gathers in the palace as a quiet realization settles that life is becoming unpredictable.
The sisters and their hosts share an opulent candlelit dinner within the palace's grand dining hall.
Regina handles her meal with poise, her elegant movements contrasting with the tension at the table.
Marius blushes while Regina expresses her appreciation for the meal, creating a brief, lighthearted romantic moment.
Alice and Leopold sit in heavy silence, their strained relationship evident to everyone at the table.
Leopold offers to cut Alice's food, but she coldly rejects the gesture, insisting she is fine.
Leopold looks dejected after being bluntly shut down by his fiancée during the formal dinner service.
Leopold decides to swap his plate with Liliana's to help the young child manage her meal.
Edgar addresses his father as Your Majesty, confirming his royal status while Liliana watches in surprise.
A close-up shows the child's plate as she prepares to eat her steak and vegetables.
Edgar casts a sharp, challenging glare toward Liliana, his green eyes filled with silent, petty rivalry.
Edgar scoffs at the child while Liliana wonders what is wrong with the boy's constant hostility.
A hand grips a glass as the adults engage in formal conversation about the family's transition.
Leopold raises his glass in agreement, maintaining his regal composure despite the underlying tension in the room.
The adults discuss Amelia's sudden move to the Mage Tower, questioning why she left so quickly.
Liliana struggles to spear a cherry tomato, which slips away from her fork in a clumsy moment.
Edgar mocks the girl for being unable to pick up her food, calling her a pumpkin again.
Liliana defensively claims it was just a mistake before sticking her tongue out at the smug boy.
Edgar skillfully spears a tomato to show off, casting a condescending look toward the annoyed child. A splash of sauce ruins Liliana's favorite dress, causing her to freeze in shock and distress. Liliana cries out about her dress while Edgar mockingly feigns an apology for his supposed clumsiness.
Trembling with fury, Liliana stares down at the mess on her dress, her patience finally reaching its limit.
Liliana retaliates by flinging a piece of food across the table at her smug royal rival. Edgar dodges the food and laughs, asking the enraged girl what she thinks she is doing. Marius watches the children's chaotic dinner table battle with a look of pure, weary social exhaustion.
Liliana vows to stay calm, refusing to let Edgar's childish name-calling get the best of her.
A sudden kick to the table causes the ornate cloth to shift with a sharp sound. Liliana freezes in confusion, tilting her head as she tries to identify the mysterious noise. The dinner table vibrates with a loud sound as Edgar abruptly vanishes from his seat. Edgar rolls on the floor in laughter while Liliana stares in a state of absolute shock. Liliana's intense scream of hatred for Edgar echoes through the grand corridors of the Imperial Palace.
Alice pours tea while calmly suggesting that Edgar's rough behavior is likely just a desire for friendship.
Regina claims Edgar is always polite to them, but Liliana yells that he only treats the sisters well.
Liliana collapses in despair, fuming over being called spinach and corn by her new royal rival.
Liliana reflects on Edgar's constant glares and the total chaos of their most recent disastrous dinner.
Liliana questions why Leopold's younger brother is so mean while Alice takes a sip of tea.
Alice clarifies the family relation, explaining that technically Edgar is actually Leopold's younger cousin, not brother.
Alice details the lineage involving an aunt's marriage, revealing how Edgar fits into the royal family. Liliana peeks over the edge of the furniture, absorbing the new information with a wide-eyed expression.
Alice explains that Edgar stays at the palace now that Leopold and the Emperor have returned.
Regina observes that Edgar has a different surname than Leopold and asks for the specific reason.
Narrative text over a royal crest explains the historical moment when the family's surname officially changed. Liliana eats a cookie, pitying Edgar for the difficulty of being raised among many older brothers. A close-up of the child's shimmering blue eye reflects her deep, empathetic thoughts about Edgar's past. Sitting alone in a massive chair, the child looks tiny against the backdrop of the palace. The quiet atmosphere lingers as the child remains seated, processing the weight of her new life. Regina reasons that they shouldn't judge Edgar's past hardships, as he likely faced many hidden struggles.
Liliana munches on her treat, quietly accepting her sister's perspective with a soft, thoughtful response.
A younger Edgar skips happily beside a tall soldier, enjoying a bright day in the palace gardens.
A close-up reveals Edgar's blushing face and green eyes as he looks on with mild irritation. Chibi-style Liliana is surrounded by question marks as she continues to eat her chocolate chip cookie.
The child's blue eye sparkles with a new sense of curiosity regarding her stubborn royal acquaintance.
Alice stops mid-sip, her gaze sharpening as if reacting to a sudden change in the room's mood.
Alice asks Liliana if she is happy living with her sisters while the child holds cookie. Liliana looks up in confusion as her older sisters suddenly loom over her with intense expressions.
Alice and Regina squeeze the child in a tight hug, overwhelmed by her absolute pure cuteness. Holding her rabbit, Liliana complains about her sister's ridiculous behavior and her interrupted meal during dinner.
The sleepy child lets out a massive yawn while sitting on the edge of her bed.
Liliana decides to prioritize a nap, snuggling into the soft white blankets of her grand bed.
A sudden bright realization cuts through the darkness, startling the child as she tries to sleep.
A perfectly round, glowing pumpkin is framed by sparkles, representing the insult that still haunts Liliana.
Liliana wakes up in a fury, hearing a mocking laugh echoing from somewhere outside her room.
Edgar peeks through the window, laughing as he repeats the pumpkin insult to provoke the girl. Veins of anger bulge on Liliana's forehead as her patience for the boy's teasing finally snaps.
Liliana leaps through the window with a thunderous shout, chasing after a startled and fleeing Edgar.
Liliana pummels Edgar with her rabbit toy, screaming her intense hatred for him while he tries to block.
Liliana hurls a barrage of insect-themed insults at the boy, calling him a beetle and a mantis.
Edgar fires back with a defensive insult, calling Liliana a gorilla in his own heated retort.
Liliana vows to catch Edgar, her voice booming as she pursues him through the palace grounds.
Edgar yells for the girl to stop following him as he continues his frantic, high-speed escape.
Edgar taunts Liliana to catch him if she can, once again using the gorilla nickname Tamat.
Running at full speed, Liliana indignantly bellows that she is definitely not a gorilla as he claimed.
Liliana faceplants in the grass, lamenting her mistake and thinking Edgar could ever be like her.
Edgar mocks the falling girl from a distance, prompting Liliana to question why she even bothered.
Floating in a swirl of dark energy, the child wonders why Edgar insists on constantly bothering her.
Liliana reflects on the unfairness of being called a gorilla while walking alone through the grand corridor.
The child expresses deep resentment, feeling she has been wronged despite her innocent and harmless behavior.
A deafening, heartbroken wail echoes throughout the hallway as the child's frustration finally reaches a breaking point.
Liliana collapses onto the floor in a fit of loud, tearful sobbing while clutching her favorite rabbit toy.
Edgar scoffs at the crying girl, mockingly asking why she would start a fight she cannot finish.
Marius carries a protesting Edgar away while the distraught Liliana continues her loud, uncontrollable wailing nearby.
Marius lectures Edgar on being kind to friends while the boy stubbornly blames the girl's initial actions.
Liliana cries out her defense, specifically identifying the pumpkin insult as the cause of her current misery.
Edgar retorts with his own grievance, shouting about being called a slimy seaweed during their garden argument.
Marius gently comforts the sobbing girl, though she remains focused on the intense emotional pain in her heart.
A close-up focus reveals a suggestion that Edgar's hostility might actually be a clumsy attempt at friendship.
A close-up of the child's shimmering eye captures her silent processing of Marius's surprising and new perspective.
Marius carries the child away as Edgar watches from a distance, his back turned and expression unreadable.
A close-up of the boy's formal bow and collar marks a quiet moment of lingering social tension.
Edgar stands alone with a conflicted expression, his blushing face betraying his inner turmoil and deep embarrassment.
Marius looks down with concern while the child asks about the strange and rude behavior of the boy. A close-up focus on the child's wide eye reveals her sudden confusion regarding the changing imperial atmosphere.
Swirling hues of orange and purple create a transitional mood following the children's intense and heated dispute.
A close-up of discarded toys tucked away signifies a momentary pause in the day's chaotic palace activities.
Driven by a sudden decision, Liliana declares her intent to seek out Edgar immediately for a confrontation. The child reflects on Edgar's age while observing a solitary pumpkin resting within the opulent sunlit bedroom.
The small child rushes through the grand corridors, determined to deliver a gift and resolve her feelings. Liliana joyfully imagines a scenario where Edgar accepts her present and begs for her lasting royal friendship. The child's excitement vanishes as she realizes she is completely lost within the palace's massive, unfamiliar layout.
Liliana begins to cry again, frustrated by her own inability to navigate the complex and grand estate.
Sitting alone on the grand staircase, the child waits in silence for anyone to pass by and help.
The child's face lights up with hope as she hears footsteps echoing from further down the hallway.
Liliana overhears servants gossiping about Alice's supposed strictness and the exhausting nature of their new royal work. The servants claim that Alice and her sisters only came to the Empire for special treatment and power.
Enraged by the insults directed at her sister, Liliana prepares to confront the disrespectful and rude palace servants.
A close-up of the male servant captures his sharp and aggressive tone as he continues his cruel gossip.
The servants whisper dark rumors about Leopold killing his siblings while a pair of small shoes stops nearby.
A young woman with a long braid holds a large bouquet of roses against a floral backdrop.
Narrative bubbles detail horrific rumors regarding the Emperor's past and Edgar's mother's tragic and mysterious end.
A stunning close-up of a blue eye reveals the child's absolute shock at the servant's incredible cruelty.
A tender flashback depicts a moment of deep comfort, contrasting sharply with the current hateful and dark environment.
The memory emphasizes that every child is precious, fueling Liliana's protective and righteous anger for her acquaintance. Blinded by fury, the child charges toward the servants to defend the honor of the boy and her sister.
Liliana confronts the male servant directly, her tiny form trembling with an intense and fearless sense of rage.
The child launches a sudden physical attack on the man, screaming for him to stop insulting the boy.
Liliana shouts a list of Edgar's positive traits, fiercely defending him against the servant's malicious palace lies.
The child pummels the servant's leg while hurling insults and wishing for him to face embarrassing bad luck.
The man's face contorts with malice as Liliana realizes Edgar deserves protection just as much as she does. A large hand grips the child's wrist with bruising force, cutting off her spirited and righteous defense. The servant violently throws the small child to the stone floor, leaving her in stunned and physical pain.
The man looms over her with a menacing scowl, ignoring the maid's desperate and shocked pleas to stop.
A floating speech bubble asserts that the child must be disciplined regardless of her sister's high social status.
The servant approaches the cowering child with terrifying intent, believing his actions will remain entirely and safely hidden. The man calls her a barbarian, deciding to use silence and secrecy to cover up his physical abuse.
The man prepares to strike the terrified girl, falsely claiming she was the one who initiated the violence.
A voice bellows through the open doors, demanding to know who caused a palace disturbance.
A close-up of a small shoe as a child gasps in sudden surprise.
Liliana trembles in fear as a tall, intimidating figure looms over her. A voice calls out to the Duke's son as the tense confrontation shifts.
Edgar stands firmly, scolding the servants for hurting an esteemed guest from Travantia.
Edgar demands the servants' names, declaring that those who behave so cruelly deserve punishment.
The male servant stutters in terror, attempting to explain himself to the young Duke's son.
Edgar scowls, asking if the servant believes he can simply explain away his actions. The servants bow low, apologizing to the Duke's son and begging for forgiveness.
A voice notes the attempted assault while Alice runs toward her distressed sister. Alice checks Liliana for injuries as the child mentions having a scraped palm.
Alice glares with terrifying intensity, causing the maid to gasp in visible fear.
The servant claims the child attacked first and he only struck her a little.
Liliana shouts that the servants are the bad ones for insulting Alice and Edgar.
Alice condemns the adult's shameful behavior toward a child, questioning if they felt safe hiding.
A chibi-style Liliana yells for the disrespectful servants to use much nicer words.
Liliana tearfully reveals to her sister that the servants called her a barbarian. Narration describes the Empire's rigid class system and the vastly different social structures. Alice reflects on the severe discrimination against foreigners and children she previously heard about. Alice asks Edgar to take Liliana away while she remains to handle the servants. Edgar blushes as he wonders about the strange new feeling growing in his heart.
Edgar notes Alice's intense expression before agreeing to lead the young girl away.
Alice watches the children leave with a calm, slightly dark, and knowing smile.
The sun sets behind vibrant orange and pink clouds, signaling a shift in mood.
The grand palace buildings and manicured gardens are bathed in warm, golden evening light. From a distance, the two children are seen walking together through the palace grounds. A close-up captures the two children holding hands as they walk through the hallway.
Edgar looks surprised while the child stares at him with a wide, curious expression.
Liliana brags that her sister is strong enough to defeat anyone, even a sea monster. Edgar retorts that Alice cannot be stronger than Leopold, sparking a new childish argument. The two children exchange grumpy, petty glares while they continue walking together.
They shout at each other about who is stronger, comparing Alice to the world's strongest Leopold.
Liliana huffs and calls the boy an idiot as their petty disagreement continues.
Edgar suddenly stops and gently reaches out to touch the young girl's face. A close-up captures Edgar's intense and serious gaze as he focuses on the child. Liliana looks up at the boy, her large blue eyes full of quiet curiosity. A detailed close-up of Liliana's blue eye reflects the boy's serious and steady face. A focused close-up reveals the child's reflection within the beautiful green of the boy's eye.
Edgar pulls away in a panic, blushing furiously while denying his heart is racing.
A confused chibi Liliana claims that Leopold actually belongs to her middle sister. Liliana chases Edgar through the hallway, calling him an idiot for not knowing anything. A brown-haired girl holds a single rose amidst a field of blooming red flowers. The grand palace stands tall and silent under the light of a crescent moon. Leopold admits that the day's commotion was entirely his fault while sitting among lit candles. Leopold apologizes to Alice, who suggests he should instead apologize to Liliana for the incident. Leopold agrees to apologize to Liliana separately while looking down with a somber expression. Alice agrees that she should also apologize while taking a sip of her key. Alice reflects on having no legal right to punish the servants before their marriage.
A close-up of the woman's face shows her deep thoughts about the family situation.
Leopold observes that the incident displayed the Empire's deep-seated prejudice and discrimination against Travantia. Narrative text highlights the deep cultural divide and mutual contempt between Travantia and the Empire. The narrator describes Travantia's distinct lifestyle, focusing on their coastal culture and the simplicity of their clothing. Raw seafood is depicted as a symbol of the perceived barbarism the Empire attributes to the people of Travantia. Leopold reflects on how the nobility looked down on Travantia even before the Berkio family officially arrived.
Sitting alone in the grand hall, Leopold sighs while acknowledging the long and difficult road Alice still faces.
Leopold admits that while their languages are similar, cultural differences must make Alice's transition very difficult.
Leopold explains that his struggle for power prevented him from paying enough attention to internal palace incidents.
Alice assures Leopold that she considered all the potential risks before coming and is fine with the situation.
A crackling fireplace signals a transition as the couple continues their serious late-night conversation about the palace atmosphere.
Alice holds her ornate teacup firmly, maintaining her regal composure despite the underlying tension of their discussion.
A close-up of Leopold's green eye captures a moment of quiet, thoughtful silence regarding the day's events.
Leopold thinks about Edgar's situation, reflecting on the boy's identity and place within the royal family structure.
Leopold asks Alice if she is all right after hearing reports that she was very angry earlier that day.
Alice wonders if Leopold is changing the subject before confirming she is fine after issuing a proper punishment.
Leopold offers a soft, supportive smile, visibly relieved and impressed by Alice's unwavering strength and decisive leadership.
A floating speech bubble captures Leopold's final sentiment, stating that he is fine if she is too. The scene shifts to a bright, sun-drenched day as a voice calls out to ask where someone is going. Edgar follows the girl, offering to play with her since she presumably has no friends in the palace. Liliana bluntly rejects the offer unless the boy agrees to become her underling, sparking a new childish argument.
A close-up of the boy's face reveals his silent frustration during their latest petty and prideful dispute.
Edgar reacts with shocked outrage, vehemently questioning why he would ever agree to be anyone's underling.
Chibi-style Liliana sighs in annoyance while Edgar points and shouts his loud defensive protests during their bickering.
Liliana dismisses the boy, deciding to go play with cookies, jelly, and toy soldiers in her room instead.
Surprised by her sudden departure, Edgar calls out to the girl, asking why she suddenly changed her mind. Liliana gives a deadpan look as Edgar follows her, his face flushed with confusion and his heart racing.
Liliana explains that underlings must be loyal to their leaders, further provoking the flustered and confused royal boy.
Chibi-style Edgar is surrounded by question marks, completely overwhelmed by the girl's strange and demanding logic.
Narrative text describes how Edgar eventually cooperated after Liliana's initial threats and his own reluctant agreement. Liliana asks a blunt and unexpectedly sharp question, wondering if Edgar has any real friends at all.
Edgar is stunned into a dazed and speechless silence by the girl's direct and surprisingly painful inquiry. Edgar turns a deep shade of purple, stammering in shock as he struggles to process the insulting question. Edgar loudly insists he has friends, while Liliana concludes that he is secretly a very pitiful loner.
Liliana sighs and suggests a compromise, telling Edgar there is one specific thing he can do for her.
The scene shifts to a bright garden entrance as the two children finally arrive at their destination. Liliana celebrates reaching the garden entrance with a bright laugh, while Edgar remains unimpressed by the common scenery. Edgar scoffs at the girl's reaction, finding her disbelief over a simple garden entrance to be entirely ridiculous.
Liliana celebrates with extreme excitement, her face lighting up as she prepares for their new adventure.
Liliana describes an elaborate fantasy involving a secret forest, a trapped princess, and a dragon hero quest.
Edgar stares blankly at the girl, finding her imaginative scenario to be nothing more than a simple garden. Liliana grabs Edgar's hand and pulls him forward, eager to begin their pretend quest immediately. Liliana's bright laughter echoes as she drags the blushing and startled boy toward the garden path. A close-up captures the two children holding hands as they run through the sunny palace grounds together. Narration explains that Liliana previously missed the garden because she didn't know where the central location was. Liliana marvels at the massive landscape, feeling that its beauty far exceeds anything she could have imagined. Liliana decides to teach Edgar how to be a proper hero since this is his first time playing.
A gardener holding large shears blocks their path, sternly commanding the two children to stop their advance.
Liliana and Edgar freeze in shock, staring up at the large man who has interrupted their fun. The gardener apologizes to the young lord, explaining that entry to the garden is forbidden today. The man notes that dangerous pruning work is underway, making the area unsafe for the children to enter.
Edgar accepts the explanation and suggests to the disappointed Liliana that they should return another day.
Liliana's blue eye captures the reflection of the gardener who just interrupted their playful garden adventure. White clouds drift lazily across a pale, peaceful sky during the children's quiet palace afternoon.
The grand palace buildings and manicured hedges stand silent under the bright, clear midday sun.
Liliana and Edgar play a game of kitchen with petals, though the boy remains skeptical.
Edgar stares skeptically at a leaf, questioning why he is participating in such a childish game.
Liliana offers to play alone, prompting a flustered Edgar to quickly join the pretend cooking.
Liliana assigns the chef and customer roles while the boy feels embarrassed for taking it seriously. A close-up focus on the boy's boots captures him standing awkwardly in the soft grass. The two children sit together beneath a massive, sun-drenched tree while continuing their playful interaction.
Liliana asks for clarification after the boy mumbles an almost inaudible question under his breath.
Liliana demands the boy speak louder as he blushes and turns his head away sheepishly.
Liliana repeats the boy's question, wondering why he is curious about her defending him against servants.
Edgar looks down with a vulnerable expression while asking his serious question about her motives.
Liliana's eye reflects the blushing boy as she processes his surprisingly heavy and direct inquiry. Edgar recoils in sudden surprise while Liliana looks shocked by his intense and physical reaction.
A close-up focus reveals the boy's flushed and sweating face during their tense garden conversation.
A jagged speech bubble captures Edgar's frustrated outburst about his own right to be curious. Edgar shouts while Liliana calmly explains that the simplicity of the question caught her off guard.
Liliana confirms the answer is simple, leaving the young boy looking dazed and completely speechless. Liliana's small hand uses a heavy stone to crush bright red flower petals against the pavement.
Edgar looks down somberly as the girl mentions the idea of him being someone precious.
The child remains focused on her garden task, illuminated by a soft and ethereal evening glow.
Edgar is stunned into a dazed silence by the girl's unexpectedly kind and profound perspective.
Liliana carefully places crushed red petals on her fingertips to mimic stained royal fingernails.
Admiring her petal nails, Liliana wonders aloud if her skin will truly be stained red.
Shimmering leaves frame a thought about Liliana being a precious child to her loving family.
Liliana admits she has no parents, prompting Edgar to reveal that he also lacks them.
Edgar explains his father died before his birth and his mother passed away during delivery.
A dark flashback depicts the cruel palace rumors calling Edgar the boy who devoured his mother.
A close-up shows Edgar's hand clenching his clothes in a moment of lingering emotional distress. A thought bubble featuring a stake highlights Edgar's internal doubt regarding his own worthiness.
A flashback reveals a tense dinner where Marius seemingly avoided eye contact with the young boy.
Liliana suddenly pulls Edgar into a tight hug, catching the boy completely by surprise.
Liliana recalls crying and being protected by the warm and firm embrace of her older sister.
A tender memory shows Alice holding Liliana tightly to provide her with deep emotional comfort.
Liliana explains that although they aren't friends, she fought for him because he is precious.
Edgar remains frozen and blushing furiously as the girl continues her firm and caring embrace. Liliana privately thinks that hugging the stiff and shocked boy is like hugging an octopus. Liliana looks up at the boy's face, realizing he is vibrating with intense and confused emotion.
A close-up of Edgar's eye captures his heart-pounding realization about the girl's genuine kindness.
Edgar panics and reels backward while Liliana watches him with a look of total bewilderment.
Edgar sprints away at high speed, his face flushed with a mix of shock and embarrassment. Liliana bellows after the fleeing boy, indignantly calling him a liar for his sudden departure.
The scene shifts to Edgar hiding beneath the thick white blankets of his grand bed.
Narrative text explains that nobody in the Imperial Palace ever thought of the boy as precious.
A close-up of the blushing boy shows him contemplating Liliana's words while hiding in shame. A fading memory of Liliana's embrace continues to resonate deeply within the boy's racing heart.
Light falls across the floor as someone finally approaches the boy's private and silent bedchamber.
Marius stands near the bed, assuming that something bad must have happened to the boy.
Marius lifts the blanket, telling Edgar not to cry as the boy defensively demands an apology.
Marius looks down, acknowledging that his own personal shortcomings often hold him back. Marius regrets his inattentiveness while uncovering the boy, who is told rumors are inevitable. Edgar looks up from his bed, his face flushed with a mixture of shame and sadness.
Narration reflects on the deep love and care evident in a happy child's vibrant expression.
Edgar sits somberly, reflecting on his long-held belief that he could never replace his parents.
Marius encourages the boy to speak, promising to listen as Edgar grips the white blanket tightly. Marius waits patiently while Edgar prepares to ask a difficult question about his deceased mother.
Marius is visibly stunned when Edgar asks if his mother regretted giving birth to him.
A focused close-up on the man's green eye reveals his absolute shock at the boy's inquiry. Marius firmly assures the tearful boy that the princess never regretted his birth, not even once.
Marius comforts the boy, dismissing the claim that he caused her death and affirming her happiness.
Marius emphasizes her deep love, while Edgar stammers about the rumors regarding his mother's tragic end.
Marius pulls the small boy into a protective embrace while sitting in the quiet grand bedchamber.
Narrative text details how the princess fell into despair and poor health after her husband's death.
The narration explains the nature of royal political marriages while a mourning figure stands alone. The princess lies ill in bed while Marius and another man watch over her failing health.
Marius smiles at baby Edgar, explaining that his birth brought hope when they needed it most.
A close-up of Edgar's wide green eyes captures his total disbelief at the man's kind words.
A close-up focuses on the intricate white lace collar of the young boy's royal outfit.
Marius shows the pregnant princess, explaining that Edgar was never the cause of her untimely death.
A flashback reveals the princess smiling through tears of joy while holding her newborn son.
Narrative bubbles explain that she entrusted the boy to Marius because she couldn't stay any longer.
Marius assures the boy that he was his mother's hope and a literal living miracle. Marius calls out to the boy, who begins to sob as the emotional weight settles. Edgar cries while remembering Liliana's earlier declaration that he is a truly precious person.
The young boy's face contorts with grief as he lets out a heavy, heart-wrenching sob.
Marius gently comforts the sobbing child, holding him close in the soft glow of the room.
The narrator asserts that proof of his mother's love was present from the very beginning.
A stylized announcement board marks a transition as the scene prepares to shift elsewhere.
A striking illustration of a dark-haired woman signals the conclusion of the current narrative segment.
The sun sets over the grand palace, casting a warm orange light across the massive estate.
A chibi Liliana asks the flustered and blushing boy if he was actually crying earlier.
Edgar loudly denies having cried while the young girl watches him with a confused expression.
Edgar shouts his defensive denial, insisting that he definitely wasn't crying at any point.
Alice and her sister watch the children's bickering, noting the boy's sudden and loud outburst.
Edgar stands by the dinner table while Liliana prepares to sit with her rabbit doll.
Edgar orders the girl to move something, his expression sour during their latest petty disagreement.
Liliana questions the boy's demand while he gestures toward the chair occupied by her doll.
Liliana explains her seating logic, imagining her family sitting together to create a perfect arrangement.
Edgar dismisses the doll as an object, while Liliana indignantly claims it is her little sister.
Liliana tells the boy to go away, causing Edgar to turn red with sheer frustrated rage.
A chibi-style Edgar falls through the air, defeated by the girl's blunt and harsh rejection.
Edgar huffs and turns his back on the table while Liliana continues her loud protest. Liliana demands that the rude boy offer a proper apology to her beloved doll, Cookie.
Leopold laughs heartily, suggesting that Edgar should learn to treat his new friends with kindness.
The group gathers for a formal meal at the center of the massive, ornate dining hall. Leopold notes the Emperor's attention toward the visitors while Alice remains quiet during the dinner.
Liliana gazes into her water glass, expressing her sadness that her youngest sister is absent.
The child laments being separated from her sister again while the adults continue their conversation.
Leopold watches the scene with a calm, subtle, and knowing smile on his face.
A maid serves a formal meal to the young girl, who reacts with surprise. Leopold admits that his poor management led to her hearing inappropriate things from palace servants. Leopold offers Edgar a sincere apology for his lack of attention to the day's incidents. The blonde boy states that the issue is settled since he already issued punishments. Edgar looks down at his plate, telling the adults they do not need to worry. The boy mentions he can forgive the young girl because his fall didn't hurt.
Edgar asks if the girl is angry about being treated poorly by the staff.
The young girl proudly declares that a hero must be both merciful and brave. Liliana explains her logic about heroes while Edgar sits stiffly in his chair.
Edgar blushes furiously while loudly denying that he was running away from the girl.
The boy sits in a daze, completely overwhelmed by his own embarrassment and confusion. Edgar tells the girl she is too weak to be a hero, prompting her fury. Alice tells her sister to calm down and ignore the boy's petty provocations. Leopold asks the child where she could have possibly learned such a sophisticated word. Liliana explains she learned it from a book titled The Adventure of the Red Sheep. The girl points at the boy while repeating the name of her favorite story. Edgar mockingly asks if she still reads fairy tales despite no longer being a child.
Edgar laughs at the girl, whose expression transforms into one of absolute dark rage.
Liliana screams at the boy for picking fights while the adults try to intervene. Silence settles over the palace as night falls and the children eventually drift off. The two children are found fast asleep together on a large sofa, completely exhausted. Leopold finds the mess amusing, noting Edgar hit a nerve with the fairy tale comment. A close-up of the man's face captures his silent amusement at the children's antics. Leopold suggests the boy simply wanted a reason to talk to the young girl. Leopold informs Alice she will be introduced to the nobles at the upcoming birthday party.
Looking at the sleeping pair, Leopold notes the boy seems happy to have friends.
Leopold sits by the sleeping children, watching over them with a quiet, protective gaze. A close-up captures the young girl sleeping peacefully, her earlier anger now entirely gone. The blonde man looks down with a somber expression while reflecting on the future. Alice thinks about her inability to block every political attack that will target her. Internal text explains that as the Empress, Alice must endure and prove herself alone. Leopold stands over the children as the heavy weight of their conversation continues.
A close-up of the woman's brilliant blue eyes captures her firm and silent resolve.
A focused close-up reveals the soft and gentle look in the man's green eyes. Leopold makes a silent personal vow to ensure that the young girl remains protected. Leopold offers a bright and genuine smile, filled with warmth and quiet determination. A chibi Leopold reflects on how supposedly noble people are actually nothing special.
A series of colorful banners present various promotional offers and information in Korean text.
A list of user comments expresses varying degrees of affection for the two children. A Scanlation credit page features a dark-haired woman and various social media links. A crescent moon shines in the night sky above a reminder of next week's update. The Grand Palace stands illuminated and silent under the light of the night moon. The ornate garden courtyard is empty and peaceful during the quiet hours of the night. The brown-haired woman notes that the young duke's birthday celebration is approaching very soon. The dark-haired man mentions preparing a gift, hoping the boy will appreciate the gesture. The woman and the man walk together through the garden in the moonlight. Chibi versions of the pair walk awkwardly while glancing around in a moment of embarrassment.
The woman asks the dark-haired man to lower his head for a brief moment.
The black-haired man blushes intensely while looking down at the blonde woman beside him.
Regina whispers into Leopold's ear, causing the flustered man to recoil in sudden shock.
A focused close-up captures Leopold's green eye as he continues to blush from embarrassment.
Regina wonders if her closeness is excessive while Leopold struggles with the rising ambient heat.
Regina expresses her deep frustration as the scene shifts to the two characters together.
Leopold reacts with startled surprise to the unexpected arrival of another person in the garden. Amelia watches from behind the trees, observing the interaction between the two flustered individuals.
Amelia continues to peer through the leaves, catching Regina looking back with a startled expression. Amelia stands among white flowers, adjusting her cloak with a stern and determined facial expression.
Amelia questions Leopold's presence and criticizes his unusual appearance as the blonde woman watches. Leopold holds up a small glass bottle, explaining he was merely gathering materials for experiments.
Leopold details his need for specific botanical ingredients while the two women listen with skepticism.
Regina clarifies she has a permit for her collection activities and looks down sadly. Regina admits her worry was fueled by not seeing the man properly for some time.
Regina suggests they all share a future meal together with Liliana as Amelia looks away.
Amelia declines the immediate offer due to her busy schedule, suggesting they meet next week.
Amelia reflects on a past unresolved conflict from a ship journey as the scene fades. Amelia checks a small mechanical device while standing alone in the quiet, sun-drenched palace garden.
Amelia pulls Regina away, informing Leopold that the sisters have urgent matters to discuss privately.
Chibi Leopold is relieved by the shifting atmosphere while the palace buildings stand under the stars.
Dark blue panels of the night sky signal a quiet transition in the evening's events.
Regina asks why she was suddenly dragged away as they walk through the moonlit courtyard.
Amelia reveals Leopold's high status as a duke while gazing out with a serious expression.
Amelia warns her sister to resolve the situation quickly before it creates significant future problems.
Amelia believes Leopold would handle a breakup cleanly just as someone loudly calls out Regina's name.
Regina looks surprised and distressed by the sudden turn in their serious nighttime conversation.
Amelia asserts that the primary cause of concern is Regina's own unique and powerful ability. Amelia warns that any change in Leopold's attitude could spark a major political scandal.
Narration defines Regina's ability as mind control, encompassing hypnosis, illusions, and deep emotional manipulation.
A stylized depiction shows people drifting helplessly under the influence of Regina's powerful mental abilities.
Everyone feared her influence, regardless of whether they were friends or lovers.
A man in a flashback angrily accuses Regina of using her powers to manufacture love.
Regina sits alone, overcome with grief and weeping after being hurt by such cruel accusations.
A single drop of liquid falls into a pool, representing the depth of Regina's sorrow.
Amelia watches her sister cry, her own expression filled with a mixture of pity and regret. Regina confesses her simple desire for a normal life, while Amelia reacts with silent frustration.
Regina breaks down into heavy sobs, her face buried in her hands among the flowers.
Regina desires normal love, while Amelia feels guilty for being the one to cause tears. Regina thought she had finally found someone capable of truly understanding and accepting her. The two sisters embrace tightly while crying, sharing their mutual pain in the quiet night.
Amelia comforts the sobbing Regina, dismissing those who ran away as fools who weren't worthy.
Regina wonders if Leopold is the one person who could really understand her true self.
Leopold calls out to the sisters as he approaches them in the dimly lit garden path.
Amelia asks Leopold to escort Regina home while she departs to handle another urgent matter.
Regina looks up in a daze, her eyes wide as she processes her sister's sudden departure.
Amelia offers a small, apologetic smile before turning to leave the two of them alone. Leopold stands in silence, his expression unreadable as he watches Amelia walk away into the distance.
A close-up of Leopold's green eye reveals his quiet contemplation of the woman standing before him.
Regina invites the man to a future picnic with Liliana and the young duke's company.
Regina laughs with forced brightness while Leopold watches her with a somber and silent gaze.
A cluster of delicate blue flowers blooms brightly within the lush, sun-drenched palace garden. A colorful promotional list displays various popular series covers alongside recruitment information for scanlation staff. The sun shines brightly as birds fly through a clear sky filled with soft clouds.
Liliana excitedly asks Edgar if he saw the horse eat the carrot she just gave it.
Edgar suggests visiting the knight's stable next, mentioning they even have dogs for them to see. Liliana considers that exploring the palace is fun because Edgar knows the massive grounds so well. Edgar points toward a building, suggesting they check for the olive and lemon trees she wanted. Liliana is touched that Edgar remembered her previous wish while he pulls her along quickly.
A stern gardener blocks the path, explaining that entrance is forbidden while they plant new flowers.
Liliana and Edgar stand together, looking up at the large man with expressions of complete surprise.
Edgar questions the timing of the planting while the man explains the work is taking longer. A close-up of Liliana's face reveals her growing suspicion as she observes the gardener's behavior.
The gardener looks down with a nervous and sweating expression as he faces the young children. The man apologizes again, insisting that for some unknown reason, they cannot enter the garden now.
Edgar looks disappointed as he asked Liliana what she would like to do instead today.
A close-up shows the young girl's small hand clenching the fabric of her ornate purple dress.
Liliana smiles brightly and suggests going elsewhere, which leaves the blonde boy looking quite relieved.
Edgar's face lights up as he promises to take her to a place she will like.
Liliana is dragged away again, shouting a question about where they are headed this time.
The grand architecture of the palace estate stands tall under the bright and warm afternoon sun.
Liliana struggles to keep up, panting heavily while running after the energetic and fast blonde boy.
A close-up of the girl shows her flushed face as she shouts for Edgar to stop.
Liliana complains about her hand hurting while Edgar looks back at her with wide, glowing eyes.
Edgar grips her hand firmly to lead her forward while the bright sunlight illuminates the scene.
Liliana pants and notes the palace's complexity, worrying about what might happen if they get separated.
Liliana wonders if he is holding her hand because he has no other friends to play with.
Soft white clouds drift across the vast blue sky, marking the passage of their afternoon adventure.
Gentle sunlight filters through the trees as the children arrive at the edge of the woods.
Edgar pauses, his face flushed with a mix of excitement and anticipation for what lies ahead.
Liliana claims heroes are strong, but Edgar counters by asking if a dragon is actually stronger.
Liliana explains that heroes are better because dragons are bad, prompting Edgar to ask her motives.
The young girl looks confused and stumped when asked what she would want to protect.
Liliana admits to herself that the idea of what to protect has never occurred to her.
Liliana recalls her childhood dream of being a hero who rescues a princess from a tower.
A close-up of her eyes reflects the thought that her eldest sister, Alice, is a hero.
Liliana boasts about Alice catching pirates, claiming her sister is super strong and a true hero. Chibi Liliana declares that in 10 years she will also possess powerful fists made of steel.
Edgar finds her bragging annoying and continues pulling her along toward their secret destination.
Edgar announces their arrival while the young girl watches him with a grumpy and pouting expression.
Liliana's eyes go wide with wonder as she looks up at the massive structure before them.
Edgar gestures toward the enormous stone tower, asking the girl if she thinks it looks cool.
Edgar explains that princesses are usually locked in towers, identifying this as the magician's West Tower.
Liliana experiences a sudden and sharp pang of anxiety as her heart begins to pound loudly.
The massive, ornate doors of the tower stand closed, looming over the children in the shadows.
Dark clouds and lightning frame the tower as a mysterious figure watches from an upper window.
Liliana's eye reflects a strange vision as she lets out a sharp gasp of pure shock.
Liliana collapses to the ground in a heap, her breath catching as she struggles to remain conscious. Edgar panics and asks if she is sick, while Liliana thinks that no words will come.
Liliana realizes she knows more about this mysterious tower than even Edgar does, causing deep confusion.
A heavy metal chain and padlock secure a large book while narration questions the story's end.
The looming West Tower stands as a significant landmark under the bright afternoon sky.
Liliana realizes this tower is the setting of the original novel where she was once imprisoned.
A dark void represents the grim memory of her potential death in her past life.
A loud, frantic shout for Liliana echoes as she collapses before the mysterious stone structure.
The scene transitions as the narrative prepares to delve deeper into the girl's recovery.
Liliana questions why she never considered her story after being trapped within the massive tower.
As Liliana lies ill, rumors begin to swirl through the palace about recent unsettling events.
A past vision shows Rebecca's sudden imprisonment, orchestrated by Marius within the cold tower walls.
A mental fog descends as Liliana admits she has no memory of what happened next.
Liliana wonders if she died, explaining that is why she has no memories of the event.
The young girl groans in pain, her face flushed with the heat of a rising fever.
Regina reassures the girl that she will recover quickly if she finishes her prescribed medicine.
Regina informs Alice that they must lower the girl's temperature before the palace doctor arrives.
Alice watches anxiously as Regina tends to the shivering girl who begs for more blankets.
The young child's cries of being cold echo through the quiet and ornate royal bedroom.
Tears stream down Alice's face as she watches her youngest sister suffer through the illness. Night falls over the Imperial Palace, a place where the child previously felt safe and healthy.
Regina explains that her healing magic has limits while the men watch over the sleeping child.
Liliana recalls hearing about Francois providing mana to help her recover during the early morning hours.
The young girl feels significantly better the next morning, her strength beginning to finally return.
Regina strictly forbids the girl from going outside to play until she is fully recovered.
Regina patiently feeds the recovering girl some soup, who accepts the meal with a quiet sound. Liliana reflects on her sudden collapse and how severely ill she became after visiting the tower.
The girl wonders about the nature of her illness after hearing she was talking nonsense. Liliana looks at her hands, reflecting on the strange and bloodless nature of her recent ordeal.
The child notes that her sisters seem to hide the true nature of her mysterious disease.
Liliana feels guilty for causing her sisters so much stress despite being sure she won't die.
Regina suggests eating spinach, and Liliana hopes it makes her as strong as her sisters. Alice laughs, noting that her youngest sister seems to have matured greatly since falling ill.
A hand reaches out toward a door, signaling the arrival of an unexpected visitor.
Regina and Alice are startled by a sudden knock at the grand entrance to the bedroom. The young girl excitedly calls out for the visitor to enter her private recovery room.
Edgar peeks into the room, looking relieved and hesitant to see the girl awake.
The blonde boy walks into the room with a focused and somewhat serious facial expression.
Edgar shouts at the girl to stay in bed, his concern manifesting as a loud command. Chibi versions of the children play on the bed, showing their dynamic has remained unchanged.
Edgar panics and checks on the girl's health, his face flushed with worry and embarrassment.
A close-up captures the boy's wide green eyes as he stares at the recovering girl.
Edgar teases her for being pale, while Liliana insists her complexion is naturally very fair.
Edgar presents a small gift wrapped in a dark cloth, looking away to hide his blushing. The young girl watches with wide, sparkling eyes as the boy offers his thoughtful gesture. The gift is revealed to be a fresh branch heavily laden with small green olives.
Edgar explains he picked the olives as a get-well gift once the garden was accessible again.
Edgar promises to find a lemon tree next, prompting a joyful and loud thanks from Liliana.
Alice questions the garden closure, and Edgar confirms it was due to planting new flowers.
Liliana explains they visited the tower because they were barred from playing in the garden.
The blonde boy looks flustered while asking if the olive branch is an acceptable recovery gift.
Alice smiles warmly and admits she is merely curious about the recent happenings in the garden. A narrative bubble explains that Alice hasn't visited the garden since arriving at the Imperial Palace.
The scene shifts to a moonlit night, recalling a previous meeting with Leopold and Emeria.
The palace ceiling looms as Alice reflects that the children were intentionally excluded from the gardens.
The black-haired woman approaches an attendant, who reacts with visible and startled surprise at her arrival.
The attendant explains the Emperor is currently meeting with the Magic Tower Master and requests a wait.
Alice ignores the flustered attendant and moves toward the meeting room door with firm and silent determination.
Narrative text reveals that every library in the Empire was searched for missing data without any success.
Voices inside discuss developing a treatment and research funds before ordering the secretary to leave the room.
Marius observes the documents while Leopold notes they are meeting without the young child's official guardian present.
Leopold sees Alice reflected in his eye and calls out her name in sudden and genuine surprise.
Leopold asks if Leonana is recovering well while Alice stands before him with a heavy, serious presence.
Alice reports that the child's fever has subsided and she is eating and taking her medicine properly.
Leopold expresses relief regarding the recovery and acknowledges the significant suffering Alice must have also endured recently.
A somber thought bubble notes that it was actually the sister who truly suffered through the ordeal. Alice prepares for a powerful strike, her clenched fist raised high with intense and focused energy. Alice slams her hands onto the desk, leaning aggressively toward Leopold as he reacts with startled shock. A close-up captures Leopold watching in stunned silence as the wooden surface begins to fracture and crock. A cold and intense gaze remains fixed on the desk as the force of the impact settles.
The massive impact shatters the heavy wooden desk under the weight of the woman's powerful, angry blow.
A sharp and dark shift in the atmosphere signifies a moment of intense and rising narrative tension. The desk completely collapses into splintered pieces, leaving the room in a state of sudden, silent chaos.
Alice stands amidst the wreckage while Marius and Leopold look on with expressions of deep, quiet surprise.
Leopold trembles with nervous energy, offering a bewildered and hesitant reaction to the woman's display of strength.
Marius requests a moment of privacy with the woman following the sudden and destructive outburst in the hall. Alice demands a private meeting later to discuss Liliana's treatment away from any other prying palace eyes.
Leopold watches with a somber and focused expression as the weight of the confrontation finally sinks in.
A close-up reveals Leopold's contemplation of the woman standing before him in the aftermath of her rage.
Leopold humorously notes he wanted a new desk anyway, praising her for her good work in breaking it.
Alice exposes the unfair garden ban targeting Liliana while Regina enjoyed frequent dinners with high-ranking nobles. Leopold acknowledges the report and suggests summoning those responsible for the child's mistreatment to face immediate consequences. Leopold offers a bright and pleasant smile, though his eyes remain sharp with a calculating and dangerous light.
Leopold asks Alice if violent retribution or a 5-year prison sentence would help her feel significantly better.
Alice realizes he thinks of cruelty first, identifying his pleasant demeanor as just another of his many masks.
Narration describes him as a man without guilt over bloodshed, showing a dark blade dripping with blood.
Alice perceives the man's true and ruthless nature as he sits atop a pile of his fallen enemies. Soft white light emanates from reaching hands, signaling a shift into deeper memories of the Empire's past. Records detail royal tragedies, including the deaths of the former Empress and Princess Elizabeth shortly after birth.
Narration recounts Rosalind's failed plot to usurp the throne for her son after Marius inherited it young.
The royal portrait is defaced with blood, marking the imperial execution of the treacherous mother and her son.
Marius demanded absolute loyalty from his surviving siblings, warning them that betrayal would lead to certain, swift death. The remaining siblings were manipulated into a failed coup, resulting in a scene of widespread fire and slaughter. Marius and Leopold successfully suppressed the rebellion together, standing amidst the grim and bloody aftermath of victory. The imperial purging finally concluded when the young emperor was only 19 years old, leaving him hardened.
A focused close-up reveals the cold belief that family is nothing more than a source of pain.
The man reflects on his cynical expectation of the eventual betrayal that finally occurred during a major incident.
Dark and heavy rain falls over the silent palace structures under an oppressive and gray night sky.
Marius stands stoically in the drenching rain, his gaze fixed on the distance as memories weigh heavily.
A voice questions if the boy realizes the full weight of his actions during their somber, rain-soaked encounter.
Narration explains the Emperor of Blood acted purely out of a deep and desperate fear of being hurt. Leopold suggests that leaving a bloody mark is the most effective way to deter future plots and rebellion. Alice reflects on an ongoing investigation into internal palace plots while the two characters continue their intense conversation. Leopold admits that seeing Alice's unhinged fury has helped him cool his own head regarding the child's mistreatment. The man acknowledges that hostility toward a foreign empress is expected but manageable.
The black-haired woman stands silently, absorbing the gravity of their intense political discussion.
The blonde man vows to protect the young girl from any form of disrespect.
The woman asserts her authority to discipline and dismiss the court officials herself.
He agrees, noting she will soon possess such power officially as the future empress.
A symbolic gesture of commitment occurs as he hands her a special gold necklace.
She insists on personally managing the issues surrounding the young duke as well. He dismisses her concerns, suggesting everything will be resolved once the wedding is finalized.
She wonders how he managed to uncover her secret efforts to avoid the boy.
He observes that her behavior toward the two children is strikingly and suspiciously different.
The man warns her against forming a lasting attachment to the young blonde boy.
A firm hand grips the door handle as she prepares to leave the room.
She pauses by the exit, leaving the blonde man alone with his calculating thoughts.
She realizes that the fear of a future parting shouldn't prevent her current affection.
His gaze remains fixed on her departing figure, reflecting her image in his eye.
She leaves the palace matters in his hands, hoping for no further such meetings.
The woman walks through the grand doors, closing a chapter on their tense confrontation.
He stands alone in the dimly lit hall, a silhouette of power and hidden intentions. A close-up of his gloved hand reveals the intense frustration boiling beneath his surface.
He stares at the shattered remains of his desk, a testament to her overwhelming strength.
A quiet transition marks the passage of time as the focus shifts elsewhere. The scene moves to a different part of the palace behind large, ornate blue doors.
A young voice offers gratitude to the silver-haired man for his help during recovery.
The young girl contentedly snacks on a cookie while her health slowly begins returning. The silver-haired man watches the child with a gaze that is both gentle and enigmatic.
She excitedly shares her plans to visit the palace knights in the coming days.
He reminds her of the difficulty in creating her medicine, urging her to get strong. The man explains that her strength is vital for her to eventually become an adult.
She continues to eat her snack, oblivious to the complex thoughts of the man watching. His expression shifts into one of cold clinical observation as he studies the young girl.
He questions the sudden, unexpected direction of his own thoughts regarding the child's recovery. She mentions her frequent illness, prompting him to ask why she holds such beliefs.
He encourages her to enjoy herself and promises to restore her to full health soon. The child looks at him with an expression of quiet curiosity and unspoken realization. A mirrored view highlights the growing distance and complexity between the man and the child.
The narration notes that the girl seems unable to even imagine a healthy future.
He admits his own lack of warmth, but feels a strange affection for the girl.
His internal thoughts reveal his view of her as a vital piece for a contract.
The man struggles to suppress his growing guilt over using the child for his plans.
He sighs heavily, finding it increasingly difficult to remain detached from the young girl's fate.
Night falls over the palace as voices inquire if the child has finally gone to sleep.
The sisters confirm they have put the exhausted girl to bed after her busy day.
He notes the sisters' fatigue while acknowledging the touching nature of their deep family bonds.
The man shifts the conversation to the serious research conducted regarding the girl's mysterious condition.
He admits their official work was a cover for a joint investigation into the child's health.
The blonde woman explains she has been secretly studying medicine to assist with the case.
A sharp and focused gaze underscores the gravity of the medical discovery they just made. He stuns the sisters by announcing they have finally identified the girl's true medical condition.
He corrects their previous assumptions, revealing that her illness is something far more serious. The sisters react with horror as they realize all their previous medical efforts were useless.
Francois and Amelia sit together in the dimly lit room, their postures reflecting deep exhaustion.
Francois leans in with a piercing gaze, warning Amelia to stand firmly behind her recent words.
Amelia explains the misdiagnosis of the disease, noting that symptoms never improve despite Travantian medical treatments.
A flashback shows children playing, while narration explains that most naturally recover at a specific age.
The text boxes reveal that those who do not recover pass away by age 14. Amelia identifies 14 as the age when children in Travantia are expected to undergo an awakening.
Narration describes the varying degrees of awakening fever, which is required to freely use special abilities.
Francois demonstrates magic, explaining that a child's immature body cannot handle power prior to the awakening.
The fever is characterized as intense growing pains caused by latent powers surging during early adolescence. The silver-haired man delivers the grim news that Liliana is currently entering her dangerous awakening phase.
Francois explains that Liliana's immense power is leaking out before her body is mature enough to contain it. An image of young Liliana confirms that she possesses exceptionally strong powers, matching her royal lineage.
The somber text notes that even great power is meaningless if the child dies before awakening. While the sisters listen in horror, the silver-haired man commands silence after hearing of Liliana's survival odds.
Francois looks down with a heavy heart, admitting he is far too familiar with the coming symptoms.
Regina looks up in desperation, frantically asking if there is any way to save the girl.
Amelia maintains a focused and determined expression as she considers the weight of the silver-haired man's words.
A single bubble calls out to Amelia, signaling a shift in the room's tense atmosphere.
The silver-haired man expresses confidence that Amelia and Francois will succeed by combining their unique skills.
Francois stands before Amelia in an ethereal light, reaching out as they prepare for their task.
Tears well up in Amelia's eyes as she addresses her sister with profound relief and hope. A close-up shows the silver-haired man offering a faint smile to comfort the worried sisters.
The man grips a hand firmly, urging them not to worry about the challenges ahead.
He promises that Liliana will survive the ordeal and successfully complete her awakening despite current predictions.
The man's eyes reflect a hidden confidence as the heavy discussion reaches a temporary conclusion.
Bright sunlight breaks through the clouds over the palace, marking a transition to a new day. Chibi Liliana declines a maid's offer to tie her hair while sitting outside the palace gardens.
Two overly enthusiastic maids rush toward the young girl, eager to pamper her with brushes.
Liliana finds out the hard way that palace pampering is an aggressive and loud contact sport.
A close-up shows a maid carefully fastening a gold-buckled shoe onto the young girl's small foot.
Liliana feels overwhelmed by the kindness, worrying the maids might disappear like staff members before them.
A sudden knock at the door causes the young girl to turn in curious anticipation.
Edgar bursts into the room, loudly demanding to know how long she intends to stay inside.
The blonde boy is filled with restless energy, shouting for her to come outside immediately.
Edgar urges her to hurry while the flustered maids attempt to finish dressing the young girl.
Edgar takes matters into his own hands, grabbing her foot to personally help with her footwear.
Liliana reacts with shock after being pushed, while Edgar focuses intently on finishing the task.
Edgar announces they are ready to leave while the young girl watches with a grumpy expression.
Liliana sighs in exasperation, clearly tired of the blonde boy's constant and rowdy behavior.
The scene shifts to the massive white stone walls and palace towers under a clear sky.
Liliana admires a tall commander in formal military uniform, thinking Uncle Leo looks incredibly cool.
Edgar beams with pride while bragging about his brother, despite the commander's confusion over the boasting.
The military commander looks over at the group, his face turning a noticeable shade of red.
Alice watches the commander with a soft gaze, causing him to look away in flustered silence.
Regina and Alice stand together, their presence causing the usually stern commander to lose his composure.
Soft sunlight filters through the sky as the group continues their outdoor gathering at the palace. The children and sisters watch as a long line of palace knights performs drills in the courtyard.
Edgar is completely awestruck, watching the disciplined knights with wide eyes and a look of adoration.
The commander explains the formal greeting is necessary as the state wedding is only 1 month away. Heavy boots walk across the stone courtyard as the commander begins to lead the next event.
Chibi Liliana gasps as a large man in a military uniform looms over the group.
Narrative text introduces the man as Derek Duma, the deputy commander of the order. Alice introduces herself and her younger sisters to the gathered military commanders.
Regina offers a polite compliment, mentioning she has heard great things about Sir Derek.
A close-up shows the commander smiling broadly as he accepts the lady's flattery. Derek notes the cultural difference between the Empire and the sisters' free-spirited homeland.
Liliana feels a sense of hidden hostility in the man's tone despite his polite words.
Alice questions the organization of the cavalry unit while observing the palace grounds.
Derek patronizingly suggests that Alice's previous service helps her grasp their complex systems.
Alice agrees as Liliana and Edgar explore the heavy military equipment nearby.
A radiant Alice explains her background in the Coast Guard's Department of Security.
The commander asks if she was merely responsible for civilian law enforcement or simple paperwork.
Alice clarifies that her department protected national security rather than handling common civilian matters.
A close-up captures a dismissive smirk forming on the commander's face. Derek mocks the idea of a woman performing the same duties as a knight.
The man continues to disrespect Alice by asking if she only handled administrative paperwork.
A wide view shows the group standing in the courtyard under a growing cloud of tension.
Liliana reacts with visible disgust to the commander's arrogant and sexist behavior.
Alice's expression turns cold as she finds the man's patronizing attitude increasingly problematic.
Alice challenges the commander, suggesting she demonstrate her actual skills to him directly.
Derek looks startled and confused after being confronted by the woman's sudden proposal. Alice expresses her long-standing desire to test the Empire's specific style of swordplay.
She reminds him of her history as a commander who hunted pirates before her engagement.
Alice offers to duel while Regina watches with a confident and knowing smile.
Derek hesitates, questioning the propriety of a knight engaging in a duel with a woman.
Flashback images show Alice battling through violent storms during her service at sea.
Narration explains she endured countless hardships to protect her nation from dangerous criminals.
Liliana is outraged that the commander dared to insult her sister's impressive military record.
Regina laughs at the situation, confident that Alice can easily defeat any opponent.
The children cheer with enthusiasm, viewing the upcoming confrontation as an exciting event.
The blonde boy calls out to the hesitant commander as the duel is arranged.
Chibi Liliana claps her hands in joy, fully expecting her sister to emerge victorious.
A close-up reveals a spark of burning determination in the young girl's eyes.
Narration warns that Derek is about to learn the consequences of insulting the trapezius muscle.
A close-up shows the young girl taking a large, enthusiastic bite of a cookie.
Edgar asks Liliana about the extent of Alice's strength while they continue their snack.
Liliana explains Alice single-handedly caught pirates and smugglers, earning the title Hammer Fist.
Alice changes into a white military uniform, appearing focused and ready for the duel.
Liliana reflects that Alice was never weak, even in the context of past tragedies.
Edgar and Liliana agree with absolute certainty that Alice will easily win the fight.
A loud, startling scream echoes across the courtyard, catching everyone by surprise. Leopold rushes over and embraces Liliana, shouting about how much he missed her.
Edgar watches with a deadpan expression, unimpressed by the man's overly dramatic behavior.
Regina greets Leopold while he continues to shower the young girl with affection.
Regina pulls Liliana into a hug, playfully agreeing to focus on sisterly bonding.
Leopold realizes he should step aside and not interrupt their precious family time.
The blonde boy clenches his fist in silent annoyance at the man's sudden arrival.
Regina expresses her hope that their older sister does not become too overexcited.
Alice takes a practice sword from an attendant while Derek prepares for the duel.
Derek smirks and makes one last remark about Alice's status as a lady.
Alice grips her practice sword, reflecting on the shame of pointing weapons at those she protects.
Alice stands tall in her white uniform, holding her blade with absolute poise and focused determination.
The black-haired woman offers a calm and confident smile as she prepares for the upcoming duel.
A close-up captures the sharp intensity of Alice's gaze as she asks if Derek is ready.
The match begins as Alice draws her blade, facing the massive deputy commander in the courtyard.
The green-eyed commander watches the duel commence with a somber expression and a quiet signal.
A decorative title card marks the beginning of Chapter 36 amidst stylized blue ribbon graphics.
A swirling blue energy ring marks a sharp transition in the narrative flow and pacing.
Bright sunlight filters through white clouds, illuminating the grand architecture surrounding the palace practice grounds.
A sudden blur of motion captures the incredible speed and power behind the opening sword swing.
Alice casually provokes Derek, who reacts timidly while failing to counter her superior and fluid movements.
Derek struggles to maintain his defense, sweat dripping from his face as Alice's pressure becomes overwhelming.
The woman maneuvers around her opponent with ease, leaving the startled knight unable to track her.
Alice kicks Derek's leg and mockingly suggests he needs better exercises to improve his lower body.
The deputy commander's face contorts with rage as he suffers the humiliation of being easily outclassed.
Clashing blades fill the air as Alice remains relaxed while Derek grows increasingly desperate and serious.
Alice delivers a decisive and powerful strike with a loud battle cry that echoes across the courtyard.
Regina, Liliana, and Edgar watch with sheer delight, cheering enthusiastically for Alice's impressive display of skill.
A crossed swords emblem shines against the sky as the narration concludes the one-sided military duel.
The tip of Alice's blade stops at Derek's throat, marking her final and absolute victory.
Derek kneels in total defeat while Alice stands over him. Her expression remains cold and focused.
Bold green sound effects emphasize the sudden burst of loud applause following the woman's stunning victory.
A high-angle view shows the group gathered in the training grounds as the intense match concludes.
Leopold claps wildly, shouting that Alice was incredible and completely surpassed all of his high expectations.
Alice turns toward the group with a bright and satisfied smile, clearly pleased with the outcome.
Derek asks if magic was used, but Alice refuses to waste her ability on a spar.
Records reveal Alice inherited her mother's legendary strength, which was further refined through harsh military training.
Liliana looks extremely proud, her chibi expression conveying a sense of smug satisfaction over Alice's win. Regina holds a beaming Liliana who excitedly asks Edgar if their older sister is the coolest.
Alice looks off camera with a curious expression, momentarily distracted by something at the courtyard's edge. Edgar is completely starstruck, shouting to ask how Lady Alice managed to become so incredibly strong.
The green-eyed commander sighs deeply while observing the young boy's dramatic and emotional reaction to Alice.
The commander calls out to Marius as a close-up focuses on his sharp, observant green eye.
Marius sits in a silhouetted, imposing pose, his dark presence casting a shadow over the gathering.
3 distinct knocks echo through the air against the backdrop of the palace during a sunset. A small hand knocks on a grand door while a child's voice calls out for Edgar. Liliana stands alone in the palace hallway, wondering if the blonde boy has already fallen asleep. The young girl peeks through the partially open door, inviting her friend to come and play.
Liliana is shocked to find Edgar sobbing in his bed, shouting out in alarm to ask why.
Liliana frantically questions who hurt him while the tearful boy begs to be left alone in peace.
The young girl worries Edgar is sick, checking him for any signs of injury or a fever.
Heartbreaking sobs echo through the empty, ornate palace architecture as the boy's distress continues to grow.
Liliana gently pats Edgar's head to comfort him while his crying slowly turns into quiet hiccups.
A close-up of Liliana's large blue eyes reveals her deep concern and empathy for her friend.
The girl offers to kiss his pain away or call a doctor to help him feel better.
Through his gasps and tears, Edgar mentions Marius, his voice filled with a profound and heavy sorrow.
Liliana reacts with a look of quiet realization and shock upon hearing the name of the emperor.
A close-up captures Edgar's emerald green eyes overflowing with tears and a sense of deep loneliness.
Small feet in polished shoes run quickly across the palace floor, marking a shift in the scene.
Young Edgar sprints through the grand sunlit hallway, desperately trying to escape his own painful emotions. Chibi Edgar beams with pure, unadulterated joy as the sun shines brightly behind him.
The scene shifts to the ornate, gold-trimmed wooden doors leading into the imperial quarters.
Outside the door, the black-haired man addresses Marius as a friend rather than a vassal.
Edgar stands frozen in the hallway, realizing his brothers are currently having a private discussion. Inside, Leo warns Marius to stop treating the young boy with such visible and unpleasant suspicion.
Leo reminds Marius that the boy is only 6 and should not bear past family traumas.
Marius silences Leo, refusing to hear more about their promises to the late Princess Elizabeth.
Leo bluntly asks Marius if he is truly terrified of his own 7-year-old younger brother.
Marius stares out the window in silence, his expression shadowed by deep, unspoken emotional weight.
Edgar is devastated to overhear Marius state that Leo should raise the child alone from now.
A close-up captures the boy's silent gasp as his world suddenly feels much colder and lonelier.
Marius reveals his deep trauma, fearing that any love he gives will eventually invite violent betrayal.
A bloodstained blade looms in the darkness, symbolizing the violent end Marius fears is coming.
Dark clouds of realization settle over Edgar as he understands his brother's lack of trust.
Back in the room, Liliana gently comforts the sobbing boy as he hides his face.
Liliana promises to keep his secret, assuring Edgar that she won't tell anyone what he overheard.
Edgar confirms through his tears that Marius hates him, a fact he heard with his own ears.
The boy's voice trembles as he reiterates that his own hearing confirmed his brother's disdain.
Liliana watches him with a look of profound sorrow, her heart breaking for her suffering friend.
A small hand reaches out toward the crying boy, offering a silent gesture of deep solidarity.
Liliana pulls Edgar into a fierce protective embrace, shouting his name to ground him.
Liliana shares that her own brother was similar, helping Edgar feel less alone in his pain. She explains how her brother Andrea moved away and stopped replying to her many letters.
Edgar looks up in surprise as Liliana holds him close, sharing her own history of abandonment.
Edgar sobs into her shoulder, wishing he at least had a mother to comfort him now. The two children find solace in each other's company amidst the grand silence of the palace.
Narration notes that for parentless children, siblings often become the primary source of parental love.
Liliana recalls her brother Andrea, who treated her with the tenderness usually reserved for a daughter.
She remembers Andrea attending school events to ensure she never felt alone or neglected.
Text reflects on the rainy days they spent together, finding comfort under a single shared umbrella.
A vision of the past shows Andrea holding a young Liliana safely beneath a large umbrella.
An illustrated fairy tale book lies open, representing the stories and warmth they once shared.
Andrea would hold her close while reading, providing a sense of security she still remembers.
Young Liliana looks up at her brother with eyes full of adoration and innocent happiness.
Andrea smiles down at his sister, his expression full of the warmth she misses so dearly.
Liliana understands Edgar's heartbreak, seeing the parallel between Marius's rejection and her own brother's distance.
She vows to love Edgar twice as much to compensate for the affection he is missing. Leo marches through the palace, frustrated that Marius forced him to lose his temper once again.
Leo decides to focus all his attention on Edgar despite not understanding Marius' irrational fears.
Regina sits alone in a grand room, her posture tense as if preparing for something difficult.
Leo enters the room and greets her, mentioning that he has only just arrived himself.
Leo invites Regina to talk openly, sensing the heavy atmosphere between them in the room.
Regina clenches her hands in her lap, her anxiety visible as she prepares to speak.
Leo notices her distress, and a sudden wave of unease washes over him as he watches.
He tentatively mentions having concert tickets, but the tension in the room remains thick and heavy.
Regina abruptly cuts him off with an apology, her head bowed as she begins to cry.
Tears fill her eyes as she realizes the necessity of the words she must now speak.
Regina calls out to Leo, explaining that she has carefully considered their situation and future.
She delivers a final painful blow by suggesting that they should stop seeing each other entirely.
Chibi Liliana lets out a loud wail while clutching her bunny as night falls over the palace.
Regina excitedly asks if the scene is cool, while Leo agrees that the atmosphere is truly dazzling.
Liliana notes that she ended up attending the grand event accompanied by her second sister, Regina.
Liliana reflects on how her efforts to help Edgar made her forget to choose a birthday gift.
The young girl scans the room, searching for the star of the night, young Edgar.
Liliana spots Leo and Edgar, noting that Leo's height makes the pair very easy to spot.
Liliana excitedly waves to get Edgar's attention, but the boy's face remains hidden in deep shadow. A heavy and cold aura suddenly surrounds the boy, causing Liliana to stop in her tracks. Liliana is shocked by the oppressive and heavy atmosphere currently shared between Leo and the boy.
The girl wonders why they look so miserable on a birthday, sensing deep trouble within the group. A close-up captures the somber green eyes of the commander as he stands in silent contemplation.
Regina watches the group with a look of growing unease and concern for her sister's situation.
Leo explains that getting closer might hurt her sister, leaving Regina confused by his sudden words.
Leo suggests the possibility of a breakup, causing a sudden and painful reaction from the commander.
Regina insists they won't break up, claiming their bond is permanent due to his unique ability.
While Regina promises to try harder, Leo admits he has no intention of ever entering into marriage.
Leo asks if he can simply remain unwed and pass his legacy to Edgar, but Regina refuses.
Regina clenches her hands in distress and offers a tearful apology to the man standing before her.
The blonde woman admits she cannot endure the situation any longer as a dark void surrounds them.
Regina and Leo stand far apart in a cold, white space, marking their growing emotional distance.
Liliana watches the tense interaction between the adults, feeling flustered by the obvious conflict between them.
Edgar avoids eye contact and insists nothing is wrong, though his downcast expression suggests deep sorrow.
Liliana shouts to get the attention of the boy who seems lost in his own thoughts.
Liliana wishes Edgar a happy birthday, though she notes his surprising lack of response until now.
The young boy stares in wide-eyed amazement as he notices the intricate details of Liliana's dress.
Liliana twirls happily among flowers, asking the boy if her outfit isn't the prettiest he has seen.
Edgar bluntly remarks that Liliana looks like a squirrel, catching the young girl completely off guard. While Liliana takes it as a compliment, Edgar clarifies she specifically looks like a pumpkin-shaped squirrel. Liliana is initially outraged but quickly calms herself upon remembering it is the boy's birthday. A grand announcement echoes through the hall as the Emperor and Lady Alice make their entrance.
The two children turn toward the grand staircase as the imperial couple prepares to greet guests.
A sense of awe fills the room as the crowd reacts to the arrival of the pair.
Marius and Alice walk together in their formal attire, presenting a picture of imperial grace.
Liliana is mesmerized, thinking her sister looks incredibly cool and that Marius is exceptionally handsome tonight.
Liliana asks Edgar if her sister isn't amazing, unaware of the boy's cold and distant mood. Young Edgar stands in the shadows, his expression turning icy and detached as he watches Marius. The two children appear small and isolated amidst the grand, sun-bleached atmosphere of the imperial ballroom.
Marius thanks the guests for celebrating Edgar, insisting that his upcoming wedding won't make him forget his sibling.
The Emperor announces that his official engagement to Lady Alice will take place on the 15th of next month.
A shadowed noblewoman watches the announcement with a look of quiet, calculating suspicion from the crowd.
Guests whisper behind their fans while Liliana observes the shifting dynamics and gossip in the room.
Liliana grips her bunny plush tightly, feeling the weight of the tension surrounding the imperial family.
Marius approaches the children, wishing Edgar a happy birthday and asking if he received his present. Edgar uses formal language to thank his brother, causing Marius to question why he is acting so stiffly.
Marius tells the boy to cheer up, unaware of the specific reasons behind his brother's resentment.
A close-up captures Edgar's gritted teeth as his hidden anger toward his older brother continues growing.
Edgar asks what Marius is saying, asserting his identity as a brother despite the Emperor's previous cold words.
Marius looks down with a somber expression as he recalls previous instructions regarding their distant relationship.
A close-up of Marius's eye reveals the reflection of the young boy currently facing him.
Edgar offers a tearful apology while Liliana watches with a look of pure shock and concern.
Liliana stops Edgar as he runs through the palace, while Marius watches the scene unfold.
Marius observes the children from a distance, his expression unreadable as he stands in silence.
A gentle touch conveys a silent promise of support during a moment of shared vulnerability.
Liliana clutches her rabbit plush tightly, looking up at her friend with wide, concerned eyes.
A close-up reveals the glistening hope and determination within the young girl's vibrant blue eyes. The two children walk hand in hand through the grand hallway, finding comfort in their quiet companionship. Liliana is suddenly startled when an unfamiliar voice calls out to her from across the hall. A young girl approaches, asking Liliana if she is truly the daughter from the distant Trovancia.
The girl, Helen, looks on with visible hesitation while her young companion stands nearby in silence.
Helen maintains a skeptical and haughty expression while waiting for a response to her blunt question. A rumor surfaces as the girl asks if people from Trovancia actually consume other human beings. The narrative pauses briefly as the scene transitions, focusing on the weight of the girl's words.
Liliana is frozen in disbelief as she processes the cruel and absurd rumors about her homeland.
In a moment of pure shock, the young girl can only whisper her confusion and hurt.
Helen continues to push, nervously questioning if Liliana truly possesses such monstrous and barbaric eating habits. Edgar steps in to defend his friend, laughing off the ridiculous and nonsensical rumors she heard. Liliana's grip on her plush toy tightens as the sting of being viewed as a barbarian lingers. Memories of the Empire's prejudice surface, showing how outsiders are often met with fear and disdain.
Liliana reflects on the painful reality of being treated like a monster by those in the Empire. Turning the tables, Liliana decides to lean into the rumor to shock the two judgmental children. The four children stand together in the courtyard, the atmosphere shifting as Liliana begins her prank. Liliana puts on a terrifying face, vowing to teach the rude girl a lesson for her insults. The children scatter in a panic as Chris calls out to Helen, desperate to escape Liliana's prank. Liliana looms over the terrified boy, her shadowed expression heightening the intensity of her playful revenge.
Chris collapses into a fit of hysterical tears, begging the young girl not to eat him. Marius and Edgar watch the chaotic scene, both completely bewildered by the boy's sudden emotional breakdown. Through his heavy sobs, Chris insists he wouldn't taste good at all, fearing for his life.
Liliana realizes her joke went too far, noting that Empire children seem much more sensitive than Travantians.
The Duchess of Berg arrives, immediately noticing Chris's distress and questioning the cause of his tears.
The imposing Duchess stands tall, her presence commanding respect and casting a shadow over the children. Chris clings to the Duchess, frantically reporting Liliana's threat to consume him as if he were food. The Duchess comforts Chris, while Liliana attempts to explain that she was only making a joke. A cold and sharp gaze suggests that the Duchess is not amused by the children's behavior.
Edgar watches the interaction with growing concern, sensing the rising tension brought by the Duchess's arrival.
The Duchess looks down with clear disapproval, her expression hardening as she listens to the explanation.
Liliana stands her ground despite her worry, holding her bunny plush as she faces the noblewoman. The Duchess harshly demands that Liliana stop touching Chris and offer an immediate apology for her actions. The scene shifts to the grand ballroom where nobles gather amidst gold-trimmed decor and lavish displays. Noblewomen surround Alice, praising her beauty and expressing amazement that she traveled so far from Travantia. A noblewoman asks how Alice is adjusting to the Empire's etiquette, suggesting it must feel quite suffocating.
She notes how rare it is for someone to bring so many siblings along during a transition. The woman wonders if Alice finds the developed empire much nicer than her supposedly primitive homeland.
Alice maintains a polite smile, remarking that the new scenery provides a truly exotic experience daily.
The dark-haired man asks Marius why he isn't stepping in to assist his bride to be with the nobles.
Marius declines, asserting that Alice must establish her own authority if she is to lead as Empress.
He reminds his companion that their arrangement is temporary, lasting for only 10 years of service.
The dark-haired man remains silent, reflecting on Marius's detached and pragmatic approach to the marriage contract. Seeing Marius's somber mood, his friend asks if something has happened to cause his sudden withdrawal. The dark-haired commander notes that Edgar likely overheard their sensitive conversation on the day Alice visited.
Narrative text reflects on how mature children can instinctively sense when they are being avoided.
A memory captures young Edgar's heartbreak upon hearing the cold words of rejection on his birthday. Leo informs Marius that his distancing has already caused significant emotional trauma to his younger brother. The commander moves Edgar to the Duke's estate and tells Marius to stay away hereafter. Text underscores the painful truth that Marius has failed to act as a proper brother. A gloved hand grips a glass until it cracks, reflecting the intense emotional pressure felt. Marius slumps against the balcony railing as the broken glass falls from his trembling fist.
Shards of glass plummet through the darkness as the scene shifts to a rain-soaked palace.
Rain pours over the palace as voices discuss the Tower Master's absence and lack of information. Leo and another resolve to handle things before Lord Francois can intervene and endanger Edgar. Marius considers exile for the boy to protect him from a much harsher official punishment. A dark vision depicts the danger Edgar faces due to Francois' obsession with Liliana.
A warm flashback shows a younger Marius playfully spinning a baby Edgar in his arms. In the present storm, Edgar points his sword at Marius with years of accumulated resentment.
Marius shouts in desperation, questioning why Edgar would throw everything away over a single girl. Edgar responds that her name is Liliana, his voice heavy with rain and profound sorrow. Lightning flashes as Edgar screams her name, marking his complete break from his older brother.
The two brothers face each other as enemies in the rain, their bond completely shattered.
Narration questions the extreme motivation that drove Edgar to challenge the Emperor in this manner. Marius asks if Edgar is trying to hold him accountable for past tragedies and sins. Their blades clash violently in the storm as the siblings engage in a tragic duel. A tear falls as the narrative explicitly mentions the heartbreaking event of Leopold's suicide. Marius denies responsibility for Leopold's death, his face illuminated by a harsh lightning strike. Amidst the rain, Marius adamantly repeats that Leopold's tragic end was not his fault. An image of a pink potion bottle represents the manipulative tricks used for revenge. Text reveals how Leopold was driven to sin under the influence of calculated, deceptive schemes.
A blood-stained envelope symbolizes the final letter Leopold left for Edgar before taking his life.
Edgar shouts his hatred for his brother, his teeth gritted in raw and agonizing fury. Marius asks how Edgar could say such things after all the effort he spent. Edgar mocks the idea of effort, suggesting killing innocents for love is not doing one's best. With eyes full of rage and tears, Edgar declares that everyone in the palace is insane. The young man challenges Marius, asking if the Emperor is finally prepared to kill him.
A close-up shows hands shaking while gripping a sword as the rain washes away hesitation.
Marius admits he will kill Edgar if necessary, his eyes reflecting a deep, hollow sorrow.
The duel continues with a strike of the blade reflecting the brothers' shared, tragic lineage.
A splat of blood marks the moment of a fatal blow during the chaotic store.
Marius stands broken in the rain, watching as Edgar collapses from the wounds just inflicted. Edgar questions why Marius didn't dodge, realizing his brother may have sought his own end.
The wounded man is shocked that Marius intentionally took a hit during their desperate struggle.
Marius slumps forward, his energy failing as the violent cycle takes its final heavy toll.
Edgar collapses back into the wet ground, his body giving out after the intense battle.
A close-up of a sword shows the finality as weapons fall silent in the rain.
The symbol of their duel fades into the rain, marking the tragic end of brotherhood.
Lightning flashes over the dark forest as the storm continues to rage over the palace.
Edgar kneels in the rain, defeated and sobbing as the weight of failure settles in.
Marius looms over his brother, his presence cold and imposing amidst the heavy downpour.
Edgar begs his brother to end his life, unable to live with the pain anymore.
Marius reminds him his actions are treason, though his voice is thick with hidden grief.
A final close-up captures Edgar's tear of despair as he pleads for Liliana's safety.
A desperate thought echoes through the darkness, pleading for the tragic conflict to end with him. A gloved hand crushes a glass, amber liquid spilling out as a sign of intense emotional distress.
Marius stares at his hand, reflecting on how he found himself unable to kill his own brother.
A memory of a young, laughing Edgar serves as a reminder of the last precious person in his life. Marius recalls his desire to scream at Edgar in his prison cell, questioning why he drew his sword.
Returning to the present, the Emperor realizes that the brother he once knew has changed completely.
Despite his internal pain, Marius decides to keep a cold distance from the boy to protect them both. The intricate jewels of the imperial cloak shimmer as a heavy atmosphere settles over the palace.
Marius stands with his arms crossed, his stoic expression masking a wound that is only months old.
Narrative text describes the lingering pain of a secret that remains as vivid as a fresh injury.
The Duchess demands an immediate apology, warning the girl not to touch her son so carelessly.
The noblewoman pulls her son close, her face contorted in a sharp and angry outburst.
Liliana clutches her rabbit and cries out in pain after the Duchess strikes the back of her hand. Confused and hurt, the young girl questions her own intentions as she tries to process the sudden blow. While Liliana tearfully explains she only wanted to help, the Duke arrives and demands an explanation.
Liliana shouts through her tears, explaining that her joke was a response to the boy's earlier insults.
The Duchess demands an apology, but Liliana calls her a cruel adult for striking a small child.
Edgar fiercely defends his friend, blaming the Duchess for mistreating a state guest from their homeland. The Duchess warns Edgar against making reckless friends, but a man nearby begs her to stop her tirade.
A moment of shocked silence follows as the cruelty of the noblewoman's words sinks in. Liliana feels isolated, wondering if the adults in the Empire would be kinder if she were stronger. Tears stream down the young girl's face as the weight of the Empire's prejudice becomes unbearable. In a moment of pure heartbreak, the girl whispers a desperate wish to go back home. Duke Valtracian's arrival startles the group as he demands to know the cause of the commotion.
The Duchess attempts to justify her actions, claiming she was merely protecting her son from a threat.
The Duke looks toward the boy named Chris with a cold and deeply unimpressed expression.
The Duchess identifies her son, while the young boy whimpers in fear under the commander's gaze.
Liliana cries to her uncle, explaining how the Duchess hit her after she responded to an insult.
The Duke rebukes the Duchess for her excessive behavior and for laying hands on a young child.
The commander defends Liliana, questioning why the Duchess would involve Marius's fiancé in this petty conflict.
The Duchess dismissively suggests the Duke consult his wife before storming off with her son, Chris.
The Duke shouts for the Duchess to wait, asserting that the matter is far from settled.
Duke Valtracian leads the sobbing girl away from the ballroom, leaving the crowd behind in silence. Liliana's breath hitches as she struggles to stop crying, her small frame shaking with sorrow.
The Duke pulls the girl into a warm embrace and offers a quiet, sincere apology for her pain.
Clinging to her protector, Liliana wonders why she cannot see the family she misses so dearly.
Liliana repeats her desperate plea to go home while the Duke gently comforts her. A single tear falls from the girl's blue eye, reflecting her deep longing for her homeland. The grand palace stands silent beneath the cold moonlight after the evening's many trials. A gentle voice breaks the silence of the courtyard, offering a small treat to the children.
Chibi Liliana's mood brightens as she accepts a snack, her distress beginning to fade in the garden.
The Duke sits with the two children, providing a much-needed moment of peace and safety.
Liliana asks her uncle not to tell her sisters, fearing they will worry too much about her.
The young girl expresses her desire to be strong so that her siblings never have to suffer.
Duke Valtracian smiles warmly at the girl, touched by her selfless concern for her sisters.
Laughter fills the air as the Duke lifts the children high, warning them to be careful.
The children gasp in amazement at the sight of a real lemon tree glowing with fruit. Edgar explains he found the hidden tree after the new gardeners replaced the previous staff.
Liliana gazes at the tree with wonder, the bright fruit reminding her of her life in Travanca.
Seeing the lemon tree brings back memories of playing with her friend Antonio in her homeland.
Narrative text notes how the heat and local diet define the atmosphere of their current home.
A lavish seafood dish is presented alongside a bottle of premium local olive oil.
The young girl expresses distress over her current state and her fears for the future.
The blonde boy sits in silence, his expression blank as he stares into the distance.
Sitting together in the palace, the young girl asks her companion what he is thinking about.
The boy dismisses her concern while the young girl suddenly reacts with a look of realization.
A sudden realization strikes as the young girl senses she has forgotten something very important. Realizing she forgot the boy's birthday, the girl recalls the emperor's earlier speech about his sibling.
The girl shouts in alarm, prompting the boy to ask what has happened to her.
She berates herself for her forgetfulness, realizing she missed his birthday despite her earlier greeting. She offers a belated greeting and apologizes for missing their plans to share a cake together.
The boy shifts the blame to others and suggests the party's food and gifts should be enough.
He insults the guests and claims there is no one present he wishes to play with.
When asked about his friends, the boy angrily denies any connection to the two noble children.
The girl questions his defensive behavior while the boy continues to look away in annoyance.
Realizing she has no prepared gift, the young girl looks up with an idea.
The girl offers her most precious treasure as a gift, which immediately piques the boy's interest.
Presenting her rabbit plush, the girl affectionately identifies the toy as her younger brother.
The boy expresses shock, questioning how she could give away a sibling so easily.
She entrusts him with the care of the plush while the boy accepts it in stunned silence.
A blush creeps onto the boy's face as he processes the meaningful gift he just received.
When she offers to find another gift, the boy quickly declares his approval of the plush.
The boy offers a small smile while the young girl reacts with visible surprise.
Hugging the rabbit plush tightly, the boy considers it the best gift he received all day.
The young girl gazes at her friend with sparkling eyes, touched by his genuine happiness.
A close-up captures the vibrant green of the boy's eye as he looks at his new companion.
A lighthearted atmosphere returns as the two children laugh and play together in the palace. A week passes after the party, and the scene shifts to the children by a grand fountain.
The boy questions if she has been crying, but she indignantly denies fearing medical needles. The young girl pouts, clearly still bothered by the events of her recent checkup. She rubs her arm where the blood was drawn, her expression showing her lingering annoyance.
Narrative text reflects on the lies regarding her lack of horns despite the rumors.
She reflects on her sister drawing her blood while she was forced to drink a potion.
Recalling her siblings' trickery during her treatment, she angrily vows to stop playing with them.
The boy sighs at her stubbornness while the girl continues to sulk over her treatment.
The boy offers a candy to help with her medicine, which the young girl gratefully accepts. The boy blushes while watching her, his pride showing as he helps his friend.
As she eats the treat, the boy pridefully considers himself the best companion for her. Notes that Marius's attempts at reconciliation failed as the brothers' relationship reached a low point.
The commander leads the young boy away from the palace to live at the Duke's estate.
The girl asks if the rumors of him moving to the Duke's estate are true. The blonde boy looks back with a somber and distant expression, his departure weighing heavily. She worries their daily playtime will end, a possibility that the boy somberly acknowledges.
The two children stand in quiet contemplation before the grand fountain of the palace.
A close-up shows a character shouting as the peaceful moment is suddenly interrupted. A loud shout interrupts the children's quiet moment as someone calls out to the girl.
Both children look up in surprise as they are confronted by an unexpected arrival.
The girl's eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the person calling out to her.
Helen Eldridge stands defiantly in the courtyard with Chris Lumen watching from behind her.
Pointing a finger with an angry shout, Helen Eldridge singles out the girl for a confrontation.
Helen loudly labels Liliana as a man-eating monster, reigniting the cruel rumors in the courtyard.